first time I taught students. I was given a show of force by the school's genius beauty. Teacher, the magic you just described is complete nonsense. After saying this, she even went on stage and perfectly demonstrated the magic. This brilliant display made even the kingdom's princess feel ashamed. However, I directly stated that the beauty's magic was trash. I'm deducting points from you. Then I slowly raised my magic wand. Open your eyes wide and watch carefully. I just lightly lifted my hand, and a dazzling magic spell was drawn by me. This amazing scene left all the students dumbfounded, because I completed the magic in just 0.24 seconds, 200 times faster than the world's fastest record. Everyone believed I must be the most powerful teacher in this academy, but only I knew that my teacher identity was actually an impersonation, and the magic I just cast had consumed more than half of my magical power, making my head feel dizzy. It turned out that 2 weeks ago, I had disguised my identity and entered the imperial capital. On the train to the capital, I encountered Ludwig Cherish. I didn't want to talk to him the whole way, but he was like a chatterbox, constantly talking to me. He even claimed he was about to become a teacher at Theowen Magic Academy. Seeing such a young man already appointed as a teacher, I couldn't help but flatter him a bit. It seemed this guy really enjoyed my flattery. Just when I thought I could chat with him all the way to the destination, the entire train suddenly shook violently. We both quickly stood up. I guess this might be an attack. I felt uneasy. If my identity was exposed here, it would be terrible. Soon, we both left the compartment to patrol. Just then, someone broke through the window behind us. Ludwig Cherish and I immediately dodged. Ludwig Cherish protected me behind him, saying he would handle this thug. At the same time, the thug was already rushing at us with a sharp knife. Ludwig Cherish used basic lightning magic within 1 second. After knocking the thug away, he continued with intermediate magic. With a crash, the thug fell to the ground. I showed a fake surprised expression from behind, so powerful that thug was taken down directly. Ludwig Cherish slowly walked over, saying, "He wasn't killed by me. I just paralyzed his nervous system. He shouldn't be able to move now." Then Ludwig Cherish stepped on his chest and asked who the mastermind was and what the purpose of attacking this train was. The thug didn't answer, but kept laughing maniacally. Ludwig Cherish got angry. "I didn't tell you to laugh. Answer my questions quickly." Then the thug pulled open his chest with both hands, revealing a bomb strapped to his body. "You dirty people should all be eliminated." Ludwig Cherish lost his composure. This day is really unlucky. With a loud boom, a huge explosion went off in this car corridor. Fortunately, I felt something was wrong earlier and hid in a corner to avoid this explosion. I don't know what happened to Ludwig Cherish, but when I saw the scene in front of me clearly, I couldn't help but be shocked. I saw no human figure in front of me, and there was also a huge hole broken in the side. I slowly stood up. Ludwig Cherish might have been blown to pieces. Just then, I discovered that my disguise mask had also broken a big hole. This made me feel heartbroken. I had spent so much money to customize a fake face, and now it was broken. Then I tore off the fake skin mask from my face. This feeling was really terrible. How did I encounter all these unexpected incidents? Originally, I was a mercenary on this continent, living a miserable life every day. And every time I changed places, I would create a new disguised identity. I sighed deeply. I really can't deal with this. Of all times to encounter an attack, it had to be when I was on this train. I casually threw the disguise mask in my hand down. I began to mourn in my heart. Rest in peace, Mr. Ludwig. However, what puzzled me was that the person who was completely paralyzed earlier could still detonate the bomb, which definitely wasn't something an ordinary robber could do. I guessed it should be those fanatic believers who wanted everyone to perish together. Perhaps that was their real purpose. At this time, the train security heard the commotion and came over. I turned to him and said, "Armed robbers attacked this train. It seems they targeted car 1. We'd better hide in the rear cars." The train security personnel was also panicking at this moment, saying, "I've already had other passengers evacuate to the rear. You should go quickly too." However, at this moment, I rushed forward and firmly pinned him to the ground. He was confused. "Sir, what's this sudden behavior about? Do you think your poor acting can fool me?" In the treacherous mountains, on a straight-running train, not only did attackers appear who seemed to have been waiting for a long time, but they even destroyed the train's defensive magic. This made it hard for me to believe. How could this be possible if internal personnel hadn't tampered with things? Seeing this, the man stopped pretending and stared at me fiercely. The next moment, a dagger popped out from his sleeve. However, I firmly grabbed his arm. "Don't move. Your reaction speed is quite fast. Who are you people exactly, and what's your conspiracy?" Seeing he wouldn't speak, I tied him up, preparing to hand him over to special personnel for interrogation. Just then, I seemed to hear the sound of bullets being loaded in front. This sound was definitely unmistakable, because when I was a mercenary before, I heard these sounds every day. The next moment, I directly pushed the train security personnel forward. At the same time, several bullets penetrated the man's chest, while I crouched down and dodged all the bullets. This piercing sound made me cover my ears. I didn't give him time to tip them off earlier. Could they have agreed on this beforehand? After his companions eliminated the man just now, they kicked open the door and walked in. Several people were stunned. What's going on? How is there still someone alive here? And what surprised them was that after enduring such fierce attacks, he was still unharmed. I slowly stood up and cursed at them. What are you showing off about there? And I'm not unharmed either. That scene just now almost scared me to death. The opponents were all ruthless people who didn't waste words and directly shot at me. Then my eyes narrowed. If you have the ability, then shoot. I bet there are no bullets in your guns. Just as I had guessed, they couldn't fire the bullets from their magazines at all, because I had just used magic to make their guns malfunction. The moment I displayed magic, a blue vortex appeared above me. This vortex directly scattered my magic. This made me feel bad. I didn't expect they really came prepared. The gang leader said at this time he was just guessing, but didn't expect there really was a mage on this train. So just in case, we made an anti-magic device. I wanted to turn around and run, but found that the back was also blocked. The thug was thinking, although he looks very powerful, that guy is probably only a level 4 mage. Otherwise, we would have received news that there was a mage on the train. Seeing the situation, I directly jumped out of the window next to me. The thug leader was shocked. He actually jumped down, quickly check if he's dead. A subordinate went to look and found no sign of me. He should have been buried by the heavy snow. Then he said to the boss, "Let's quickly go handle other matters. Don't worry about him anymore." But just as he was halfway through speaking, his head suddenly exploded. At this time the boss also reacted. He didn't jump down just now, but climbed up above. Everyone was surprised. Could he have used flying magic just now? But how could flying magic speed catch up with a train? The boss immediately gave orders. "You ordinary people staying here won't be effective at all. Quickly go to car 1 first, and if you want to deal with a mage, you can only use a mage to check and balance." Rat-a-tat-tat, 2 men directly shot bullets at the roof. When I heard the bullets penetrating the steel plates, I immediately ran forward. If I got hit by this thing, it would be no joke. The boss immediately changed plans here, sent several people forward to track that mage and must take him down. The moment they pushed open the door, a huge explosion went off in front of them. This scared them badly. That man actually set up such a powerful trap in just a few seconds. The boss leader was very shocked. What's going on? He's completely different from the mages I've encountered before, and his attacks are quite practical and effective. If I had to say, it feels like this person isn't like a mage, but more like a hunter or a mercenary. At this time, everyone in the car heard creaking sounds. This made the boss immediately feel something was wrong. His reaction was very quick. It must be this guy who separated the car and escaped. He should have discovered this earlier, and that guy had no need to entangle with their group. Now they could only watch helplessly as the front train drove away. Although the boss was very angry in his heart, he had already memorized my appearance, height, and weight. As long as we send someone to draw his portrait, even if he escapes to the ends of the earth, he will be killed by us. However, he soon felt something was wrong. He seemed to sense a very strong magical power fluctuation. He quickly turned around and found this magical power was right behind him from his perception. The next second his eyes widened in anger, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. I saw myself standing behind him at this time with magic already condensed in my hand. I said to them, "Goodbye, you've lived long enough in this lifetime." When my hand pressed down again, a golden energy wave rushed toward them. That golden light scattered into countless rays when it approached them, and each ray of golden light made them feel terrified because this power was really frightening. The next moment I calmly raised my hand. These people in front of me were finally eliminated by me. Although I appeared calm on the surface, I still felt unlucky today in my heart. What surprised me even more was that there was actually a bald man standing in front of me. He said viciously, "Why did you attack us? Aren't we pitiful? Our comrades were working hard for this world, and you actually killed them all." I laughed. "Is your moral compass already destroyed? It was you who attacked me first, and when I wanted to escape you wouldn't let me. Did you expect me to stand there and let you kill me? At this point it's useless to say more. You were the ones who wanted to kill me first, so I fought back and killed you. Stop trying to twist the facts." Then my expression changed drastically. "Since you've seen my true face today, you're destined not to leave alive. People like you, who I was prepared to let escape, but still chase after me to kill me, it's better to eliminate the threat early to avoid future trouble." However, to my surprise, just as I was about to attack, an ice magic directly shattered the man's body. I was somewhat shocked. Looking at the attack, I estimated they must have arrived. I saw at this time a white-robed female general slowly stepping in here, with incomparable majesty and seriousness, more like an experienced warrior. She asked if I was injured, saying that now all the thugs had been completely eliminated. Then the woman said proudly, "Because our Custy Knight order has arrived on the battlefield, any thugs will be eliminated completely by us." At the same time, on the other side, several thugs kept attacking forward, but no matter how they attacked, they still couldn't harm the man in front of them. The man rushed in front of them, with magic already condensed in his hand. He struck out fiercely, directly harvesting 3 lives, his movements very clean and efficient. He spoke into his earpiece. "Car 2 has been cleared. Car 1 has also been cleared at this time. All passenger safety has been ensured." After receiving the news, the woman was extremely relieved. "It seems our deployment this time didn't have any comrades injured. Then we'll escort the passengers safely to the next station." 3 hours later, I arrived at Pilbert Station. The woman walked over at this time. "Are you all right? Do you want to go to the hospital for a checkup?" I said to her. "No need to worry, thanks to the night order's help. I wasn't injured. I was just thinking about some problems earlier." The woman introduced herself. I'm Veronica Delavy, deputy leader of the Night Order. Seeing her so sincere, I was also prepared to reveal my disguised name, but before I could finish speaking, another group of people came from behind the woman. The newcomer was Lemris from the Pilbert Regional Inspection Office, who heard about the train attack incident at the Alet Mountain Range border, so he came specifically to take a look. Veronica confirmed the occurrence of this incident and claimed that all the thugs had been killed by them. Hearing this, Lemris was overjoyed. This saves a lot of trouble, thank you for the Night Order's hard work. However, there's one point that's puzzling in the report. Those suspicious individuals occupied the train too quickly. Even if mages were involved, they invaded the magical industrial train too easily. This also reminded Veronica, indeed, it seems to be exactly like this. So, they suspected that it was very likely that someone inside the train also participated in this attack. After thinking for a moment, Veronica made a judgment. What you say makes sense. Quickly check the personnel list of the entire train. After reaching an agreement, they prepared to first confirm everyone's identity, then let them go. Then Veronica also went to help and said to me, as long as you tell the truth about what happened here, there won't be any problems. I smiled slightly. I will naturally tell the truth. Absolutely won't tell a single lie. But in my heart, I felt that big trouble was coming because my identity and my appearance completely didn't match. First, my previously disguised identity as Gerald had no problems. The ticket was also purchased through official channels. I could confidently say I boarded this train legitimately. But the problem was that I was now showing my true face, which didn't look like a 40-something uncle at all. If my identity was exposed during the investigation, what awaited me might be the gallows. And outside now there were all police and knights. I had no way to escape at all. Plus that deputy leader's cold ruthlessness toward evildoers. Although she was all smiles just now, I had no doubt that the moment she discovered I was suspicious, she would cut me down. Just when I was panicking, someone asked if I was okay. You look a bit nervous, what's wrong? And he was about to confirm my identity. A train attendant nearby took out everyone's tickets, feeling that ticket 403 was fine. He looked at the information. 403 has 2 passengers. One is a 25-year-old male Ludwig Cherish, and another is a 40-something male Gerald. But where did the remaining person go? I started acting, speaking in a sad yet calm voice. After I was caught in the explosion during the attack, the train happened to be passing through the Alet mountain range. At that time, he should have fallen to the bottom of the cliff. The prosecutor's sinister gaze stared at me deadly, as if trying to see through my thoughts. But the more he looked like this, the more nervous I felt. At this time, Veronica rushed over. You don't need to investigate that person, because he's absolutely impossible to be a suspect. Just before we arrived, this man was already fighting with those people, if he was an accomplice of the criminals. Would he need to do this? Hearing this, the prosecutor nodded. I see. So you're actually a hero of this train. Then I was indeed somewhat rude earlier, Mr. Ludwig. After hearing his words, I was somewhat stunned. Did he mistake me for Mr. Ludwig? Then they were also surprised to discover that Mr. Ludwig was coming to Theowen to take up a position. When they looked at me again, their gazes were full of fervor. To have such high achievements at such a young age, truly remarkable. I smiled slightly. Since this was the case, I would go with the flow and admit it. Then I stood up and greeted them properly. Just as you said, I am the teacher who will be taking up a position at Theowen Magic Academy. I'm Ludwig Cherish. Although it's a bit thick-skinned, this is indeed the disguised identity I just thought of. After arriving at the station, they even personally escorted me off the train. They kept wanting to personally send me to the academy. I told them not to go to such trouble. I'll go to the academy myself. But what I was thinking was, it wouldn't be convenient to go with you. Wouldn't I be directly exposed when we get to Theowen? Then, to get rid of their entanglement, I lied that I still had some private matters to handle, so you don't need to mobilize so many people. Miss Veronica, although we didn't interact for long, I'm glad to meet you. We'll meet again if fate allows. Veronica was also very excited, Mr. Ludwig. If we're destined, we'll meet again. After I left, Miss Veronica couldn't help but be surprised in her heart. Only 25 years old, yet able to teach at that school. Truly a young genius. He should at least be a 4th order mage. I walked out a distance in extreme panic. I finally successfully disguised my identity and escaped. Although I felt somewhat apologetic in my heart, I really owed it to Mr. Ludwig's fortune. What made me feel fortunate was that this world's photography technology wasn't very advanced. It would be hard to distinguish the differences in our appearances just from photos. I thought the crisis situation should be over. I must temporarily hide, then create a new identity. But before one wave subsided, another rose. I hadn't even prepared to find a place to stay when someone called out to me again. After hearing him say Mr. Ludwig, I turned to look in the direction of the voice. The man was a white-haired butler who had just heard me chatting with the Night Order people and learned that I was Ludwig. So he greeted me. The butler smiled kindly. He was very worried about your safety after hearing about the train attack, so he immediately came here to pick you up, so please get in the car now. I'll take you to Theowen Magic Academy. I stared at him with a black line on my face. You dead old man, your timing really isn't good, and he doesn't seem to have recognized that I'm a fake. Then I took the butler's carriage to Theowen. During this period, I kept thinking of countermeasures, but no matter how I thought, I couldn't think of a perfect strategy. This is going to be big trouble. I didn't expect the school would personally send someone to pick up Ludwig, and this person is definitely not an ordinary employee. I looked up at the old man's back. His strong physique was one thing, but more importantly, I didn't even notice any movement when he approached me, so he was at least a knight by origin. So if I wanted to use clumsy excuses to get rid of him, he would immediately become suspicious and track me down. So I simply got directly into his carriage and waited to see what would happen. This way would actually be safer for me. And Gerald had already been confirmed dead. So in this country, I was equivalent to a ghost, meaning even if I was taken away now and disappeared from this world, no one would know of my existence. In this case, it would be better for me to be a person with identity, temporarily use Ludwig Cherish's identity to act, then look for opportunities to escape later. Soon we arrived at the academy's main gate, and inside here was the famous Theowen Magic Academy. Its scale was so large it was amazing. When I saw the scale here, I was also somewhat surprised in my heart. It must have cost billions to build this. The old man slowly said, "Please wait patiently, I'll take you to see the principal right away." A moment later, he brought me to the principal's office, while he waited at the door. After seeing the principal, I greeted her. "I'm Ludwig Cherish, reporting as requested by the principal." In front of me was a white-haired woman sitting there looking at me. The woman smiled slightly, but I couldn't tell what her smile meant. When her golden eyes slowly opened, I felt my body seem to have a strange feeling. She said, "I've been waiting for you, Mr. Ludwig. I'm the principal of Theowen, Eliza Vero." During this time, she brought up the previous train attack incident, asking if I was injured. After learning that I was fine, she was very happy. "You're truly amazing. You even assisted the Knight Order in subduing the enemies. Worthy of being the new teacher we selected." This woman's personality seemed to change very quickly. Actually, that golden gaze earlier made me feel something extraordinary. However, when I entered this room, I felt something a bit strange. I don't know if it was my psychological effect. Could this principal have met Ludwig before? Has she now discovered that I'm not Ludwig? But then I breathed a long sigh of relief. It turned out this principal was also meeting me in person for the first time. She even praised me as handsome. Then she gave me a contract, although you were notified beforehand, to ensure everything is foolproof. You should still take a look. I picked up this contract and looked at it. Although I planned to resign immediately and leave here, now wasn't the best time. But when I saw the monthly salary above, I was stunned. It was actually 30 imperial gold coins. This was too exaggerated. If converted to continental common currency, that would be 30 million Tanalu. Converted again, about 200,000 US dollars. The principal smiled slightly. "How do you feel about the compensation? Not bad, right?" I was slightly shocked. I'm really too poor. Seeing this income was really too tempting. This was simply fantastic. Just working for 1 year would be equivalent to me lying flat for a lifetime. I put my hand over my mouth, concealing my smile. I must stay calm now. If I stayed here, it also meant that Theowen's expectations for teachers were very high. But could I really hide my identity well in this Theowen Magic Academy where geniuses gathered? This made me very doubtful of my abilities, but I had already negotiated with the school and prepared to come work. If I was unwilling to work now, it would seem very suspicious. No choice. It seemed I could only bite the bullet. I'm definitely not because of money, just because resigning now would be very suspicious. And there was another point. I was quite good at deception, as well as putting on airs and creating atmosphere. These were all my specialties. Soon I reached cooperation with the principal. She also very much welcomed me to this school as a teacher. And this handshake represents 2 years of hard work, but these 2 years would earn more than others working 10 lifetimes. That night, I returned to my own room. I calculated there were still 3 weeks until school started. I still had plenty of time to prepare. What I didn't expect was that just for being a teacher at this school, they rented me a villa. It seemed this Magic Academy's teacher benefits were very good. Before I knew it, I had already been in this world for 27 years. Having no abilities, just being reincarnated with memories from my previous life, I initially had a hard time surviving in this world. I had experienced many life and death situations. I didn't expect to actually become a teacher at Theowen this time. This should be considered forced disguised employment. And now the most important thing was to first investigate Ludwig's personal background thoroughly. This would help with my disguise. Through my investigation, he was from a declining noble family in the Koyotan small kingdom, an only child, and both parents had died. The correspondence with acquaintances was all polite talk, showing that relationships weren't close. This meant that no one could recognize me. This was simply a perfect disguised identity. I slowly stood up, then what's left is preparing the content I need to teach in class, and gathering intelligence about Theowen Magic Academy. First, I need to familiarize myself with the terrain here. However, at this time I felt my stomach was a bit hungry, so these things should start tomorrow. This day I continued looking at existing intelligence in the Academy's coffee shop. Time passed very quickly. 2 weeks had already passed, but I basically understood what I needed to understand. And lesson preparation was also going very smoothly. Just at this time, a woman sat down behind me. She said, "It's so good to see you safe and sound. First order, I was worried that you had encountered some accident." The woman's words made my heart suddenly jump. "What's this situation?" I didn't answer her words, but waited for her to continue. After a moment of silence, the woman felt somewhat embarrassed. Why haven't you contacted us for 2 weeks? Other members are also very curious about your movements. Only then did I put the coffee in my hand on the plate. I've been confirming some things during this time. This person should have come looking for the original Ludwig, but mistakenly found me instead. The woman also didn't expect the attack incident, claiming it was an accident. Didn't expect the rebels to attack that train at that exact time. I nodded. Besides that, I also need intelligence related to Theo and Magic Academy. The woman was somewhat confused. Didn't we send you the relevant intelligence information? I could only pretend to be calm. I just want to confirm whether the intelligence received is accurate. Send me another copy later. But in my heart I was cursing. Damn, what's going on here? But I still have to continue cooperating with the other party. Can't let them suspect me. I asked her how things were being handled on her side. When the woman heard this question, she let out a sinister laugh. Everything is going smoothly on our side, and we've also eliminated traitors. Seems like we tore their limbs apart and threw them to wild dogs to eat. This is what happens to traitors who betray us. Her calm expression while saying such vicious words immediately made me feel something was very wrong. But I had to stay calm, otherwise I might be exposed. I told her to speak directly. What's the reason you suddenly came to find me now? The woman paused for a moment. You've been here for almost half a month, but there's been no news, so I was a bit worried. But my words made her feel like falling into an ice cellar. So you came to find me without authorization at this critical moment? Do you know that your impact on me is very significant? Saying this, I heavily slammed the coffee in my hand on the table. Do you know that there are many people watching me in here? You're dressed so strangely. Do you want me to be suspected by others? Although I didn't turn around to look, I could feel this woman was very afraid of me. After a round of putting on airs, I began to understand the current situation. How many people have you gathered on your side? The woman said nervously, Third Order 31 people and Second Order 7 people have successfully infiltrated the Magic Academy. I responded indifferently. I understand, since it's confirmed, then I'll leave first. But before leaving, I still threatened her. If you come to find me without authorization again, then I'll make you die without a burial place. My intimidation made her tremble all over. She felt like she could barely breathe. I told her, from now on, only when I call you for a meeting can you come. You're not allowed to appear in front of me at any other time. After I walked more than 10 steps away, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Listening to what the woman said, I feel their organization poses a great threat to me, especially when I heard them talk about eliminating key figures from the Magic Academy and saying they let wild dogs do that thing to traitors. These people were simply crazy. Just when I was about to leave her sight, she suddenly called out to me. I thought to myself this was bad. Could something have given me away just now? The woman said seriously, May I ask, how will you contact us when we meet next time? Embarrassing, extremely embarrassing. I was so embarrassed I couldn't even answer this question. Because this was something I hadn't thought of. They definitely had something for passing information between them. I started putting on airs again. Do I have to say this out loud for you to know? This scared the other party into not daring to speak. After returning to my residence, I began researching Ludwig's identity again. He was so young yet already a level 4 mage and also a teacher at Theowen. Damn, I should have suspected his identity long ago. The reason Ludwig's background was so perfect was because this was all designed. After all, he couldn't use his original identity while undercover. With Ludwig's identity, all these correspondence should be coded messages. This gave me a headache. This is bad. I made this decision in a hurry and happened to step on a landmine. And I had gotten new information earlier. That was First Order. The woman earlier should have taken me for First Order. This made me very speechless. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more ridiculous it seems. Which mysterious organization's executive got killed in the train attack incident? And he was an executive of a mysterious organization that had planted dozens of spies in Theowen Academy. Could such a powerful person have survived that explosion? I shook my head. No point thinking about these things with someone who's already dead. Logically, he should be dead, no matter what. For me now, there's another faction. In front of them, my disguised identity absolutely cannot be exposed. Now the most important thing facing me is whether I can find other companions from the First Order. If they disguise themselves vividly every time they meet, then I can only pray I won't be discovered by them. For me, the most ideal scenario would be to use Theowen Academy to eliminate those guys. After all, Theowen has powerful authority. As long as they take action, no matter how powerful the mysterious organization is, they're no match for them. The more I think about it, the more my head hurts. I can't let either side notice. So I need to appropriately leak some intelligence. Trying to preserve myself between two major forces will definitely be difficult. It seems that in the next 2 years, I won't be able to get through easily either. Soon, the day for the new semester to begin arrived. The bustling sounds in the corridor brought back fond memories. Someone spoke up, Have you heard the news? They say the course on manifestation theory and elemental understanding will be taught by a new teacher. The campus beauty chuckled. A new teacher gets to teach second years right away? Must be quite capable. Her best friend beside her said, The last teacher was driven away by you. I wonder how many moves this new teacher can withstand under your pressure. The students' information network was remarkably efficient. They even knew I was a former military officer who had published numerous papers. But there was one thing everyone knew. They heard he came from a fallen noble family. Flora snorted coldly. Looks like I can easily get my credits this time. Just then, I pushed open the door and slowly entered the classroom. The aura around me was quite intimidating. With a loud bang, my hand slammed heavily on the desk. "Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm the newly appointed teacher, Ludwig Cherish." After my words fell, not a single person in the room made a sound. Everyone was intimidated by my presence. I thought to myself, not bad. It seems these youngsters haven't seen much of the world yet. They're completely overwhelmed by my aura. I then continued, "Since we're still in the course ad drop period, there won't be class today. I'm just here to give you advance notice. Although I teach manifestation theory, I won't just teach you manifestation knowledge. I'll go beyond theoretical levels and focus on practical applications. Additionally, my course isn't just available to second-year students. First-year students can also apply." Seeing some people starting to discuss, I raised my hand to signal for quiet. "I understand your dissatisfaction, but I won't lower my teaching quality. You can rest assured about that." At this moment, a female student slowly raised her hand. "What's the reason for letting first-year students also attend this course?" The moment I saw her, I felt like I'd seen her somewhere before. She looked somewhat similar to the king and queen. I responded, "As an educator, I believe knowledge shouldn't be limited by grade level. Everyone should be given equal educational opportunities." My answer left the girl somewhat unsatisfied, as my explanation was rather weak, but she could only suppress her feelings. "If you're curious about it, then come listen to my next class." Finally, I warned these students about one more thing. If anyone thinks they can slack off and just coast through for credits because I'm a new teacher, then, as an educator, I'll make you deeply regret having such a complacent attitude. So you'd better not come to my class. I felt incredibly satisfied inside. I had prepared my lessons thoroughly, but the fewer students I taught, the easier it would be for me. There was another point. Having second-year students attend the same class as first-years would definitely hurt their pride. And since I told them directly that my class was difficult, who would want to attend? Now that I've finished speaking, does anyone have questions? Although some wanted to ask questions, seeing my intimidating presence left them speechless. Moreover, the students heard I was the youngest 4th-level mage, so they didn't dare ask questions casually in my presence. Seeing everyone's flustered state, I was extremely satisfied. If there are no questions, then class is dismissed. This concludes today's orientation. The campus beauty found it interesting. Let's see what kind of surprises you can bring me in your next class. As I prepared to leave the classroom, I felt incredibly pleased. If only a few students showed up to my next class, they'd be easy to handle. While this was good from my perspective, all the prepared responses I'd rehearsed didn't get used. Suddenly, I thought of a problem. Could they be deliberately ignoring me? If that were true, it wouldn't be good, because teachers should have some affinity in students' hearts. Could I have hurt their pride? Looking up again, I was somewhat stunned, because all the students had stepped aside to create a path for me to leave. This was their respect for the strong. My mind exploded with a thunderous realization. Had I really hurt these children's self-esteem? Just then, a pink-haired woman greeted me. She smiled gently. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Serena, and like you, I'm also a newly appointed teacher this time." I turned around and politely greeted Serena, then asked what she wanted to discuss with me. Serena looked shy. "Have you eaten yet? Would you like to have a meal together?" Moments later, I found myself in the teacher's courtyard, which was also our usual resting area. Two strangers greeted me. They were the summoning instructor and the counter-curse instructor, respectively. I also happily greeted them back. "I'm Ludwig Cherish, responsible for teaching manifestation theory." At this moment, I noticed a man staring at me from my right front at a 30-degree angle. I felt his gaze was somewhat unfriendly. After 2 seconds of eye contact, the man angrily turned away. The counter-curse instructor told me that was teacher Chris Baymore. As you can see, he's a noble. With that explanation, I understood. So there was 1 noble, 1 fallen noble, and 3 commoners among the newly appointed teachers. Although their statuses differed, they were all top-tier experts in their respective teaching fields. This meant that among these people, there might very well be other members of the First Order. The contact person had mentioned earlier that their people had already infiltrated the Magic Academy, but that statement was too conventional for me to trust my colleagues. Chris arrogantly said, "I really can't stand being here anymore. I just came to see what kind of people the new teachers are. But disappointingly, it's just a fallen noble and 3 commoners. Don't drag down my status. Let's all mind our own business and never meet again." Then he specifically called me out. "You're just a fallen noble. Don't get too full of yourself." The counter-curse instructor was very displeased. "Don't think you can openly look down on others just because you're a noble." The other 2 teachers also comforted me. "Let's just have a meal together and ignore that guy." During the evening, delicate fingers were typing. She reported everything that happened here to the person on the other end. The person above gave her an order. The First Order's first class absolutely could not be poorly attended. People must be arranged to go and make those students attend class. The woman pressed her lips together and sent a received message. She then added many friends, telling all first and second-year students to attend the lecture. At this moment, time came to the second day. I was curious whether there would be more than 10 people in the classroom. I had clearly warned them before that my class was a minefield, so no one should come to my class. Even if someone did come, it would probably be because other classes were full, and they had no choice but to select mine. With a creak, I pushed open the door. Looking inside, every seat was occupied, not a single empty spot. I hadn't expected the first class to be completely full. This really startled me. What was with these students? Why were there so many people? I carefully counted and found that all 80 spots were filled. Looking more closely, I discovered there were even more first-year students. Didn't they feel pressured attending class with their upperclassmen? This made me suspect someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have so many people. What a devious person indeed. But it was also possible that the students' pride had been challenged by me, so they all came to attend my class. After all, this was Theowen, the strongest magic academy. Since that was the case, I had no choice but to teach according to my prepared lesson plan. Nice to meet you all. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Ludwig Cherish, your professor, teaching manifestation theory. Above me, a student raised his hand with a question. Does all content refer to all 4 specializations? I looked over with an annoyed expression. Next time, you can only ask questions when I give permission. But since this is your first offense, I won't pursue it further. If anyone interrupts my class rhythm again and challenges the teacher's authority, I'll deduct points from that person. Since someone just asked a question, I'll answer it. I do indeed plan to teach you all 4 specialization areas. The so-called 4 specializations are a collective term for the 4 manifestation specialties: release properties, elements, telekinesis, and enhancement. Flora tapped the desk with her finger. Most people found learning 2 specializations quite taxing, yet he wanted to teach them 4. Could a mere new teacher really accomplish this? She felt I was just boasting. Then I began my first lesson. Today's class will start with explaining magic, which is something everyone finds quite interesting. My magic wand swayed in the air and a red fire vortex appeared. This is 3rd-level fire elemental magic, flickering flames formed by 7 elements working together in complementary fashion. I smiled slightly. What I'm about to demonstrate is a spell manifestation method that's at least 3 times faster than existing casting methods. The students immediately became restless. Is it really possible to achieve such short manifestation times? Even her best friend felt I was bragging and turned to ask Flora, is what he's saying true? Flora couldn't say for certain, but she believed it would be impossible without fundamentally changing the spell structure. Storing magic in scrolls or using residual memory were methods, but both had clear limitations. So if I was trying to use one of these methods to make such grand claims, she would mercilessly challenge me. She no longer expected to learn anything from me. She just hoped to see my embarrassed state after she challenged me. I slowly began. It seems you all have many doubts, so let me select a few people to answer your questions. As soon as I finished speaking, several people immediately raised various questions, but they were mostly first-year students. After answering several questions in a row, I asked them to quiet down first. If we change existing spells, that essentially becomes different magic altogether. So what I want to show you is magic that maintains existing spell structures while only improving manifestation speed. Upon hearing this, even Flora was somewhat stunned. Flora then raised her hand with a challenge. Teacher, that's impossible. Everything you just said is complete nonsense. I thought, finally, here comes the biggest troublemaker in this class. Everyone's eyes turned toward Flora. Although I was displeased that she spoke without getting my permission first, I still wanted to hear her argument. Flora slowly began. Under the condition of maintaining existing spell structures, there's only one way to shorten manifestation time: repeated practice to improve proficiency. You claim you can do something that no genius has ever achieved. Isn't that absurd? After hearing her words, I nodded in agreement. But what if it's not that improvement is impossible, but that no one was willing to improve it? How would that change things? The magic field has overemphasized tradition and history to the point of long-term stagnation. During this period, science has continuously developed, even threatening magic's long-held position. I'm not arguing that science is superior to magic. I mean that magic also has room for development. Therefore, your argument is wrong. Since no one has the will to improve it, I'll be the first to do so. Campus beauty Flora broke out in a cold sweat. Are you serious? Where does this inexplicable confidence come from? I didn't continue wasting time with Flora and directly cast a spell on her. This magic took about 10 seconds to activate. If the level increased, the time would be shortened to under 5 seconds. Not bad. From her response, I can tell she understands magic fundamentals well. Flora smiled confidently. If I cast it, it should only take 5 seconds. Seeing her confident expression made me laugh. I actually enjoyed challenging troublemakers. Since you're so confident, would you mind coming to the platform to demonstrate? Flora was very gracious and quickly came to the podium to demonstrate. As she waved her hand, flickering flames magic appeared before her. Everyone was amazed by Flora's speed, truly worthy of being the Lumos family's daughter. I looked at the pocket watch in my hand. From start to manifestation took 4.78 seconds total. It's hard to believe you're only a second-year student at this speed. Flora turned her head, ready to return to her seat. For her, this child's play was a piece of cake. But my next words shocked her beyond belief. Your speed is still too slow. The fastest record for a third-level mage is 4.41 seconds. That speed is still slow. Flora indicated she could make it even faster with more practice. I said dismissively, No matter how fast you get, in my eyes you're slower than a turtle. Even the world's fastest time of 4.41 seconds seems slow to me, let alone you, little girl. These terrifying words left students with expressions of horror on their faces. If he said this, he must be confident about it. So just how fast was his speed? Then I slowly extended my wand. Watch carefully, everyone. This is how flickering flames should be used. The next moment, I extended my hand directly, and golden light burst forth from the wand. This left the campus beauty very confused. What are you doing? That's not the flickering flames spell structure at all. However, the next moment, something jaw-dropping happened. Before me appeared magic identical to what Flora had cast. Flora and the class geniuses were completely stunned. We didn't blink just now, so why didn't we see the spell structure? Everyone was amazed by this operation. The spell structure was completed instantaneously. The campus beauty was incredibly shocked. That definitely wasn't the flickering flame spell structure, because she hadn't seen any intermediate processes before the spell completion. I knew none of them had seen clearly, so I planned to slow down and demonstrate again for them. The next moment, flickering magic appeared before me. Though it was the second time, it was still somewhat shocking. This operation left everyone speechless, and their way of looking at me finally changed. I checked my pocket watch. The flickering flame spell I just cast had a manifestation speed of 2 and 4 seconds. That's worlds apart from previous records, isn't it? But I believe you all must find something strange, because the spell structure I first cast wasn't flickering flames, yet I ultimately did produce the flickering flame spell. The magic I just cast actually incorporated something that has never appeared in this world. This is my self-created auxiliary stacking magic, a spell structure that exists specifically for activating spell structures. I've named this spell structure Source Code. Hearing this, all students in the classroom were shocked. They'd never heard of such magic existing in the world. This is actually a design that immediately outputs specified results when input parameters are entered. It's software that consumes data called magical power through biological hardware called mages, manifesting magic according to programs called spell structures. Flora was secretly amazed. The man before her had unfathomable abilities. Flora then lowered her head in shame. Since I've finished explaining, it's time for punishment. You interrupted my class rhythm without permission because you were trapped by your own narrow thinking. Do you admit this? My gaze became incredibly cold. Your behavior just now was openly challenging the teacher's authority. Therefore, I'm deducting points from Flora Lumos. Her best friend looked worried. Being deducted points at the start of the semester would greatly affect the final grade. Although Flora was furious inside, she could only grit her teeth and accept the punishment. Flora then turned around without looking back, preparing to leave. But I called out to stop her. One thing at a time. Your demonstration of flickering flames was quite perfect, so I'm awarding you 10 points. I actually don't dislike capable students. You're very excellent, but also very prideful. At my evaluation, Flora clenched her fists unwillingly. Hearing this, everyone's anxious hearts relaxed. Positive and negative canceled out, so there was essentially no point deduction. After Flora returned to her seat, her best friend asked with concern, "Were you hurt by today's events?" Flora turned her head away, suppressing her inner unwillingness. "I won't let such a small matter affect my mood. Thanks for your concern." Sally felt relieved. Truly worthy of Flora. You adjusted your mindset so quickly, but Sally had no idea how much unwillingness Flora felt inside. However, she wouldn't show any of this, as she was a strong-willed girl. Seeing those students intimidated by me, I took off my jacket and prepared to officially begin class. Next, I'll select several students with strong learning abilities and teach them source code. If you want to learn it, you must listen carefully. 10 minutes later, the entire classroom was incredibly quiet, with only me speaking eloquently. At this moment, one student was thinking, people around always described teacher Ludwig as a strange person, and I thought I'd chosen a terrible course. But seeing him today really changed my perspective completely. This teacher before me is truly remarkable. He instantly became my little fanboy. Time flew by, and while students were listening attentively, the bell rang. I turned around to leave and reminded them to thoroughly review today's lesson content when they got home. After I left, these students immediately became excited. They hadn't expected to learn new magic at the academy. But just then, the bespectacled youth heard inappropriate comments. Someone said, "What's so amazing about these trivial tricks?" Looking back, he saw a blonde delinquent arrogantly standing there belittling me. Not only that, he also mocked the bespectacled boy for being just a commoner, claiming commoners hadn't seen the world and were easily amazed by such small displays. Unknown to him, this bespectacled youth actually had significant background. However, the youth seemed not to hear his words. He looked around the classroom for 2 seconds, before realizing this blonde was talking to him. Seeing the other party about to lose his temper, he hurriedly stood up and apologized. But by this time, the other party was already furious. "You dare ignore me, the eldest son of Baron Felio." As his words fell, another man walked down from behind. "A mere Felio baronage dares to act so arrogant here? Aren't you just from the Empire's most remote borderlands?" Javan dismissed this contemptuously. "Has Theowen started accepting children like this recently?" The blue-haired youth sighed. He really didn't want to talk to idiots. Even if the academy accepts children like me, it's still better than accepting those foolish children from baronial families. His tone made Jevon very displeased. The next moment, his wrist flicked, and golden light appeared on his magic wand. "You dare insult nobility? I'll make you pay for your words and actions." The boy just looked at him coldly, seemingly not taking him seriously at all. "If you have the ability, then try it." However, his words made Jevon shudder, realizing the other party didn't seem afraid of him at all. The boy slowly walked down the steps. "I'm telling you to try it. See what consequences you'll face if you attack me here." He firmly believed that even nobles would be severely punished for causing trouble at Theowen Academy. "Didn't you read Theowen's regulations before enrollment, you fool? Besides, there's another important point. This is inside a classroom, with so many eyes watching. Don't you feel embarrassed?" After the boy finished speaking, he turned to look behind him and indeed found two people laughing at him. To avoid causing more trouble, he turned and left, but not before leaving a harsh parting remark. Little Glasses sighed with relief. This troublemaker finally left. He didn't want to get involved with these nobles. Little Glasses smiled at the boy. "Thanks for your help just now," and introduced himself as Aiden. The boy nodded and responded, "I'm Leo. You don't need to thank me. I just can't stand his way of showing off his nobility." Little did they know that this conflict would create a connection between these two, making them inseparable in the days to come. Just as they walked on the platform, a white-haired man behind them was staring at them both. The man looked at them with malicious amusement, his eyes full of playful interest. "These two little guys are really interesting." Meanwhile, my mood wasn't very good, and the reason was that everyone's reaction to me was much better than expected, which meant I couldn't slack off in the future. The world I had transmigrated to had a basic framework roughly equivalent to the 19th century. Even considering magical power, it still had many shortcomings compared to the technologically advanced 21st century. So not long after arriving here, I tried combining source code with science, and it worked out surprisingly well. I vaguely remember when my teacher first saw my conceptual content, their reaction was very bland, so I didn't have much expectation. But I ultimately tried it anyway and succeeded. However, I can't rely solely on source code. If I don't want people to discover my true purpose, I need to make more preparations. Walking along, I arrived at my dedicated faculty office. After pushing open the door, I found a woman standing before me. She was the academy's principal, here this time to see how my office setup was going. I thought coldly, this lie might fool a 3-year-old. I then sat on the sofa and brewed her a pot of tea. "If you have something to say, you can speak directly. But if you keep up this attitude, I'll feel quite pressured." The principal chuckled. "You're Theowen's highly regarded new teacher. As principal, I naturally need to show more concern." The next moment, her eyes flashed with a brief golden gleam. This gave me a headache. Why did I feel this indescribable irritation every time I made eye contact with the principal? The principal said huffily, "Can't you show some surprise?" I was really looking forward to it. I was so annoyed I wanted to slap her twice. This is scarier than encountering a ghost in the middle of the night. "Why are you appearing in my office?" It turned out the principal was planning to visit every teacher for the new semester, and I was the last one. This was unexpected. She cared so much about the teacher's situations. This made me suspect she might have noticed something wrong, especially since I was saved for last, and for her to hold the principal position, she must be able to detect suspicious movements within Theowen. This made me very annoyed. I was wrongly accused from start to finish. Although I was an executive of a mysterious organization, I didn't belong to that organization. She then asked her doubt, "I heard your course can be attended even by freshmen. Don't you have thoughts about grade-level divisions?" However, she didn't blame me for this point. Instead, she praised my teaching method as very unique, because this year's freshmen included several relatively outstanding students. She believed that if I taught them, I would definitely make them even more excellent. Then she pointed to a list on the desk, which contained students with special magical abilities. Besides that, there was also a blonde imperial princess, hoping I could pay her a little attention, otherwise, the academy would be in an awkward position. The principal smiled slightly. She had very high expectations for me and told me to keep up the good work. The principal then got up and left. But what I didn't know was that the moment the principal closed the door, her entire aura changed completely. The principal, who had been kind and amiable just moments ago, now had a completely dark expression. The butler beside her asked how the probe went. "Do you think Mr. Ludwig is reliable?" After hearing the butler's question, the principal glanced again at the door handle. The principal said while walking, "I didn't gain much from probing him just now. I mainly observe those who are very vigilant, but currently he seems relatively normal." Hearing this, the butler chuckled. "It seems Mr. Ludwig has no problems." At this moment, the principal showed a sinister smile. She was quite surprised inside. The principal really hadn't expected that a few minutes of probing would yield major discoveries. Her enchanting magic eye had made eye contact with me twice without any effect. If he were a 4th-tier mage, he would definitely be affected, but he showed no reaction to eye contact with the magic eye. This indicated one thing. I had resisted her magic eye's power through willpower alone. The principal sighed. How interesting. She hadn't encountered such an interesting person in a long time. The principal had recently received news about the recent train attack incident. It seemed a group of people was hiding in Theowen, so she couldn't let any suspicious details slip by. If this was all a smokescreen created by the train incident, and the real teacher had been replaced during this time, then Theowen would be in crisis. She then turned to ask the butler's opinion. Do you think my speculation just now was reasonable? The butler wasn't sure about this either, but he was certain I was definitely not an ordinary person. As for other matters, further observation was needed. But what they didn't know was that after the principal left, I was breathing heavily. I felt the principal's visit was just a pretense. From her earlier conversation, it seemed more like she came specifically to interrogate me. But I didn't dwell on this too much. After all, I hadn't revealed any flaws. I should first look at the student list in my hands. Opening it, Flora, who had performed magic today, was right in the center. Seeing this portrait, I remembered the scene of suppressing her earlier. She wouldn't use her family's influence to pressure me because of my actions, would she? Fortunately, I was clever at the time. After punishing Flora, I also rewarded her with 10 points. She shouldn't retaliate against me. I carefully examined the student list and found quite a few middle school students, including newcomers cultivated by the Magic Tower and an imperial princess. Just then, I noticed someone seemed special. This person was the bespectacled student who had argued with the blonde delinquent in class today. This guy actually has special magical abilities. I felt this guy looked somewhat familiar, but I couldn't remember where I'd seen him. None of this mattered. The main thing was I absolutely couldn't let my guard down at this academy, because the principal's probes were constant. Moments later, I finished reading all the student information on the list. The female who had made contact with me before was very fearful of me. I suspected she had never seen Ludwig's appearance, so she naturally accepted my physical changes. If the real Ludwig was skilled at disguise and infiltration, then we were the same type of people. I shook my head, trying to shake these dangerous thoughts from my mind. I felt the best thing for me now was to stay put and continue being this academy's teacher. At this moment, a man approached me and handed me a patrol duty roster. What I didn't expect was that I had to go on duty on my very first day of teaching. I had an ominous feeling inside, sensing something bad would happen tonight. Meanwhile, in the training hall, most students were practicing magic here. At this moment, a woman said extremely arrogantly, "You actually dare to be fierce with me. You really don't want to live anymore." The girl opposite showed no fear and said resolutely, "Everyone has the right to use this place. Why should I leave? If anyone should get out, it should be you, since I was here first." Her words made the other girl laugh in anger. A commoner actually dares to talk back to me. This comment caused the silver-haired girl's displeasure. Theowen doesn't rank by title or bloodline. Don't you even know this? The girl and the two people behind her dismissed this with disdain. You actually believe such words meant to comfort yourselves. What foolish commoners. The girl was too lazy to argue further, knowing they wouldn't listen to anything she said anyway. This made Miss Dunema even more furious. A commoner actually dares to ignore what I'm saying. Dunema then suddenly raised her hand, aiming at the girl to cast low-level magic. But this magic had offensive power. If the sneak attack succeeded, the girl would definitely be injured. With a crackling sound, this magic split into several lightning bolts that flew forth. The other two nobles in the hall were shocked. They hadn't expected Miss Dunema to actually attack a student within the academy. The girl was startled. She couldn't react to this magic attack at all, just as she thought she was about to be hit by magic. There was a loud clang, and another magic spell suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking the attack. Then Dunema's magic power was dispersed. Dunema roared in anger. "How dare you? Who dares to interfere with me?" It was then that my voice rang out across the field. "I should be asking what you're doing here. You're actually fighting randomly on this training ground built for students to develop their strength, causing such big trouble right at the start of school. Aren't you afraid that Theowen will bring down punishment?" The next moment, I stepped into the void and walked straight down from the sky. Dunema didn't realize she had made a very serious mistake. Even if there are academy rules, so what? I was just maintaining my noble authority. However, at this moment, I said the same words as the silver-haired girl had said earlier. In Theowen, all students are equal, with no distinction between high and low. No matter how noble your bloodline is, it doesn't matter in this school. The girl's body trembled slightly. It seemed this teacher wanted to give her trouble. Then I told both of them to come with me to the office. However, Dunema was very dissatisfied, saying through gritted teeth, "You are just a fallen noble. Why are you being so arrogant in front of me?" After hearing Dunema's words, I stopped walking. Dunema thought it was over. She had said something she shouldn't have said. Dunema nervously clenched her fists. But what's done is done. Words spoken are like spilled water. Even the silver-haired girl was shocked by my aura, swallowing involuntarily. Then I slowly turned my head. My eyes were filled with endless killing intent, staring deadly into Dunema's eyes and saying, "If you have the courage, try saying that again." The next moment, tremendous magical power spread from my body, enveloping Dunema's entire being. It was only then that Dunema clearly realized just how terrifying this teacher before her was. My tone was extremely cold. You said I'm a fallen noble, right? Students who saw things going badly immediately went to find other teachers for support, hoping to ease the tension in the field. Serena's face changed dramatically, raising her hand to try to stop my next action. However, at this moment, my arm had already raised high, but I only patted her shoulder and didn't do anything to Dunema. Teacher Serena's body instantly froze. Fortunately, nothing terrible had happened. Dunema also looked at me with a bewildered expression. I spoke to her in a calm tone. As you said, I am indeed a fallen noble. But this is Theowen. I am a teacher at Theowen, so what you said was challenging a teacher's authority. Am I wrong? Dunema suppressed her anger and nodded, seeing that she admitted her mistake. I began to praise her. You're still an immature student. Perhaps it's difficult to accept changes in your environment. So this time I'll only give you a verbal warning for your oath. Of course, the mistakes you made against your classmate must receive appropriate punishment. After learning that Line wasn't injured, I asked Teacher Serena behind me to come over. Serena would handle the rest. While I left the training hall without looking back, Line clenched her small fists. She was somewhat excited because Teacher Ludwig, whom she respected, actually knew her name. In that previous class, she was just one of 80 students, and a commoner at that. My words from class echoed in Line's ears again. In Theowen, all students are completely equal. Thinking of this, her admiration for me grew even stronger. Initially, Line's impression of me was of a very scary teacher, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Now Line felt I was someone she could follow and trust. She pinched her little face. Why did it suddenly feel so hot? Meanwhile, I was resting on a bench outside. At this moment, my head was in unbearable pain, the kind of deep, bone-piercing agony. I took out a bottle of medicine from my coat. With a crack, I directly poured 3 pills into my mouth and chewed them, finally relieving my headache. If I didn't have this medicine, something terrible would happen. Although my head still hurt a bit, it was now bearable. I almost made a fool of myself just now, but fortunately I left early. The abnormality in my body appeared when I entered the first training ground, though I could still hold on then. But my condition seemed to worsen along the way. I had wanted to leave the training ground quickly, but that damn blonde had to loudly humiliate me at that moment, so I couldn't pretend not to hear. But no matter what, my bluffing performance just now should have been pretty good, though my expression must have looked terrible. Looking at the empty bottle, I had finished the medicine I brought. It should last about 5 more days, but I might need to use magic in the coming days, and borrowing from the pharmacist would definitely leave records. I sighed deeply. This was getting too dangerous. I needed to contact that guy as soon as possible. Time quickly came to the next morning. Today I heard some strange news. Apparently werewolves had been spotted nearby. This news came from Serena, though she hadn't seen them herself. Just yesterday, students from Pilbert said they saw a black shadow moving through the night mist across rooftops, and that figure looked very much like a werewolf. I chuckled. This sounds like an urban legend, quite mysterious. But Serena's next words made me somewhat doubtful. She actually said she'd seen that black shadow in Theowen Academy too. Serena said very seriously, although it might be a mistake, it could also be real. After all, this is Theowen Academy. Strange phenomena caused by magical power could appear. Wasn't there a book called Theowen's 7 Great Mysteries before? I was directly surprised there were actually such rumors. This was the first time I'd heard of it. At this point, the counter-curse instructor also excitedly said, "Speaking of which, Teacher Ludwig, I heard your first class amazed everyone." The two of them greatly admired me and asked how I achieved that source code magic. After the counter-curse instructor finished speaking, a strange phenomenon occurred in the scene. All the students stopped moving as if time had paused. I slowly began to speak. Actually, source code is quite simple, just auxiliary magic I created on a whim. The counter-curse instructor looked at me admiringly. "So you're this amazing? You know, there aren't many teachers on the entire continent who can easily develop new magic." All the students in the field glanced over in unison, wanting to hear me continue. I quickly noticed this phenomenon. Everyone seemed very interested in my magic, but it didn't seem appropriate to explain here. And even if I told them, they wouldn't understand in such a short time. The counter-curse instructor recommended I apply for a patent on this magic. I could make big money in the future. I directly refused her suggestion. On the contrary, it's best not to apply for patents casually, because without backing, it's easy for others to steal or exploit them. This behavior also caused several teachers to become dissatisfied with me, especially Chris Bemore, who looked like he could kill me with his gaze. But what concerned me was the werewolf Serena had mentioned earlier. That night I left Theowen Academy. The entire street had only me on it, waiting quietly for another person. Just as I was about to look around and familiarize myself with the environment, a large foot suddenly landed behind me. The werewolf bent down and gathered strength. The next second, he displayed the werewolf's speed to its extreme. However, his sharp claws didn't catch me. I easily dodged them. Then I lifted my foot and kicked him dozens of meters away. I chuckled. "I wondered why you were so slow. Turns out you were waiting for the right moment to play this kind of joke." The werewolf laughed heartily. "We haven't seen each other in so long. Couldn't you at least pretend to be scared?" Then the werewolf flipped up and half knelt on the ground. "It's been so long, big brother." My face also showed an excited smile. "It really has been a long time, Hans." How did you end up looking like this after all this time? Hearing my mockery, Hans broke out in a cold sweat on his nose. You think I wanted to look like this? Who could have expected that a little dog being held by an old lady would suddenly pounce on me? I couldn't help but cover my mouth and snicker. You really are a guy with a natural comedic talent. Actually, Hans is a human with a somewhat special constitution. If bitten by an animal, that animal's traits will manifest in his body. Regardless of personal will, he will transform into a half-human, half-beast form. Then, I took out a comprehensive remedy and handed it to him. Hans didn't hesitate and injected it into his arm. The next moment, all the hair on his body began to recede, and his face became human-like again. This appearance reminded me of when we first met. At that time, I was commissioned to subjugate a mysterious holy relic, but encountered a giant chihuahua there. I was somewhat at a loss then, but fortunately he explained clearly, or I would have killed him. After recovering his body, he kept complaining, "You disappeared for so long and actually became a teacher at Theowen. When did you get this identity?" He asked seriously what had happened. Being a teacher at Theowen was no joke. A few minutes later, after understanding what happened, he burst into laughter. "You're really amazing, big brother. If it were me, I'd definitely be exposed and caught in the end. How did you manage to fool both sides? And that guy called Ludwig Cherish is also a member of a mysterious organization, seems to be called the First Order." Hans carefully recalled, "This name seems familiar. I heard a new organization appeared recently. They call each other team members and orders or something. Those guys seem to be from a mysterious organization." His words gave me a flash of inspiration. "Isn't this the organization I'm looking for? This group seems to be called Black Dawn." Knowing the other party's background, I had to take some preventive measures. Hans reached out and handed me a box. This was the purpose of my coming here to meet him. Opening it, inside was a whole box of small medicines. I curiously asked, "You arrived a couple days ago, we could have met immediately. Why did you tell me in the letter to wait for a while?" Hans was confused. "Big brother, what are you talking about?" I spoke frankly. The news about werewolf appearances the night before last has spread everywhere, but Hans said that wasn't him. He had just arrived in Pilbert today. For a moment, both of us felt awkward. The next moment, an intense howl suddenly rang out. Hans was stunned by the scene above. Looking up, I was also quite startled. It seemed the real werewolf had appeared. The werewolf's mouth seemed to extremely crave blood. Hans wanted to escape while the werewolf hadn't noticed them. This was the perfect time to run. Looking up, I almost dropped my jaw. With my keen eyes, I quickly noticed the necklace around the wolf's neck. Then I pulled out my gun and aimed at the werewolf. With this thing, I believed we could definitely win this confrontation. Hans also remembered. "You used this gun before. You seemed to use a fake name then, but I forget what it was." My voice spoke faintly. My former name was Van Helsing, also a mercenary of Abraham's army. At the same time, the werewolf seemed to notice our direction and immediately turned to look over. I heavily kicked an oil drum nearby, wanting to attract the werewolf's attention. Sure enough, after hearing the noise, the werewolf quickly spotted me. The next moment, the werewolf's body shot up from the ground and disappeared from its original position. When it appeared again, it was already in front of me, its imposing aura quite terrifying. The chains on the werewolf caught my attention. Although I had many questions, I had to subdue him first. As long as I could subdue him and interrogate him, I could definitely solve the doubts in my heart. After a howl, the werewolf quickly attacked me. Then a strange scene occurred. No matter how the werewolf attacked, it couldn't touch me at all. Even though it was very fast, I could still use magic to dodge. Soon I was pressed into a corner by the werewolf's attacks. The next moment the werewolf's attack came again. This time it seemed truly angry. But I smiled faintly. I was just waiting for you to lose your rationality and charge over. The next moment, the magic circle I had set up earlier suddenly floated over. The werewolf was caught off guard by this move, its body completely unable to move, firmly controlled by my magic circle. With a clang, the werewolf's body heavily crashed to the ground. However, what happened next would cause the werewolf unbearable pain. It held its ears with both hands, continuously howling. Hans, hiding in the corner, saw clearly, but didn't understand why the werewolf was making such painful cries. Actually, the magic circle just now was an ultrasonic attack spell that could subject the werewolf's ears to hundreds of times normal ultrasonic attacks, making its head extremely painful. I had even taken out a gun to deal with it, but it seemed unnecessary now. Then I took out a syringe. "Let me see where you were manufactured, you creature." But just then, I heard the patrol team's voices. This made me feel very unlucky, encountering them at this exact moment. At the same time, my momentary distraction gave the werewolf a chance to escape. In just the blink of an eye, the werewolf's body had appeared on a tall building. I casually raised my hand, and very sturdy iron chains appeared from my sleeve. With a clang, I nailed the claw to a solid part of the wall. This werewolf underestimated me too much. If it wanted to escape, it had to see if my chains would allow it. While the werewolf was focused on escaping, my figure also appeared in midair, my gaze locked deadly onto its body. This reminded me of the battlefield before. No enemy I've ever locked onto has escaped. I wonder how long you little werewolf can hold out. Soon the patrol team discovered someone on the roof, but it was too far to see clearly. With a whoosh, the werewolf moved very fast. But my speed was no slower, following close behind the werewolf. The werewolf leaped onto the rooftop. Looking back, it was terrified. It hadn't expected my speed to match its own. I slowly stood up and said to it, "Originally I just wanted to restrain you appropriately, but I didn't expect you to seek your own death." I quickly drew the throwing knife from my coat. The werewolf clearly knew that if it didn't eliminate me, it would have no chance to escape, so without any hesitation it charged at me. The instant it charged, I flicked my wrist and threw the knife in my hand. But this throwing knife didn't seem to cause any damage. The werewolf dodged the knife with a twist of its head. The next moment, the boomerang passed over the werewolf's neck again, nearly cutting its main artery. I praised the werewolf. "You do have some skill, but not very much. I had planned to finish you with that move, but I didn't expect you to dodge it perfectly. Seems I need to use some real techniques." I raised my hand, and blue magic power condensed in my palm. Then the boomerang hit the werewolf's arm. The moment it hit the arm, I hooked my finger. The next second, the boomerang I threw curved at a strange angle around behind the werewolf. Caught off guard, the werewolf was hit in the head by the boomerang. At the same time, my body quickly approached the werewolf's body. But what I didn't expect was that the werewolf reacted very quickly and immediately kept its distance from me. But it ignored my boomerang. Its elbow was hit by my boomerang once again. I also took advantage of the moment when the werewolf's elbow was injured to immediately jump above it. The next moment, my attack was actually bitten and held firmly by the werewolf. But I wasn't panicked at all, instead drawing the sword hidden in the staff. This reminded me of my days as a mercenary. Countless famous figures had died under my hidden sword, and there had never been a miss. At the same time, I had already prepared for the slashing motion. The werewolf's eyes widened, but it was powerless to do anything except watch helplessly as the sword got closer and closer to its head. With a sharp sound, after my sword fell, the werewolf's head separated from its body. At this moment, Hans below had just avoided the guard's pursuit. Walking along, he suddenly found something had fallen in front of him. Looking closely, he was scared out of his wits. It was the werewolf corpse I had just killed. At this time, I floated down lightly from above. Hans asked me what to do. Should he hide this corpse? After all, it wasn't appropriate to leave it here. I felt it was unnecessary since I had already taken the sample I needed. Let it stay here. Hans was a bit confused. "Since this wolf head is useless to you, why did you bring it over?" I looked at him playfully. "I brought the wolf head over naturally to scare you. What else did you think?" After some joking around, I confirmed one thing. This guy wasn't a mysterious creature but an artificially created test subject, so I decided to advance my plan. After hearing the plan I mentioned, Hans looked shocked. "The plan you're talking about isn't that one, is it?" I nodded. "Now we should slowly establish our footing. This place is much better than the capital in all aspects. Anyway, I can only stay in this city for now. In Theowen, there are not only mysterious organizations of unknown identity, but also guys doing unconscionable experiments. Most importantly, this is a big city with a group of street thugs." I told him to stop talking nonsense and hurry up to collect intelligence. Hans was dumbfounded. "You don't want me to collect intelligence alone, do you?" I had already thought of what to say. "I'm being watched now and can't act rashly, so you go collect intelligence first. After you're done, tell me, and I'll handle the rest." Hans could only agree, and collecting intelligence was his specialty anyway. Soon someone revealed that since last Sunday, 5 more people in Pilbert had been killed, bringing the total victims to over 10, although the perpetrator's identity hadn't been determined. But witnesses claimed it was a terrifying beast with black fur, and the authorities announced it was just a crazy killer, promising to arrest him soon, but citizens remained panicked. Soon I noticed something wrong. Why does this say Sunday? I remember I eliminated the werewolf on Saturday. Could there be more than one werewolf? Then the communication crystal beside me rang, meaning the leadership wanted to call us for a meeting. 2.5 hours later, all teachers gathered in the hall. Serena waved at me, signaling me to sit beside her. The moment I entered the hall, everyone's eyes focused on me. After all, I was now a celebrity at the school. Before I could sit down, Serena told me, "Do you know that 2 students were attacked last night? Fortunately, their injuries weren't life-threatening. From their wounds, it looked like they were clawed by wild beasts. The students who regained consciousness also said a terrible beast attacked them. Since last week, some rumors have been circulating, and victims have appeared in Pilbert too." A moment later, someone stood up, signaling everyone to be quiet. The principal had arrived. Serena whispered to me, "She's Mary Rose, who teaches potions. She's been a veteran at Theowen for over 20 years. Soon the principal Eliza Vero's figure entered, emanating an aura of authority. "I've called everyone here because there's something urgent to inform you all. I heard that recently strange creatures have appeared inside Theowen, and last night 2 freshmen were seriously injured, although the perpetrator's identity is unknown. According to witnesses, it seems to be werewolves, so-called mysterious creatures." At this point, a man stood up cursing, "That's impossible. Principal, you must be mistaken. How could it be mysterious creatures?" The principal's speech was interrupted by this voice. making her very displeased. "Do you have something to say, Teacher Hugo Boltag?" The man found it absurd that the academy was attacked by mysterious creatures, because how could werewolves possibly appear in the protected Theowen? Besides, how could we just believe students' ghost stories? The principal brushed back her hair, anger rising within her. "I just clearly said there were 2 victims in the academy. Didn't you hear?" The man said he heard, definitely heard, but precisely because he heard it, he was more convinced it wasn't werewolves doing, because weren't those 2 victims both noble children? The principal's gaze was ice cold. She really didn't know what this teacher was trying to say, but felt like he was protecting the werewolf and preventing Theowen Academy from investigating further. The man continued, saying he thought the perpetrator should be a Theowen student, and a commoner student at that. The principal definitely didn't believe this. She couldn't believe such a thing would happen at her school. But Hugo Boltag became more excessive, thinking this incident was caused by commoner students. Among so many students, only noble children were injured. What other reason could there be? Hugo Boltag felt this incident should be commoners impersonating werewolves to attack noble students. I boredly tapped my shoulder, making no comment on what had just happened. Actually, I had originally thought this matter would be very disadvantageous to Black Dawn, but I miscalculated. They were actually causing factional disputes at a time when unity was needed. From their discussion, I concluded that this fat man and the principal were very much at odds. This made me think that perhaps this was the current state of Theowen, the first magic academy. There were multiple branches and factions within the academy. At the same time, a small spider landed on my shoulder. This made me curious about where this insect had descended from. Then I held this insect in my palm and rubbed it. When I opened it again, I was surprised to find that the insect had turned into a paper note with information. It read, 3 test subjects escaped. Please capture alive immediately. If the situation becomes critical, eliminate completely. But if the test subjects are taken away, our side risks exposure. I stared at the note for quite a while, almost losing focus. Then I clenched my fist hard. How could this organization assign me such a task? I was already physically and mentally exhausted, and now they wanted me to carry out such a difficult mission. Teacher Serena seemed to notice something was wrong with me and asked if I was feeling unwell somewhere. I hadn't expected this incident to be related to Black Dawn. From Black Dawn's actions, it seemed this incident was also beyond their expectations. It was good that those guys were taking a hit, but there was one problem. If my true identity was exposed, I might face their endless retaliation. In that case, I couldn't just sit and wait for death. I had to eliminate those guys before Theowen, because if I was discovered, I'd be finished. The principal then said to Hugo, "How you think is your freedom, but please handle the tasks assigned to you properly. From now on, patrols must be strengthened, and students must be warned not to go out at night. If anyone doesn't cooperate, their credits can be deducted. This is a direct order from the principal." Hugo nodded dissatisfiedly, agreeing on the surface. After the meeting ended, I walked around the campus. I noticed someone following me secretly from behind, so I told her to come out. I had already discovered her. The girl nervously emerged from behind the tree. This person seemed familiar. She seemed to be the one who initially approached me, but I hadn't expected she would infiltrate Theowen Academy as a student. I asked her what she wanted from me, but then thinking this place wasn't suitable for conversation, I told her to follow me somewhere else. The girl then nervously followed me to a cafe. The girl was called Sedina Rosen. Since she had a surname, she probably didn't enter Theowen as a commoner. I asked what her real name was, but my question made the girl very uneasy. The next moment, I was surprised. I hadn't expected that to actually be her real name, not a fake one. Then I asked her another question. "You're not following me just because you think I'm handsome, right? You must have something you want to tell me." The girl looked around. "It's really inconvenient to talk here. Could we change places?" After Sedina Rosen's words, I suddenly moved my foot, creating a soundproof barrier between us. As long as others didn't enter this field, they couldn't hear our conversation. I emphasized one point to her. We had to change how we address each other. "You're not allowed to call me First Order anymore." The reason was simple. Calling me that in front of others would only expose my identity. Now getting to the point, what's our current situation? "Tell me specifically," Sedina Rosen said seriously. "The recent werewolf incidents were caused by black mages from our subordinate organization. The Samsa School is conducting mysterious creature experiments there. The Samsa School is an organization of scientists who were expelled from the Association for Conducting Irrational Experiments. Although my clearance level doesn't allow me to know what experiments they're doing together. But during some research, the test subjects suddenly escaped. And one of the test subjects entered the city through the sewers, which is why there were victims." Her words startled me. So that's how it was. No wonder monsters appeared in the academy. Seeing my expression, Sedina seemed a bit scared. I told her not to be afraid and to continue. Then Sedina continued, "This is their responsibility. Originally, we indeed didn't need to interfere. But I heard this matter was related to you, so they sent me to find you. Besides, I heard that another First Order, Mr. Victor Dreadup, borrowed your name. After hearing what she said, this gave me a headache. I just lent him my name, but I didn't expect such a thing to happen. Then I assigned her a task. Now that things have gotten big, we must eliminate the werewolves as quickly as possible. There are still 2 werewolves left, because on Saturday, I already eliminated 1. Sedina showed an extremely admiring expression. I hadn't expected this capable guy was only 3rd sequence. When she contacted me before, she didn't let anyone notice, so I suspect there's a possibility that this guy might be isolated. This situation is very common inside. After all, such antisocial organizations don't like noble members. I had just discovered cracks within Theowen, and now I've learned that there are also cracks within Black Dawn. Perhaps I could gain something from Sedina. At this point, I felt it was about time, so I stood up. I raised my hand to dispel the magical barrier I had just set up. I also praised her. The first time we met, your description was a bit unclear, but this time you described things very well, and I didn't expect you to be such a cute girl. I hope you can be this concise and clear in your descriptions next time too. Sedina showed an expression like she wanted to cry. In her entire life, this was the first time anyone had praised her, and from such an impressive person at that. So after I left, I didn't hear her say thank you for the compliment. Little did I know, our scene just now had been seen by someone else, and judging by the angle, the person seemed to have specifically come to follow me. This person was Flora. She felt that if we needed magic to isolate our conversation, there must be some unspeakable secret. The next day in class, Flora seemed absent-minded. She had seen from the window that the color of the magic should have been sound-blocking magic. Ordinary people can't sense the color and scent of magic, so they wouldn't notice. But she didn't know what we were talking about, which made Flora very annoyed. Soon the class teacher finished the lecture time, reminding students not to believe strange rumors and not to wander around outside at night. Everyone discussed. They heard that if you're still wandering outside at night, you'll have your credits deducted. Aiden felt they shouldn't investigate this matter too much, since getting caught would mean losing credits. Leo knew Aiden would say this. He understood his personality too well. Just then, a woman heavily slammed onto their desk. Aiden happily greeted her. I didn't expect you to be so energetic so early in the morning. But Tessie's fiery temper directly cursed at Aiden. Who wants to greet you? Who do you think you are? Then Leo delivered the finishing blow. Are you still bitter about losing to him in the magic contest before? Just as Leo guessed, Tessie was preparing to have another showdown with Aiden, this time without holding back, going all out. But Aiden directly refused. He had classes during the day, so he couldn't duel with her. And with werewolves prowling at night, they couldn't go out casually. At this point, Tessie was ready to use provocation. Are you trying to use this excuse to run away? So Leo also became curious, both of them staring at Aiden. But Aiden remained very calm, then just consider me scared. So Tessie thought of a compromise. Let's make a bet on who catches the werewolf first, how about that? Leo agreed immediately, but Aiden standing beside him looked shocked. Don't you two care about your credits anymore? Tessie dismissed this with contempt. Credits are nothing. What matters most is improving our own strength. You can't run away just because you're scared. After she left, Aiden nervously asked, why did you say that? Leo shrugged indifferently. I was just going along with her casually. The teachers will handle the werewolf situation anyway, but Aiden felt like Tessie was taking it seriously. Leo turned around in surprise to look at Aiden. Tessie's not stupid. How could she possibly go do something so reckless alone? Stop overthinking it. After a moment of silence, both of them suddenly stood up at the same time. They thought carefully. Tessie had always been quite impulsive in everything she did. Could she be taking it seriously this time too? Then they nervously looked out the window. At that moment, they saw Tessie had already gone to the first floor, but thankfully she was heading back toward the dormitory. But then the scene changed. Tessie suddenly turned and headed somewhere else. In Tessie's mind, she had already taken this bet seriously. This gave the two of them quite a scare. This fool, she's not really going to risk catching werewolves, is she? Something big is definitely going to happen this time. That night, I began patrolling the school again. More people came looking for me today than usual, several times more than before. The fat man who had confronted the headmaster also came to see me, wanting me to give the noble students some special treatment to help his family's restoration. This guy was even approaching fallen nobles. You could tell he was quite desperate, but this was basically telling me that supporting the headmaster would be more beneficial for me, so I spoke to him righteously. In Theowen Academy, there's no distinction between commoners, nobles, and royalty. I don't plan to change this philosophy. Then I walked away without looking back. If I allied with them, it would only expose that my family identity was fake. How could I possibly cooperate with them? Most importantly, I didn't want to anger the headmaster for no reason. While thinking about this, I heard some commotion behind me. I yanked away the obstructing bushes and discovered 3 students hiding inside. The blonde boy was startled. Teacher, you've misunderstood us. We just came out for a walk, but I completely ignored them and directly deducted 5 credits from each of them. These kids actually wanted to catch werewolves for the reward money. They really had nerves of steel. So I needed to resolve those 2 werewolves quickly, or the situation would only get worse. But before that, I had to handle one more thing. At this time, near the sewage treatment plant by Theowen, I came from the surface down to the water pipes below. I had heard from Sedina before that the werewolves infiltrated Othello through the sewer system. The only sewer pipes that could accommodate werewolf-sized bodies were here. Looking around, I saw wolf footprints all over the ground. I discovered these 2 seemed to be heading in the same direction. I hoped the tracks wouldn't break off midway. Soon I reached the deepest part and found the 2 sets of footprints had separated. They must have decided to split up. so I changed direction and followed the larger footprints. As I walked, I discovered the large footprints were heading toward the school. They were very likely choosing this direction for hunting. So the most dangerous one right now was the werewolf with the large footprints. It wouldn't be surprising if someone was attacked at any moment. Just as I thought this, I heard screams from behind me. It looked like that werewolf had made its move. My body sprinted quickly toward the direction of the screams. Sure enough, just as I predicted, there really was a werewolf attacking two girls. The blonde girl cursed under her breath. At this rate, they might not make it in time. At the same time, I cast magic from not far away, preparing to delay the werewolf's attack. The next moment, a blindingly bright flame shot toward the werewolf. The werewolf reacted quite quickly, immediately raising its hand to block the flame attack. But this also gave me some breathing room. I sprinted directly in front of it and kicked it flying. Then I stood in front of the two girls, protecting them from any other harm. The two girls were overjoyed. Thankfully, the teacher appeared in time, or they would have died. I slowly spoke, Line and Elendil von Axelion. The two girls immediately stood up, thinking the teacher would have them assist in battle. But I angrily said to them, "You two will each lose 5 credits. This hit them like a bolt of lightning. They hadn't expected that. Instead of assisting in battle, what awaited them was the punishment of losing credits. The princess thought the teacher was being a bit cold and heartless. At a time like this, you should first care about whether we're injured. But I couldn't be bothered with her. You two are out this late at night and still acting so righteous about it." At this time, Line explained, "Please don't deduct her credits. I fell asleep while reading, so the princess passing by saved me." I said gently to Line, "The teacher acknowledges that you love studying, but you also need to learn to assess situations." This made the princess feel somewhat speechless. She always had a feeling of being treated differently, as if the teacher wasn't being fair. Since that's how things were, I instructed Elendil to take Line back to the dormitory, and then I wouldn't deduct credits from either of them. The princess was certainly willing to do this, and immediately carried Line back to the dormitory. At the same time, the werewolf also came to its senses. I turned to look in the werewolf's direction. "Next, your opponent will be me." The werewolf was very angry after its arm was burned, but it always felt like the man in front of it wasn't easy to deal with, so with a whoosh, it directly ran away. I told the two of them to quickly return to the dormitory, while I myself chased after the werewolf. I couldn't let it escape. This werewolf was very fast. It was already preparing to climb up a tall building. With a clank, an iron chain appeared from my sleeve. Hearing this sound, Line looked back. She had seen this in books before. This seemed to be levitation magic. Soon, the werewolf and I faced off on the rooftop. With 2 whooshes, the werewolf and I moved at the same time, so fast that it was impossible to see clearly. In just a few seconds, we had exchanged over 10 moves, and it was still a draw. With a thud, we both landed on the ground. I felt this werewolf was much stronger than the previous one. However, after fighting, I noticed its movements were very large. As long as I could easily dodge its attacks, I could exhaust its stamina. Then, when its old strength was spent and new strength hadn't emerged, I directly used magic attacks on it. Then I jumped up above it. I was basically toying with it like a monkey. In midair, I used instant magic, hitting its back. Line and the princess watched in amazement. So this was what a mage's battle looked like. The next second, the werewolf's claws were about to reach my face. But I wasn't panicked at all, because I could use magic to attack its chest before its claws fell. The werewolf staggered from my hit and almost fell down. Seeing this, I pressed my advantage and had to quickly subdue this werewolf. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 magic bullets directly hit the werewolf's back. I glanced in the werewolf's direction. I seemed to have pierced straight through its body. However, after defeating this werewolf, I felt my stamina was somewhat insufficient. Indeed, I couldn't consume too much magic power, but I also couldn't avoid using magic in battle in front of students. I had to quickly clean up this werewolf and go back to deal with the other one. Suddenly, the werewolf came back to life. Unexpectedly, it still had the strength to move. I saw its hand tightly gripping stones on the ground. I thought this was bad. This werewolf wasn't planning to throw stones at me, was it? Sure enough, just as I guessed, the stone landed in front of me. But this wasn't the key issue. Although I could defend against it, what was up with this werewolf? It actually knew how to use tools, and its intelligence seemed much higher than other werewolves. I saw it punch down, and the entire ground cracked somewhat. I immediately used levitation magic to reach the air. Looking at the scene below, I was amazed. It was actually a werewolf that could use tools. This was really rare. You have to know that werewolves' predecessors were jackals, so werewolves couldn't possibly have the intelligence to measure an opponent's strength. At the same time, Aiden and Leo also arrived in this forest, searching for Tessie. Leo thought Tessie should have gone back, otherwise it would be impossible not to find her. But Aiden firmly believed Tessie definitely hadn't gone back. She wasn't that kind of person. If it were someone else, they might have gone back long ago, but Tessie was different. She was the kind of girl who wouldn't give up until she achieved her goal. Leo sighed. This is really troublesome. I should never have agreed to her in the first place. However, just as his voice fell, they heard someone screaming. Leo immediately ran over. That voice sounded like Tessie's. As they ran, Aiden seemed to bump into something. He turned his head and saw Tessie sitting on the ground ahead. Aiden said he heard screaming, so he came to check. But Tessie refused to admit she had screamed. But soon they became alert again. They seemed to hear a strange sound. The 3 of them sneakily hid behind the trees, looking ahead. They saw a small wolf cub lying there sleeping in front of them. Tessie looked smugly at the 2 behind her. "How about it? This should count as my win, right?" Tessie Tessie wanted to go capture that small wolf, but Aiden stopped her because the little guy seemed injured and unable to move. But it was hiding in an inconspicuous place, covered with fallen leaves. Aiden's words scared Tessie into a cold sweat. You mean that little guy couldn't possibly drag its injured body and hide itself? So they came to a conclusion. There must be other werewolves here. At this time, Aiden seemed to see something glinting. Looking closely, this small wolf cub seemed to have an iron chain around its neck. However, just as they were concentrating on staring at the chain, a werewolf quietly came up behind them. The werewolf was extremely excited. The flesh of these three little ones looked so tender. The first to react was Leo. The second to react was Aiden. But the moment Aiden reacted, Leo pushed him aside and bore the werewolf's damage alone. The force of this punch sent Leo flying dozens of meters away. Then, like squeezing a little chick, the werewolf squeezed Aiden's head. At this time, Tessie quietly placed her hand on her magic wand. She forced herself to stay calm, otherwise all three of them would die. But what Tessie didn't expect was that this werewolf actually sensed her killing intent. It quickly swiped a claw toward Tessie's direction, but fortunately Ellen keenly noticed this and immediately tackled Tessie to the ground. This greatly surprised Tessie. She didn't understand why he would save her. Now another person in the three-person team was also seriously injured and was no match for the werewolf at all. After learning that Tessie wasn't injured, Aiden was relieved. You're my friend, so naturally I have to save you. How could I just stand by and watch? Aiden was warmed by these words, but unfortunately the werewolf in front of them broke their beautiful, warm scene. Aiden immediately stood in front of Tessie. Don't worry, he's probably just being wary of us because he's afraid the wolf baby might be in danger. After saying this, he even asked the werewolf, is that the situation? The werewolf didn't move, just growled and watched them. After seeing that the three people had no ill intentions toward them, it turned and left. Then it went straight to squat in front of the wolf baby, as if fearing its child might be harmed in the slightest. So Aiden made a judgment. The situation just now must have been because it wanted to protect the wolf baby that it had such a big reaction. But what made them both curious was why the wolf could understand human language. Then Aiden, ignoring his teammates' dissuasion, insisted on going forward to greet the werewolf. He took out a potion from his hand and shook it. The wolf baby's body should be very uncomfortable now. Although the effect is a bit weak, it will improve after taking this. The werewolf seemed to understand Aiden's words and reached out to receive the medicine. Just as it was about to accept Aiden's potion, with a rumbling sound, two beams of light directly pierced through its entire belly. Then these two beams of light turned into ropes and bound the werewolf's body. At this time, my voice slowly spoke. Aiden, Leo, Tessie, why are you three here? If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, I will deduct your credits as punishment. Seeing my arrival, the two of them were obviously a bit panicked, but now wasn't the time to punish them. I'll deal with your matter later. Step back for now. But just at this moment, Aiden actually stood in front of me, telling me not to attack this wolf king. He felt this wolf king seemed to be able to understand human speech, so we should think it over carefully. I stared at Aiden with disgusted eyes. What nonsense are you talking about, you fool? Don't interfere with my work, Aiden continued. He's not talking nonsense, and he feels that werewolf might be, but before Aiden could say this, I saw a small wolf cub, so I stared at Aiden with extremely angry and accusatory eyes, signaling him not to continue speaking. If you keep talking, I might be exposed. Aiden was stunned. He had never seen the teacher show such an expression and look. Next, I directly pushed him away. This brat was indeed as I had guessed before. His mind was extremely sharp. With a thud, Aiden fell directly to the ground. He was very confused about what was wrong with the teacher and why the change was so dramatic. However, the next moment, something even more confusing happened. I instantly released extremely powerful fire magic, and this flame contained burning power that could quickly incinerate corpses to ash. That was really close just now. If that boy had said the rest of that word, it would have triggered an investigation, which could have been my doom. The experts are all hidden deep within the school, and with my current physical condition, I couldn't possibly be their match. If they caught any clues and discovered I was a spy, I would never be able to leave Theon Academy. I told the three of them to go back quickly. Regarding their transgressive behavior today, I would investigate tomorrow. For today, you should just return to the dormitory first. The next day, I brought all three little ones to a room. All three of them were very scared. They had been targeted by Teacher Ludwig. Tessie noticed something was wrong with Aiden. Ever since Aiden came back last time, he hadn't spoken at all. At this time, the headmaster walked in from outside the door. All three were startled. They hadn't expected the headmaster to personally handle their case. The headmaster smiled sweetly. You three don't need to be so nervous. Everyone sit down. At this time, I stood beside the headmaster. My serious voice slowly spoke. Today we must make them understand how dangerous last night's behavior was. If there had been the slightest mistake, one of the students present might not have had their life. The headmaster glanced at me. Don't put on an end-of-the-world expression, Teacher Ludwig. Don't scare them either. Didn't everything work out smoothly in the end? And didn't you already explain the situation to me in detail? The headmaster was very dissatisfied with these three students' adventurous behavior and decided to deduct 10 credits from them. But their performance in the face of crisis was also quite excellent, so he decided to give each of the three 20 points, which greatly shocked the three little ones. How was there no punishment, but instead more rewards? I originally wanted to speak up to stop this, but was interrupted by the headmaster, who said, "This is my decision. You shouldn't wouldn't have any objections, right? Helplessly, I could only give up on holding them accountable. However, just as they were all leaving, Aiden stopped and looked at me. His mind was very keen. He felt like the teacher seemed to be hiding something yesterday. After the three of them closed the door, the headmaster breathed a long sigh of relief. I really didn't expect you to plead for them. If I hadn't given them some punishment, I might have lost my authority as a teacher in their minds. The headmaster had another question. Did I really not discover anything strange about the werewolf last night? I indicated that I hadn't seen anything, and since the situation was urgent at the time, I quickly burned their bodies. The headmaster smiled faintly. Then there's nothing we can do. In any case, I still need to thank you. Thanks to you, the school had no casualties. I'll continue to look forward to your excellent performance. After everyone left, I sat in the chair for a long time without moving. Actually, I almost got exposed in that situation yesterday. Recalling when that werewolf was controlled by me, that small cub suddenly emerged. When I saw the wolf's torso, I understood everything. This wasn't a wolf at all, but a human body that hadn't mutated into a wolf. Thinking of this, I slowly closed my eyes. I hadn't expected those guys to really be a bunch of lunatics. They weren't using wolves to create humans. On the contrary, they captured humans alive, then injected them with some potions to turn them into werewolves. However, I didn't regret what I did yesterday. If they didn't die, then I would be the one to die. And they had harmed people. In terms of results, the fact that they harmed people was a fact that couldn't be changed. So yesterday's method should have been the best outcome. I vaguely remembered the wolf cub's smile before this. It was the smile of relief that only appears upon release. I had seen many of these on mercenary battlefields before. Recalling this, I immediately took out the phone in my pocket. I called Hans. I had a very important matter that I needed to ask him for help with. The next day, all three little ones were very glad they hadn't been punished, but instead had been rewarded with 10 credits. Tessie discovered that Aiden had really been acting strange lately, so she asked him what had happened to make him like this. Aiden explained it wasn't any worry, just that he felt the wolf baby's neck seemed to have a strange shackle on it yesterday. The reason he stopped teacher Ludwig yesterday was also because he wanted to see that thing. He was wondering if someone might be controlling these little wolf cubs. Hearing the word controlling, Leo nearby perked up. Since you put it that way, I did hear a rumor that suspicious people have infiltrated Theo, and Leo thought those werewolves wearing shackles was very suspicious. At this time, Aiden beside him suddenly hesitated. Finally, Tessie broke his silence. Are you trying to suspect Teacher Ludwig? Aiden wasn't exactly suspicious of Teacher Ludwig, but he definitely had suspicions about him. Because when he saw Ludwig's eyes last night, he was tremendously shocked. It was a kind of fierce look he had never seen before. He dared to assert that Ludwig definitely saw something yesterday. So Aiden was certain Ludwig was definitely hiding something. He didn't want Ludwig to betray the academy, so he'd rather believe it was an illusion. But if it was a fact, then was Teacher Ludwig really related to that rumor? Their speculation made Tessie beside them very unhappy. Have you two forgotten what the headmaster said yesterday? The headmaster said Teacher Ludwig explained the situation in detail. If it's really as you say, then why would Teacher Ludwig do that? So I'm certain that although Teacher Ludwig didn't admit it, he actually approves of us three. So why are you two suspecting Teacher Ludwig? Hearing what Tessie said, they also thought it made sense, so they didn't continue the discussion. So the three prepared to get up and go to the cafeteria for a meal. During this, Aiden invited Tessie to eat together, which made Tessie's little face blush. Since you're so graciously inviting me, then I'll reluctantly go. It must be said here that among these three people, except for Tessie, the other two were very smart. If they continued investigating, they might be able to find Ludwig's problems with just their intelligence and action. Fortunately, yesterday's fire destroyed everything. Otherwise, Ludwig would definitely die. He absolutely couldn't leave Theo and Academy alive with all its experts. On the other side, there was a file on my desk. I had already locked onto the approximate location of those scumbags. Hans told me to be careful since that was their territory after all. Hearing Hans's description of the process made my heart ache. They had actually turned an entire family of 3 into werewolves. Then I said to Hans, "See you tonight. I'm going out to buy some equipment now." Time flew by and it was night. 2 people in this factory were chatting here, completely unaware that danger was approaching. At the same time, their conversation was clearly heard by me hiding in the shadows. I saw them discussing the previous incident of turning an entire family of 3 into werewolves. The most bizarre scene was when a werewolf discovered its own child had become a werewolf cub. In anger, it actually fought with the organization's personnel, but I heard the organization had already sent reliable people to deal with them. At this time, I, crouching in the shadows, finally couldn't listen anymore. Click. The sound of my footsteps echoed throughout the entire factory. The 2 of them sensed something was wrong and signaled each other to go check, but neither wanted to go. I slowly placed my hand on the gun at my waist. The moment they turned around, I directly shot them in the head. Clang, these 2 scumbags had already gone ahead to accompany that family of 3. At this time, my figure was also revealed. Except for that exquisite, subtle height, nothing else about my body could be discerned. Tonight, I would make all those scumbags go down to accompany that family of 3. According to Hans's previous information, there were a total of 40 people here, and among them, 3 wore reinforced armor, and 2 were dark mages, so he suggested I'd better bring a gun. Before leaving, I also asked Hans how old that family's child was now. Hans knew this. Seemed like he had just started elementary school. So when I learned that child child was not even 10 years old. My heart felt like it was being cut by knives. That child was so young. How could these people be so heartless? I put away these thoughts and resolutely walked into the room inside. The next moment, my figure disappeared. What followed were shouts and pleas for mercy from inside, but for them, their death was simply too easy. Soon, the screams here gradually subsided. At this moment, in the factory's first checkpoint, not one person was left alive. After dealing with those people, I left, not knowing that a bug was watching me from behind. This bug's retina seemed to be sharing vision with others. At the same time, in another factory, a man chuckled. A rat has actually snuck in, but he wasn't anxious about this at all. Instead, he said confidently that getting rid of him would be too easy. They could do it without anyone knowing. Soon I arrived at the second checkpoint. I cast a kind of magic gear on my chest. This magic had a special ability. It could silence firearms. Just as they planned to engage me in close combat, I slowly drew the gun tucked in my waistband. The man across from me laughed heartily. "You stupid fool! Within the range of fire silence, your weapons are also useless." As soon as he finished speaking, I shot him in the head. "Idiot, I'm using a magic gun." Now the others panicked. He was actually using magic bullets. The next moment, a large foot heavily stepped on the ground. I saw he was holding a super cannon in his hands. Even a mage couldn't possibly withstand his attack. With a sizzle, the cannon fired at me at extremely high speed. However, the next moment, he was shocked. I saw that with one hand, I summoned another magic circle that firmly blocked his attack in front of me. This made the man across from me incredibly surprised. He actually incorporated alchemical metal element magic. Ordinary high-voltage current simply can't break through this magic. With a bang, I fired one shot and directly pierced the energy tank behind him. The next second, the man was electrocuted to death by the energy tank he was carrying. This was the first time I'd seen someone die from their own weapon. 2 minutes later, I successfully dealt with 20 people, and next should be the main event here. Click, gunshot. I directly fired a shot behind me. I sneered. "Did you think I really couldn't detect this flea? I was just trying to lure you over." It seemed like the infamous Bug Brothers were inside. The next moment, I raised my foot high. When it fell again, magic appeared under my foot. This ripple spread outward like ultrasound. While I myself wasn't affected, all the bugs within the coverage area were eliminated. At this time, the Bug Brothers finally felt something was wrong. The person who came this time seemed to have some ability. It should be sound magic derived from wind element. If they fought him, their bugs would be completely useless because wind element and small flying insects weren't compatible. He had to send the strong guys up. As his words fell, the bald man beside him slowly stood up. Besides that, there were dozens of organization members here preparing for battle, all waiting for that guy's grand entrance. However, what no one expected was that the lights above their heads suddenly went out. At this time, Blondie reminded the big brother beside him that he felt the opponent was playing tricks and they must be careful. But after waiting for a moment, Blondie surprisingly didn't hear his big brother's response, so he glanced over. Looking closely, he was almost scared to death. Where was his big brother's head? He immediately realized something was wrong. The person who came this time was definitely a very skilled expert. He immediately had his centipede come out to fight. He had to strike first before being attacked. However, ridiculously, this bug was cut in half by me before it even crawled halfway. At the same time, my figure also came behind Blondie. One slash, thunderous in sound, but unfortunately couldn't kill Blondie with one strike. Blondie was extremely panicked. A mere mage had pushed him to this extent, he had to increase the distance. The next moment, I raised my hand and directly used fire magic. The man's expression completely fell apart. Is that flickering flame? How could it possibly be cast instantaneously? For these scumbags, I was too lazy to even talk to them. Go straight to hell to accompany the dead. The next moment, scorching flames swept over Blondie's body. Blondie finally spent a hellish 10 seconds in this agony. Thud. Blondie's body fell heavily to the ground. I walked over unhurriedly and drew the gun from my waist. Everything happened too quickly, leaving these people no time to react. I aimed the gun at Blondie's body and fired over 100 shots before stopping. Even this couldn't satisfy my hatred. The scene scared everyone present silly. He had so easily taken down the Bug Brothers single-handedly. This was too amazing. I slowly turned my head. Next, it's time to deal with you small fries. With each step I took, these small fries took a step back, afraid of being the first one I targeted. However, at this moment, I noticed something was wrong. I immediately twisted my body to avoid the incoming attack. I looked carefully. It was actually a bug leg. Looking around, that bug leg actually came from the corpse's arm. The other corpse also stood up and even made sounds. It turned out his consciousness had completely moved to his palm. He slowly raised his hand and said, "That really scared me. I didn't expect to be attacked. Before I could even enter the stage, you killed that Bruno guy. I was the same." Seeing that he could still talk after becoming bug-like, I really wished I could give him a few more cuts. The next moment, the man's body kept writhing. With a squelch, his entire body shattered. This scared me. I thought he was suddenly attacking me, but the result was a black shadow covering my body. Clang! His leg fell heavily, making the grinding sound of metal collision. At the same time, the previous corpse had transformed into something I'd never seen before. I guessed he might have incorporated millions of bugs into one body, transplanting all the bugs' advantages onto himself. He had become this ghostly appearance because of me, so he wanted to tear my body to pieces to be fair. The other members immediately had thoughts of escape. After all, who had any chance of winning against a monster? However, the next moment, I quickly circled to the front of these people. As I guessed, This bug didn't care about his subordinates' lives at all and wanted to block my path. To him, those subordinates' lives really weren't something he cared much about. He just wanted to tear my body apart. Bang bang, I quickly drew my gun and shot at him. At this moment, his body was already a bug monster. My magic bullets couldn't cause any damage to his body either. Boom. The bug monster's arm fell heavily, and the entire factory seemed to tremble slightly. I raised my hand and immediately used flickering fire magic to counterattack. The next moment, an exaggerated flame attack flew out, but this monster dodged it. This was really something I hadn't expected. How could such a large body have such fast speed to dodge my attacks? Just as I was surprised, my body was firmly locked by his pincers. Seeing this, I again used flickering flames. I saw an extremely powerful fire force spread from my hand, but it seemed to cause him no damage at all. Honestly, I was a bit panicked because his defense was too strong. I simply couldn't break through his defenses. This monster took advantage of my being in the air to quickly extend its arm and attack me. During this, he taunted me, "If you want to roast me to eat, you'd need at least 4th tier magic." The next moment, after his attack landed, the area where I was suddenly spurted large amounts of white smoke. This made the bug monster somewhat confused. "What tricks are you still trying to pull?" Looking closely, the place where I had been was already turned to ash. At this time, my body had come to his rear. He kept taunting me, "Your movements are quite fast, just like a little flying bug." My situation was now quite bad because guns and 3rd tier magic were useless against him, and I felt he wouldn't give me a chance to cast 4th tier magic either. But I still had one killing move I hadn't used. Hearing about my killing move, he laughed. "Then hurry up and use it. Let's see if your little flame can roast me." The next moment, I raised my hand, and a golden magical energy gathered in my palm. The reason it was golden was because this flame was completely different from what I'd cast before. Then, outside this building, you could see 10 golden lights shooting out from inside. Hans, who was crouching below, happened to see this. Then he shuddered. This guy is really ridiculously strong. Today, Hans was quite lucky to witness real magic again. Boom. Scorching flames shot out from the factory building. If you could feel it carefully, these flames were no less hot than lava. Then my figure slowly walked back out of this building. Hans was shocked. Today was really quite a spectacle. "Tomorrow, this will probably be a hot news event," I said. "That fire just now burned everything inside completely, including those humans who had been mutated into animals." I threw the experimental potion to him. "This is the drug that mutates humans into werewolves." He sighed. "This world is getting really scary. It would be hard to conduct such experiments without someone backing them financially." I told him not to worry. I had already found the mastermind. So after finishing everything, I snuck into a villa and found the man named Bell Bertrickson. The old man looked terrified. "Who are you and how did you break in?" But I had no intention of wasting words with him. I directly pressed his head firmly to the ground. "I don't believe I can't kill you today." The next moment, I directly activated a soundproof barrier so no one would disturb us. And what followed would be my final hunting moment of the night. I'd already decided in my heart to make him endure the world's most cruel torture. Then I grabbed him and pulled him up. I had a question for him. There was a child who had to survive in the cruel reality where both he and his parents had turned into monsters. Yet when facing someone who wanted to kill him, he still showed a smile. Can you understand how I felt when I destroyed their family of 3? Bell Bertrickson was stunned for a moment. Then he began to laugh mercilessly. "So it was you who eliminated those test subjects." I didn't waste words with him, but tightened my fist instead. "Answer my question quickly." At this point, he still thought I was concerned about the abandoned test subjects. He told me not to worry about it. They were just some lowly commoners. Nothing significant. Moreover, these people who had no value in life had created opportunities for us, a chance to contribute to human development. In his eyes, this was a noble sacrifice by the lower class. After hearing his answer, I didn't know what to say. The next moment, I directly injected their experimental serum into his meridians. Bell Bertrickson's round eyes widened. His answer seemed very reasonable to him, so much so that I couldn't even get angry. The best outcome would be to let him personally experience the pain of being a werewolf. Earlier, I had seen something very interesting in the research facility. Just a small amount of blood could turn a person into a werewolf. So I was very curious, what would happen if I injected all the blood into his body? Soon after, his whole body began to heat up and claws emerged. In just the blink of an eye, he had transformed into a 6-armed werewolf monster, completely losing any trace of humanity. I had just told him about the family of 3, but I don't think he could understand, so now it's best to let him experience it firsthand. The next moment, my palm touched the isolation magic. Once I removed it, the commotion here would attract a large crowd. With a thunderous sound, when I dispelled the magic, a huge noise echoed throughout the entire hall, immediately attracting security personnel to investigate. But when they pushed open the door, what they found was a monster. There was no trace of Bell Bertrickson anywhere, so they speculated that Bell Bertrickson might have been eaten, and a group of people prepared to subdue the magical creature first. With another thunderous sound, a massive explosion created flames that were madly burning the monster's body. 2.5 hours later, I came to Hans's room and gave him a huge safe. I told him to take out some money for work expenses, then hide the rest. Before long, I would contact him using my underworld identity. The next day, this place indeed became the top news story. Many people were discussing here that it might have been caused by Bell Bertrickson's contact with with dark magic. They said the monster from last night was killed by the responsible guards and mages. That monster was incredibly tenacious. The guards had to burn it continuously for over 4 hours before finally burning it to death. Just then, the little mustached man seemed to notice that an extraordinary figure had arrived nearby. After that person's footsteps landed, all the reporters' gazes turned to her. From her attire, she was either from the Security Bureau or the Nightwalker Knights. Walking at the front was the Duke Protector, also the Knights leader named Trina Rainhall. Seeing this scene, all the reporters went crazy. Even the Security Bureau had stepped in, which meant this was a very significant case. There was definitely no hope for internal interviews, but at least they had to write a report about the Security Bureau. Trina Rainhall coldly said 2 words, "Open the door." Her tone was ice cold. However, the doorman said the door couldn't be opened because the boss said no one was allowed in today. Trina Rainhall's tone was incredibly cold as she repeated once more, "Open the door." In her heart, she was thinking, "You're just a small security guard earning a few hundred a month? What are you playing at?" The 2 security guards were intimidated by her imposing aura and could only obediently open the door. A group of people thus marched in grandly. As soon as they entered, a man claiming to be a police inspector greeted them, saying he was honored to meet them here. The Ice Beauty coldly said, "From now on, the investigation rights of this case will be transferred to our Security Bureau. After you hand over all the evidence and materials collected from the scene, you can withdraw your team." The man nodded on the surface, but was extremely shocked inside. He never expected the famous Security Bureau to investigate this matter. It really had become a big deal. Then the man hurried to the door and shouted to his team members to evacuate immediately and not to worry about the rest. The 2 followers behind the woman glanced at them. After confirming that everyone had left, the woman on the far right side and her body also hunched over. This pretentious act is really tiring. Then the bespectacled man nearby felt that since they were knights, they must maintain this demeanor at any time and place. Trina told them to stop arguing. As long as they didn't show any slack to outsiders, it was fine. Then they began investigating this monster and the entire sequence of events. Rumors said that Belle Bertrickson not only had contact with dark magic, but also with mysterious creatures. For such a person to suddenly be eaten by a monster couldn't simply be seen as a coincidental event. The bespectacled man flipped through the files in his hands, finding words like "monster appeared" and "Belle Bertrickson killed." These were all witness testimonies. Moreover, the monster's corpse was also here, and you could tell that even its internal organs were completely burned, making autopsy impossible. So the group decided to first observe the interior. Trina came to a wall with a woman's portrait hanging on it, but what was strange was this tilted picture frame and the spotless wallpaper, so she wiped the frame with her hand. The next moment, a secret room appeared below her, but when she crouched down, she discovered that this hidden space was completely empty. She carefully measured the size and position of this space. It should have been a space for placing a safe. The 2 could accept this explanation. After all, for an unscrupulous businessman like Belle Bertrickson, hiding some money of dubious origin wouldn't be surprising. Trina believed that until last night, there had always been a safe here, because there was no dust accumulation on the ground, which could prove her speculation. So the mysterious death of the tycoon, the appearance of the monster, and the disappearing safe, this series of events was just too coincidental. But she could only conclude that Belle Bertrickson had been murdered. But how could the killer have left no trace at all? If someone really could do this, her first thought would be that it must be that man who had returned. She slowly opened her mouth and called out, "Yasin and Robin." She asked them if anything special had happened in Pilbert recently. They found that there really was an incident. A factory in the abandoned factory district had been destroyed by fire. The timing of that incident didn't differ much from Belle Bertrickson's death last night. Trina immediately noticed this connection and felt there must be some clues there. At the same time, I was currently sitting in my room, relieving my headache. This was the after effect of using magic. It was indeed quite severe, and the magic I had used earlier was extremely draining. After all, I had the kind of constitution where even breathing consumed magical power. If I hadn't prepared pills in advance, I might have been in serious trouble. After a while, I felt my headache had eased somewhat. The important matter had been resolved by me. All 3 werewolves had been burned to ash, leaving no evidence. Except for this guy called Aiden. He seemed to have seen something at the time because that guy kept trying to stop me, which caused me to be somewhat unnatural when eliminating the werewolves. Most importantly, Aiden was very close to me at the time. However, he probably didn't see anything since I quickly burned them up. But what if? What if he had seen something in that instant? Then wouldn't I be doomed? This was my miscalculation. I really didn't expect this matter to become so complicated, and I couldn't guarantee that Aiden wouldn't tell others about this. My fingers kept tapping a rhythm on the table. After tapping for a while, my fingers stopped. Things had come to this point, and there was probably only one solution: to strike first and eliminate Aiden. This way, no one would be able to discover my identity and the things I was hiding, and I could also avoid the dean's investigation. But Aiden's image appeared in my mind again, that innocent boy's appearance. I really couldn't bear to do it, but if he revealed this matter to others, then I would die. I thought carefully for a while, and decided I still couldn't kill him, because killing a student of Theowen would be too risky. Moreover, Aiden was currently a highly valued student at the school, one who could use special magical abilities. If something happened to him, I would definitely be suspected by the principal, and then I would inevitably be restricted in everything I did. So I just lay down on the bed to rest. No matter how much I thought about it now, it was useless. Better to focus on recovering my magical power first. Lying on the bed, I recalled Aiden. I remembered his personal file, which stated that as a child, he had learned special magic from a wandering mage. This should be considered his fortune. At the same time, the investigation team had also arrived at the factory that was burned down last night. Although they had expected this place to be completely burned down, the devastating scene still made them feel somewhat shocked. How could an abandoned factory catch fire? This question also arose in their minds, and from the surrounding traces they could see one thing. Although this factory appeared abandoned on the surface, it had actually been in continuous use, so it couldn't have suddenly caught such a big fire. At this time, the girl behind them said, "Could it be that someone was conducting research on dark magic or mysterious creatures here? Maybe they exposed themselves during research, so before being discovered by others, they destroyed this place themselves." Although Trina felt what she said made sense, the most important thing was still to investigate the mastermind behind it all. Although Trina had been closely monitoring this place before, she hadn't planned to take action here yet. But what exactly were these people trying to avoid by sacrificing so much to destroy evidence? Anyway, one thing was certain. This definitely couldn't be coincidental. If it were coincidental, there would be countless inexplicable doubts that couldn't be explained. However, there was something rather strange recently. The werewolves that had caused a commotion in the city a few days ago were said to have also appeared at Theowen Magic Academy. This news shocked Trina. So the werewolves had entered Theowen through the sewage pipes. Relatively speaking, Theowen's defenses were rather loose, so this kind of thing was possible. They said several students were injured by the werewolves, and later the 3 werewolves were burned to charcoal by Theowen's teachers, leaving no werewolf corpses. This made the meticulous Trina sense something was wrong. Then she turned to look at this place. It seemed that like the werewolves at Theowen, everything here had been burned to ash. In the fire disaster, the destroyed factory and the werewolves burned to ash by fire. If Trina connected these 2 common points, then the culprit would be obvious. Although this possibility was extremely small, she absolutely couldn't rule it out, because eliminating the Empire's underground organizations was the very reason for the Nightwalker Knight's existence. The next day, my classes were still packed, and this time quite a few second-year students came. When Linnae couldn't find a seat, the kingdom's princess waved at her. Soon after, Linnae sat down next to her. This made her feel somewhat uneasy. After all, she was just a commoner. How could she dare sit next to the princess? And the way they had just greeted each other so intimately, when had they become so close? So she felt the pressure of sitting next to the princess was too great. If she relaxed, she might do something disrespectful to her. Just then, my figure appeared in the classroom. It was time for class. As soon as I arrived, everyone fell silent. I slowly opened my palm, and the magical power in my hand caused the papers on the desk to float up. Today I would explain the basics and manifestation principles of elemental attributes, one of the 4 specializations of the manifestation school. The next moment, those papers all flew into each student's hands. Elemental attributes, as one of the 4 major specializations of the manifestation school, were most importantly the most popularized field. So this was also the most basic knowledge that most freshmen had already mastered. And today, I wanted to teach a completely new method of instruction. Hearing this, Flora immediately clenched her fists. She wanted to see what this new method would be and what this teacher wanted to show them. I said that this method could improve your existing elemental power by at least 20%, and at most by over 80%, so you must listen carefully to this class. This made the students restless. This teacher Ludwig didn't seem like someone who would lie. Was there really such a method in this world? The next moment, my voice landed on a brown-haired student. "Anthony, please tell me which elemental attributes you can use." Anthony nervously said, "Water, ice, and plants." After he finished speaking, I asked him to demonstrate the one he was most skilled at among these elemental attributes. The next moment, a blue magical aura slowly appeared in his palm. I glanced at the attribute he created. It felt very ordinary, with no appeal at all. This made Anthony very sad and somewhat unhappy. The next second, I slowly opened my right hand. "Let me show everyone how I do it." The next moment, a blue magical aura appeared prominently in my palm. Looking carefully, there was freshly formed ice on top of it. Everyone was incredibly surprised. What was this situation? Was this really displayed using the same ice elemental attribute? The efficiency was like night and day. I chuckled. "It seems you've all developed some interest. Let me explain the basic theory next." As everyone knows, the earliest magic only had 4 major attributes. Their number couldn't compare with the current 10+ attributes. Elemental attributes were also a specialization with a long history in the Manifestation School. Although it now belongs to part of the Manifestation School, in primitive forms of magic, it was once called the foundation of all magic. Then I began asking them, does any student know why elemental magic developed so rapidly? I'll give 5 credits to whoever answers correctly. Take fire element as an example. Soon someone raised their hand to answer to ignite fires and dispel darkness, and others answered to burn forests and clear wastelands. wasteland. Even more outrageous, someone actually said it was to eliminate humanity's most primitive fears. Just then, the genius school beauty finally couldn't help but raise her hand. With her cold expression, she slowly spoke, "To use fire to kill people." The students below discussed this controversial answer among themselves, but the fact was that Flora was completely correct. Besides fire's existence, there was also drowning with water, blowing with wind, and striking with electricity. War and slaughter were the primitive driving forces of magical development, but in the face of cold, fire symbolized not destruction but survival. Water could drive water wheels, wind could drive windmills, electricity could illuminate darkness, and all of these depended entirely on what humans used these magics for. Only this way could they endow elemental attributes with vastly different meanings. So working hard to create a more beautiful world. I also hope this is the attitude that everyone here should have before learning elemental attributes. And what I'm going to do next is have everyone try to attempt their own elemental spheres. Whenever someone's elemental sphere isn't done well, I'll give hints. Irina Talaman, is this the plant attribute you manifested? I seem to see rotting leaves on the ground in late autumn. Make those sprouts breaking through the ground more robust. Leo, seeing my sharp tongue say such harsh words, thought, as expected, a merciless teacher. All the students were condensing their elemental spheres. Only Aiden sat there motionless, not moving at all. Soon I noticed Aiden's abnormality and quickly walked over to ask what was wrong. But what was with this kid's expression? Why did it feel so gloomily frightening? Could he be someone with autism? Or was he brooding over the werewolf incident and now he was still resisting my commands? But looking at his expression, it didn't seem to be because of that. Then I guessed the reason and asked if he wasn't very skilled at manifesting elements yet. After he admitted it, I felt somewhat troubled. As a Theoin student and a user of special magic, he couldn't even do such basic things. Although he was admitted as a special recruit, I had no obligation to care for someone who couldn't keep up with basic coursework. I could just let him be and allow him to fall behind the class pace, but I still spoke up, asking him to tell me which elemental attributes he could use. Learning that among his 3 attributes, I chose fire attribute. This is my second class since the start of school. I can't let students fall behind in progress, so I've decided to personally teach you. Then everyone around looked stunned. I patiently said, just think about turning the magical power you release into an attribute. That is, the flame I mentioned. Don't just think with your head during this process, but also feel it with your heart. Focus on sensing the characteristics of the flame. Gradually, Aiden's eyes slowly closed and his consciousness kept sinking deeper and deeper. Finally, in the depths of his heart, he discovered a small flame. It was a night 8 years ago, and also a day when a blizzard struck. The choking smell of burning wood and the faint charcoal fragrance, along with the aroma of stew cooking over the fire. At that time, Aiden felt incredibly happy. The food then was simple, and cold wind seeped through the gaps in old clothes. It was an unusually cold season, but the flame in the stove was very warm. That warmth felt as if he had experienced it just yesterday. The memory was incredibly clear. The next moment, Aiden suddenly opened his eyes. Below him was a dazzling golden flame. Aiden looked at the flame between his hands in disbelief. He never thought he could do it so easily. And what surprised Aiden was that this flame felt exactly the same as in his memory. I slowly crouched down to look at his flame and praised him for doing well. Your flame not only has destructive power, but also contains incomparable warmth and gentleness. No one had expected that I would praise Aiden at this moment. This Aiden was indeed very clever. What he was now presenting was the original form of the fire element he had just felt. He had transcended ordinary elements. This was a flame belonging to you alone, your own magic. Aiden was so shocked he couldn't speak. He never thought he could do so well. Then I reminded him once before leaving, telling him to definitely remember this feeling. Then I shouted to all the students, everyone should have noticed, right? This is the method I want to teach you, applying actual sensations to magic through personal experience. To make good use of elemental attributes, first you must have a basic understanding of them. For example, water is hot and ice is cold. These are facts even children know. I pointed to my head. If you're a true mage, you should add something special to it. Recall your own experiences and unforgettable moments and manifest the elements you felt. Soon some people followed my method. Before long, they successfully completed it. Only Flora looked completely indifferent. She had known such simple knowledge points long ago. What made her curious was that the first-year kid who was so terrible had received praise. This made her so angry that she clenched her fists immediately. Her pride and arrogance made her instantly dissatisfied. The next moment, Flora decided to use 3-layer attribute stacking magic to prove herself. She just wanted to see whether I would praise her abilities. Sally nearby was incredibly surprised. Is this overlapping elements? I didn't expect her to use this magic so quickly. The magical energy in Flora's hands grew larger and larger. Just then, her heart jumped in alarm. The next moment, that magic emitted a dazzling purple light. Sally thought something was wrong. That should be very dangerous, right? Stop quickly. Actually, Flora was also extremely panicked inside, because if this continued, it would definitely explode. She had to stop it quickly. Her first thought was to erect a barrier in front of herself to avoid harming the surrounding people. Just when Flora couldn't hold on anymore, my palm directly pressed onto her magic sphere. I told her not to give up. First, control your magical power well. You must concentrate and not be distracted. Leave everything else to me. The teacher will definitely help you. Gradually, Fortunately, the energy of the magic sphere slowly stabilized. Only then did Flora relax somewhat. Otherwise, something big would have definitely happened. But my words shocked her again. You must not be distracted. This is far from over. If you stop here, your magic will vanish into nothingness, leaving no achievement. So are you willing to accept this? The moment our eyes met, Flora made her decision, then her palm quickly rotated over the magic sphere. Having come this far, she could only see it through to the end. Looking back, the gazes that friends or classmates had cast at her fell into two categories. One was envy, the other was jealousy. Rather than caring too much about those gazes, she preferred to trample on them. What she truly found hard to accept was that her father never seemed to treat her like a child. Every time he looked at Flora, he cast a contemptuous and cold gaze. Until the first class, when I deducted 10 points from her in front of everyone. That humiliating experience made her feel defeat for the first time in her life, and this sense of defeat also stirred up childhood memories she wanted to forget. Although Flora hadn't looked back at my expression at the time, she knew I must have been looking at her with the same contemptuous gaze as her father. People of the Lumos family would never forget hatred. Someday she would defeat me with her own strength. She had originally made up her mind, but today she seemed to be defeated again. Flora stared intently at the magic sphere. The previously wildly changing colors were returning to normal. Just wait a little longer and it would be fine. The magic in her hands could return to normal. Flora chuckled. Finally succeeded. I completed such high difficulty magic. Now I should be praised, right? But what she didn't expect was that I directly crouched down and called her a fool, completely unworthy of the genius title, because she had done something very, very stupid. You should know that attempting new magic is quite remarkable. Even if you fail, there's nothing wrong with that in itself. After all, anyone can fail. But if Flora made other students bear the consequences of her failure together, that would be another matter entirely. My following words simply degraded Flora to dust, because her current ability wasn't even skilled enough to simultaneously stack two elements. At the very beginning, Flora mixed fire and ice together. Conflicting elements are inherently difficult to fuse. Flora finally couldn't take it anymore and loudly said, I admit I forcibly attempted triple stack magic, but when fire and ice overlap, it is perfect. My cold gaze stared at her. It seemed she really wouldn't cry until she saw the coffin. In just an instant, a magic fusion of ice and fire appeared in my palm. The next moment, I added another elemental magic of a different attribute to it. Then I placed the magic in front of Flora. You should be able to see the difference, right? Although your overlapping elements are perfect, because you directly froze the burning flame. That's all there is to it. The magic you did before has no meaning for existence whatsoever. Were you just showing off? Flora was humiliated by me to the point of having nowhere to hide and could only close her eyes and say nothing. Sally nearby saw her good friend being humiliated by the teacher like this. Although she was worried about her, she didn't dare make a sound, since Flora had indeed made her classmates bear risks they shouldn't have to bear. The next moment, I gently tossed my palm, and the three different elemental magics I had just condensed were thrown into the air. Everyone looked at this scene in amazement. Is this snow? Flora naturally saw it too. This seemed to integrate the spreading nature of fire magic with the cooling nature of ice to optimize firefighting methods. Flora felt very unwilling inside, because I had used the same elements as her to demonstrate more practical magic, so she was completely defeated. Just then, I slowly called out Flora's name. Flora had already prepared herself. If she was to be humiliated, she would remain silent, since she was the one in the wrong. But I said I hadn't criticized her because of insufficient ability just now. This surprised Flora. She didn't expect me to say this. I stared at her with a completely serious expression, my eyes showing no hint of joking. I acknowledged that Flora possessed very interesting abilities. I had never seen a mage who could display such high difficulty technical magic at her age. But what I focused on was the fundamental problem, that magic in your eyes is only for showing off. This in itself is a very serious problem. I patted her shoulder and said in a long tone, perhaps I have no right to interfere with your purpose for using magic, but even to realize your value. You should find another path, not learn magic for the sake of showing off, because magic exists to do meaningful things, not merely to show others. You've worked so hard practicing magic. Is it really for showing off? I believe it's not. You must also have your own purposes for magic in your heart. At this moment, if someone had noticed Flora's expression, they would have discovered that her gaze slowly changed from arrogance to respect. I turned around and told everyone to return to their seats. Then I paid no more attention to Flora and turned to leave her seat area. However, the scene I had just created was already imprinted in Flora's heart. She knew I hadn't mocked or despised her, but was truly concerned for her. Even her father had never treated her this way. Flora felt a headache coming on because the triple magic stacking just now had consumed most of her magical power. This made Flora even more shocked. She felt dizzy from consuming some magical power, but I had done the same magic as her yet remained completely unaffected. That teacher's magical consumption was clearly twice as much as hers. But how could she know that I was currently gritting my teeth in frustration? Fortunately, when I noticed something was wrong earlier, I had put medicine in my mouth in advance. But my head was still very dizzy now, and I felt like I was about to collapse. I never expected that at such a young age, she could not only use elemental stacking, but even perform high-difficulty triple elemental magic. However, I had once been in a situation like Flora's, and was even more conceited than her, yet was severely criticized by my teacher. Because of that memory, what I said to her today was a bit harsh. She might be hurt by it, but I still hoped she could easily overcome all this, because the advice I gave her was definitely not empty words. I turned my head and scanned everyone present. Theowen's students were indeed all very capable. The principal had said before that she had discovered many outstanding talents among this year's freshmen. It seemed this was the so-called golden generation. Just then, I noticed someone else seemed to have a problem. I saw that Line's magic sphere was actually a white mass. It looked like she was a mage without attributes. As soon as I finished saying this, the class ended. The homework I assigned everyone today was to go back and study well what they learned today. Then I looked at Line and told her to come with me to the faculty office. Both Line and the kingdom's princess were startled. Being called to the office was never good news. After arriving at the office, I asked Line to wait for a moment. At this moment, Line was extremely anxious. Why would the teacher call me for a private meeting? Could it be that he wants me to stop attending his classes? The more Line thought about it, the more it made sense. It must be this way. How could a student who can't even use elemental attributes keep up with the Manifestation School's curriculum? But the problem was, she didn't want to give up Professor Ludwig's classes at all. Just then, I came over with a book and some documents. This scared Line out of her wits. Could that piece of paper be a course change application form? It seems he really doesn't want me in his class. Then she suddenly stood up, frantically saying, "Professor Ludwig, I will work hard. You can ask me to do anything in the future. Please let me continue attending your classes." However, I simply held out the magic book and notes in my hand. "What are you talking about? I'm just giving you some course materials to review. Don't you want them?" When she took the book in her hands, Line murmured in surprise, "The teacher called me here alone just to give me extra tutoring?" And the book I gave her had quite a background. This book records the understanding of non-attribute magic power. Line was somewhat puzzled. "Where did you buy a book like this? There's actually someone else with non-attribute magic power like me? What is that mage doing now?" I told Line that the mage was no longer in this world, and the only thing she left behind was the magic book in her hands. After I finished speaking, Line quietly glanced at me. Then she saw my incredibly melancholy expression, as if lamenting the fact that the mage had passed away. I asked Line what she thought of those who could only use one type of element. Line told me they had no talent. I poured a cup of coffee and handed it to Line, telling her that this was actually quite the opposite. Those you consider to have no talent are often beings with endless talent on the continent. Their magic can even interfere with natural phenomena, which means their mastery of their own elemental power has reached its peak. Next, let's talk about non-attribute magic power. What do you think of this attribute's capabilities? Line's little head was a bit confused. It should just be literally what it says, having no attributes, right? I chuckled. Line, you're still too naive. It hasn't been confirmed yet whether non-attribute magic power truly has no attributes. There was once a period when metal elements, one of the 10 major elements, were also considered earth attributes. So I told her not to be too hasty, because this world and magic are constantly changing. You should read that book carefully first. This is also homework I'm assigning specifically to you. After Line left, I slowly closed my eyes. Although I was already shocked that she possessed non-attribute magic power, but she actually also possesses the additional eye of judgment. The terrifying aspect of these eyes is that they can personally see and distinguish between good and evil, which means good and evil people can be determined at a glance in front of her. Any person's evil thoughts have nowhere to hide before Line. However, she probably hasn't awakened yet and has no knowledge of this matter herself. I really didn't expect that the book she wrote before would return to Line's hands in this way. Could it be that Theowen Magic Academy is about to produce another top genius who dominates the continent? If that's really the case, this should also be considered a kind of fate. Meanwhile, Aiden was practicing the homework I assigned him today. I really helped him a lot today, and when I was looking at magic, my gaze was so gentle and focused. He feels maybe he really shouldn't doubt me, because people who love magic can't possibly be bad people. This is one of his principles. Just then, he noticed a group of people gathered ahead discussing something. He focused his gaze on a noble student. From his clothing, demeanor, and bearing, you could tell at a glance he was an important figure. The next second, someone entered Aiden's line of sight. This person was the blonde guy, who began mocking Aiden. "Isn't this Aiden who can't even materialize elemental attributes? Looks like you're still sticking with that arrogant little guy." Leo, standing nearby, was furious upon hearing his words. "If you continue like this, I'll beat you until you're crawling on the ground looking for your teeth." Aiden didn't want to cause trouble, so he apologized to Jevon. Although he didn't know where he had offended him, he still apologized here, hoping things could be quiet and not disturb others. Jevon laughed heartily. "Fine, I'll fulfill your request, but if you want me to leave quietly, you must do one thing. Kneel down." Tessie behind him cursed angrily. "You bastard, that's enough. As a noble, don't you think your request is utterly shameful?" However, what came next made Tessie even more furious. Jevon said Tessie was just a fallen noble who dared to meddle randomly. "It's because you haven't received proper education like this that you've become this way." After hearing what Jevon said, Aiden stepped forward. The next moment, his eyes became incredibly cold. "I don't care how you humiliate me, but I absolutely cannot allow you to humiliate my friends." Although Jevon was momentarily intimidated by Aiden's aura, he quickly composed himself. "So what if you can't tolerate it? Are you going to fight me?" As he spoke, he was fumbling for white gloves in his hand. The next moment, a pair of bright white gloves was thrown at Aiden's chest. Looking at Javon's arrogant expression, Aiden Aiden clenched his fists. Then he also accepted this magic duel. The two people behind him felt like Aiden had gone crazy. How could you possibly beat him? Although he accepted the duel, I have one condition. If I win, you must apologize to Leo and Tessie. Javon looked at this with disdain. You'd better win first before talking. Before Javon could continue. Being arrogant, my figure walked over from behind him. My arrival made Javon feel something was wrong. On the contrary, Aiden greeted me happily with a smile on his face. This made me so angry my teeth itched. It's you again, Aiden. Do you think you're the protagonist of a shonen manga? Always causing trouble, and last time you even dared to doubt me, Javon shouted loudly. We're just having a legitimate duel. As a teacher, you shouldn't have the right to interfere. I indeed don't have the right to interfere in this matter, but a first-year student wanting to have a magic duel is not very safe. But this kid actually argued with me. I don't know where he got the courage. I quickly sensed something was wrong, so I looked around and saw an extraordinary young man. I could roughly understand. This Javon was probably trying to attract that noble's attention. I didn't let them have their way. I told both of them to go back quickly, and I wouldn't pursue responsibility for this matter. However, accidents always happen one after another. Another person stood up telling me not to interfere with the two of them, and this person was the noble teacher who had always been at odds with me. You're clearly abusing your teacher's authority. What does student dueling have to do with you? You have no right to interfere. As his words fell, two more students began to echo him. Indeed, this is abuse of teacher's authority. What does other people's dueling have to do with you? What qualifies you to interfere with others' duels? Looking at those people discussing behind me, I knew I had indeed been outmaneuvered by this teacher, but I really didn't know what he wanted to do. Then I slowly raised my hand. I suggest that since it's a duel, there should be protective measures for the students. Then I looked at the two people behind me. If you agree, then I'll oversee the match together with that teacher. The two of them showed unusual excitement and both expressed they didn't mind. I nodded. Since they agree, then let's do as you say. What I didn't expect was that this teacher actually wanted to make a bet with me. He wouldn't force me to bet with him. After all, the outcome of this duel was obvious, and betting on such a match would indeed be quite ridiculous. But I was willing to bet with him. The noble teacher smiled sinisterly. I didn't expect you to agree so quickly. So which student does teacher Ludwig think will win? Of course, I'll definitely bet on Javon winning, because I believe he's a capable mage. Javon was extremely happy to hear the teacher praising him. That noble teacher continued. If you're also planning to bet on Javon winning, then let's bet on how he'll achieve victory. However, my words were incredibly sharp. No need, because I won't bet on him winning. From the beginning, I planned to bet on Aiden winning this match. This suited the noble teacher's intentions perfectly. Then the bet is established. As for the stakes, let's use our respective researched magical materials since we both teach manifestation school. Then what surprised me was, so you also teach manifestation school? Why haven't I heard about this before? Clang! The noble teacher felt like something in his heart had shattered. Then he showed a face full of anger. Damn fallen noble, this time I'll make you look bad. But this can't be blamed on me. I really didn't know he taught manifestation school like me. Then I suggested, how about we hold the practice match 3 days from now? The other party naturally thought there was no problem. After confirming the time and place, that teacher left. Aiden slowly stepped forward, constantly apologizing to me. I told him not to think too much about it. You should think carefully about how to win now. Although Javon's starting point is higher than yours, it's still too early to conclude you'll lose because there are always variables in battle. Aiden asked what that variable was. He didn't quite understand. However, I didn't spell it out. Don't you already possess that thing? As long as you use it at the crucial moment, you'll definitely be able to win the match. Aiden suppressed his thoughts and lowered his head. Thinking carefully, if he used that, he might indeed be able to win. But that teacher from before had warned him that these things must never be used. Then Aiden shouted loudly, I want to win with my own true strength. This scene shocked me. This kid seems a bit off. Not only that, Aiden actually decided to seal his special magic and asked me to personally teach him magical combat because only this way would he have confidence in winning. But isn't this kid specifically here to mess with me? I bet on him winning because he's from the special school, and now he tells me he won't use it. This boy has really gone stupid. What a fool. Isn't your special school ability part of your strength? I had a huge headache about this student, but I could also take this opportunity to understand this kid's capabilities. Then I agreed to him. I'll teach you how to gain advantage in mage battles, but the process will be very difficult, and there's no guarantee of winning. Aiden nodded. No matter how difficult the process, he was willing to try. Then I took Aiden to begin secret training. I was really looking forward to seeing what kind of performance he'd have in 3 days. After today's training ended, Aiden collapsed exhausted on his bed. This kind of training was even more difficult than he had imagined, and he still had to train for 2 more days. Aiden had one doubt. Why was the teacher so certain he would win the match? Not many people knew he could use special magic. Could it be that the teacher knew? Thinking about this, Aiden fell directly into sleep. Meanwhile, the noble teacher also knew I was assisting Aiden's training. So you're also someone who doesn't like to lose. Standing beside him was Javon, who was going to compete with Aiden. After a while, the noble teacher pulled out a bottle of potion from his drawer. This bottle contained magic power enhancement potion. Drinking it before the practice match was a precautionary measure, but if this thing was discovered, he would lose his qualification. The noble teacher told Javon to drink it without worry, because this was a special medicine from the Beemore family that wouldn't be detected. Besides, that despicable commoner kid will definitely use underhanded methods, so we need to fight fire with fire. Then Jevon put the special potion in his pocket. Although this hurt his pride a bit, it was better than losing to a commoner. Seeing Jevon being so obedient, the noble teacher revealed a sinister smile. Time passed quickly, and the 3 days went by in a flash. This match caused quite a stir, with many teachers and students coming to watch. Many people were discussing who would win this match. I heard that commoner freshman is not to be underestimated, and this commoner freshman seems to be involved in the werewolf incident. He was the one who assisted Professor Ludwig in catching the werewolf. Everyone looked at my back. They had already heard that I had given Aiden 3 days of hellish training. Sitting beside me was Chris, the noble teacher. But strangely, Chris seemed to have very low recognition. Many people at the scene didn't know him and were discussing who he was. Chris heard all these comments. Chris also looked in my direction, determined in his heart that today he would make me unable to be as arrogant as before, making me struggle desperately in failure in front of everyone. Besides these people and the watching students, even the principal and others came to watch the match. The principal's appearance immediately caused a huge stir. Chris and I immediately stood up and respectfully greeted her. The principal walked over with great interest, asking me if I was confident about winning today's bet. The principal was extremely expectant about this. She also wanted to see how a commoner could defeat a noble. After everything was prepared, Aiden finally made his entrance. He wore silver armor and appeared somewhat stiff. Leo and Tessie cheered for him from below. Make sure to teach that arrogant brat a lesson. You must break his nose. At the same time, Jevon also made his entrance. Unlike Aiden, he appeared very relaxed. Today he wanted to show everyone the pride of nobility. Before the match began, the referee stepped forward to check both participants' conditions. Aiden said seriously, "You must keep your promise. If you lose, you must apologize to my friends." Jevon chuckled. "I'll naturally keep my promise, but you'd better win against me first." After the referee's inspection, both sides were found to have no problems, and the match could proceed normally. Just then, the referee noticed a weapon at Aiden's waist and asked what it was. Aiden said proudly, "This is my specialized staff for this practice match. Custom made," but to the teacher, it looked more like a sword, and he was considering whether to exclude this sword. After careful inspection, he found this sword-like weapon was thick and not sharp, so it was deemed acceptable for use. Then the referee began announcing, "You both should be clear that whoever's protective gear magic power is depleted first loses." At the beginning, Aiden immediately used his staff to launch a magical attack. A blue light burst from his staff. At the same time, Jevon performed the same operation, using fire magic. Leo and Tessie below were somewhat surprised. They didn't expect both of them to have almost the same speed. Both were very fast. All of this was within Aiden's expectations. He indeed used fire attribute magic, because this was Jevon's strongest attribute. Only Jevon was somewhat surprised. He found Aiden's strength was greater than he had imagined, and just from elemental attributes, Jevon's elemental attribute countered Aiden's, which wasn't favorable for him. Jevon smiled sinisterly. "These aren't problems. Problems like that only occur when magic power is equal." The next moment, Jevon's fire magic seemed about to break through Aiden's magical attack. As long as magic power wasn't equal, Jevon could easily win this match. Unexpectedly, right from the start of the match, Aiden was already at a disadvantage and could only dodge his magical attacks. Jevon shouted while attacking, "This is the difference between you and me, you insignificant commoner." Aiden wasn't to be outdone and immediately used magic to counterattack. It's a bit too early to say all this. When our two magics collided, an explosion occurred in the arena due to the conflict between our two magics. But Leo and Tessie felt something was wrong. Aiden seemed to be gradually suppressed by Jevon. If this continued, Aiden's magic power would be depleted first. Aiden also felt that if this continued, he would definitely lose, so he prepared to use a technique I had taught him. Just as Jevon's attack was about to land, Aiden made a quick dash and got close to his opponent first. Jevon was overjoyed seeing this scene. "Have you finally given up?" Even the noble teacher felt the match was over. He didn't expect to win so easily. But the next moment he felt something was wrong and couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. At this time, although Aiden was still maintaining his charge, magic had already condensed on his magic staff. Most importantly, this magic was a mobility technique, a skill only battle mages would use. The noble teacher gritted his teeth in anger. He didn't expect that in just 3 days, I had taught this commoner such high difficulty magic. But what shocked him most was that this intermediate magic was actually mastered by a commoner within 3 days. His talent was clearly so high. Jevon sensed something was wrong. Concentration was a basic requirement for casting magic. It should be very difficult to concentrate on spell casting while moving, but this kid was actually running and casting spells at the same time. Wouldn't that make him a sitting duck? But Jevon didn't appear very panicked because his technique was about to be completed. Seeing this, Aiden immediately cast a magical barrier in front of himself. The next moment, this barrier shattered directly, but Jevon's attack also ended there. Jevon was greatly shocked. He actually couldn't break through the opponent's technique. In the moment Jevon was stunned, Aiden had already broken through to his front and launched an attack on him. With a soft sound, a small magical attack hit Jevon's forehead. The next moment, Aiden's magic staff pointed at Jevon's head, saying, "You've already lost." At this moment, all the students in the venue erupted. They didn't expect a commoner to actually defeat a noble. duel. The referee raised Aiden's arm, announcing that the winner of this match was Aiden. This excited Leo and Tessie greatly. Aiden's performance just now was really too cool. On the other side, the noble area was rather quiet, with everyone angrily cursing Jevin for bringing shame to the nobility. After Jevin's defeat, those sharp words from the nobles reached his ears. A person from a baron family who goes around clinging to powerful people all day, now actually losing to a commoner. What an unlucky fellow. Simply a disgrace to nobility. These words made Jevin feel utterly ashamed. Jevin himself hadn't expected that he would actually lose to a commoner he once looked down upon. He gritted his teeth in anger, suspecting there must be something wrong with this. Soon he suspected that I must have used dirty methods to help Aiden win the match. Otherwise, how could Aiden possibly use mobility magic? At this moment, Jevin had completely lost his rationality. His mind was filled only with thoughts of killing Aiden. With a wave of his hand, a fire magic shot toward Aiden's direction. He must die here today. Otherwise, there's no way to wash away the shame of his defeat. Leo and others were extremely angry seeing this scene. This madman Jevin actually dared to attack after losing. The referee teacher saw this scene and immediately stood in front of Aiden, telling him to dodge quickly or he might get hurt, but Aiden didn't move and instead stared directly at that fire magic. The next second, Aiden's steps moved rapidly. He remembered what his master had said: there will always be times in life when you face choices. If you feel your choice at that time is right, then use that magic. You just need to follow your heart, that's enough. You don't need to worry about anything else. At this moment, Aiden appeared in front of the referee teacher like teleportation, and after his staff came down, it directly split the flames apart. And this was the special school's exclusive magic. After the smoke and dust cleared and the magic dissipated, both Aiden and the referee teacher in the arena were completely unharmed. Everyone was amazed. What exactly had just happened? He actually cut through magic. I sighed. I didn't expect this stubborn kid to be so adamant before, yet when needed, he used it without hesitation. This personality is really difficult to deal with. Seeing this magic, the noble teacher was extremely shocked. Could this be anti-magic? Special magic that can make magic disappear. Not only can he use mobility techniques, but he can also use this magic. What exactly is Aiden's background? Now he was truly afraid. Javan's body was trembling all over. He had acted on impulse and launched an attack. Then Aiden punched Jevin directly in the face. Although this punch wasn't very powerful, hitting Jevin with it was like a slap in the face. With a thud, Jevin's body fell heavily to the ground. Aiden had thought Jevin would at least admit his defeat gracefully, but he didn't expect him to be so despicable and shameless. So for scum like him, Aiden would definitely not let him off so easily. In the seats above, a noble young man chuckled. "This is the first time I've seen a noble beaten so badly. Don't you think so, Freuden?" It turned out the person beside him was the seemingly extraordinary Freuden, also the most outstanding genius in second year. He wasn't very clear about what the man had just said, because from the beginning he hadn't been interested in the Baron family's son. What he was more interested was that commoner named Aiden. In Freuden's eyes, this commoner named Aiden was much more capable than those dubious nobles, and he could see a different kind of tenacity in his eyes. At this time, Freuden slowly stood up. He had planned to leave, but stopped at the door. He looked in my direction, feeling that this teacher was definitely not an ordinary person either. Then Freuden left without looking back. He believed he would definitely have dealings with this teacher in the future. The noble teacher glared at me through gritted teeth. "You clearly knew that student could use anti-magic, yet you lured me into taking the bait." I completely ignored his anger. "I don't know why you're so angry. As a first-year teacher, haven't you checked the student's personal files? The most important point is, whether Aiden can use anti-magic had no impact on the outcome of this victory from the beginning. Do you admit this?" Then the noble teacher was willing to accept his loss. He also had some academic papers for me to choose from. However, I didn't plan to take his papers, which shocked the noble teacher. My reason for not wanting his papers was simple, because I don't want to seize others' achievements. I believe such behavior is beneath my dignity. After saying this, I left, leaving the noble teacher alone to face the wind in confusion. However, my words made him extremely angry. The meaning of my words was that he had no dignity. After winning this match, someone came before me. Sedina congratulated me on winning this bet, but this matter would definitely attract the attention of the school's internal affairs. Won't this be a problem? What I said next shocked her greatly. Theo and principal is currently suspicious of me, so winning this match is actually better for me. The principal has long been aware of our existence. Even though I'm a teacher, she won't easily remove me from the list of suspects. Then I stroked my chin. If this incident can leave a good impression on the principal, that would be another matter entirely. Although this single incident won't change her opinion of me, it's at least better than the previous impression. So next, I wanted Sedina to assist me as well. If I frequently meet with a student I have no connection with, that would be more likely to arouse suspicion. But for an excellent teacher to have contact with an excellent student, that's only natural. So I gave her an order to use maximum effort to become a model student. This was the first task I assigned her. Sedina was completely fired up. She would definitely complete the first task assigned by the first order and would definitely complete it perfectly. Even if she died, she would complete the mission. I sighed. Why does this girl always have death hanging on her lips? It's really unlucky. Sedina fired up again. She would definitely try not to die and complete the task assigned by the first order. She was too excited now. Seeing Sedina so passionate actually made me feel pressured. Then I returned to my dormitory and began thinking. Now I had stabilized both sides' forces. Through today's message to Sedina, I believe believed Black Dawn wouldn't act rashly, and through this match, I believed many people could see that I was on the principal's side, but these were just stabilizing measures. If I wanted to protect myself, I had to start building my own organization. Just then, my phone rang. It was Hans calling. I immediately answered, asking what he wanted. It turned out Hans had already figured out how to establish a foothold in the city over the past few days. The most important thing was force suppression. I chuckled. That's just perfect then. I told Hans not to rush. I would be there soon. Hans was somewhat confused. Why don't you wait until you finish your business? This can't be resolved in just a few moves. I told Hans to wait for me there. I would make them resolved in just a few moves. 2.5 hours later, my figure had already appeared inside the bar. The boss here quickly noticed my presence. He immediately walked over, claiming the shop was closed and telling me to leave quickly. My mouth curved into a smiling expression. You should be Deutery, the boss of Anti-Society, right? Deutery was somewhat puzzled. What was this man's background? He'd never seen him before. Why did he know his identity? Then I began introducing myself. My name is James Moriarty. After hearing my words, his jaw nearly dropped, because he knew this name. The criminal consultant who once commanded the underworld in the Delica Kingdom, but had been living under an assumed name for years. How could he suddenly appear here? He first engaged in pleasantries with me, then finally said he wasn't quite sure of my identity. Then he glanced slightly at his subordinates behind him, signaling them to come forward and surround me. Next, I slowly raised my arm and said unhurriedly, although my identity is worth your doubt, I still suggest you don't draw your guns. Seeing their disobedience behavior, I suddenly smiled. All of your efforts are completely in vain. The boss turned his head to signal his subordinate to put a bullet in my shoulder to teach me a lesson. However, strangely, the trigger couldn't be pulled no matter what. Not only that, but everyone present carrying guns couldn't pull their triggers. Only then did I turn around unhurriedly and say to them, didn't I tell you not to shoot? Now this is really a bit awkward. Deutery was extremely shocked. He hadn't even noticed when I had cast this fire silence magic. I chuckled. That guy should be arriving soon. With a loud crash, someone in the bar was heavily thrown against the wall. Looking closely, a wolf had somehow appeared at the entrance. This wolf was tall and mighty. Everyone present was scared and trembling upon seeing this scene. However, this wolf didn't cause any more trouble but walked straight to my side. The next moment, we stood side by side asserting our dominance. Let me see which blind fool dares to make a move now. The werewolf's arrival quickly sparked speculation. Could it be that he had tamed the werewolf? And regarding the previous werewolf incident, they also suspected I was behind it. Actually, the werewolf's identity was Hans. Let's go back to 15 minutes ago. Hans and I briefly explained the situation. There were underworld forces in our secret base area. That territory was divided among 4 dark organizations. The largest organization was a gang called Anti-Society. It was actually these guys who had done all kinds of evil deeds and controlled this area. Our target was Anti-Society. Only by taking them down could we establish a foothold here. But Hans had a big problem. Their scale was too large for us to attack head-on. So Hans decided to be cautious and should first find their weaknesses, then deliver a fatal blow. But I directly rejected his proposal. My idea was simple. A frontal attack would be more efficient. Since Bell Bertrickson died, their entire organization had been extremely nervous every day, so I dared to assert that Bell Bertrickson had some kind of connection with Anti-Society. Anti-Society helped Bell Bertrickson handle many dirty affairs. Now that the valuable funding chain was broken, Anti-Society was definitely angry, so we planned to catch them all in one net while they were acting together. After hearing my words, Hans got a bit anxious. They're not an ordinary gang. They have combat power at the quasi-night level like mercenaries, but I was completely arrogant. So in the end, aren't they still not at night level? If they haven't reached night level, then in front of me they're like chickens and pottery dogs. But this time was a bit different because of my physical condition. I needed Hans's help. The thing was, I alone didn't have much deterrent power. I had to find a big guy who could intimidate people to stand beside me. But Hans was very panicked at this time. He leaned to the side and whispered to me, "Big brother, we agreed beforehand. If a fight breaks out, I'm definitely running away." I answered him, "No problem, little brother. Just help me with the show. I definitely won't make you fight." Afterward, we sat there calmly. Deutery saw my composed and collected demeanor and knew I wasn't someone to mess with. It was his first time hearing that werewolves could be tamed. He then scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. "Oh my, you really are Professor Moriarty." I was blind not to recognize such greatness. I smiled slightly. "It seems you now believe my identity." Then I snapped my fingers. "Well then, let's get down to business. I want to start a new venture in the city." Upon hearing this news, Deutery was so excited he nearly exploded. This way, wouldn't his own power grow even stronger? He was more than willing to help me. However, my next words left him stunned. He could hardly believe his own ears. "I don't like dealing with your kind of dirty, despicable activities. Starting today, the Anti-Society will disappear from here." In that instant, Deutery felt his mind go completely blank. What this guy was saying was far too arrogant. After being dazed for 2.5 seconds, he finally snapped back to reality. This person was here to cause trouble. "Everyone, attack!" The next moment, all the lackeys in the shop sprang into action, wielding small knives as weapons. At this time, the werewolf-transformed Hans was incredibly panicked. "Boss, we agreed beforehand. Once a fight breaks out, I'm running away. I told my brother not to worry, just slowly retreat to the back and prepare to escape. The next moment, my staff struck heavily against the floor, while Hans watched in shock. Thick black mist spread from beneath my feet, shrouding the entire bar. Anyone whose body was touched by the black mist had their vision obstructed, completely unable to see ahead. At this moment, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, completely unaware they were already in the slaughterhouse. Meanwhile, I slowly stood up and drew the sword from within my staff. With a sharp ring, my sword was already unsheathed. Next came my assassination time. Little babies, try to last a bit longer, otherwise it would be too boring. This was third-tier dark magic. Fool's dream. Many had died under this spell before. This magic works through darkness and shadow, planting fear deep in the opponent's heart when their psychological defenses collapse. It's composite magic that adds curses to magical effects. This scene scared Deutery half to death. What are you all screaming about? Hurry up and kill that guy! At the same time, two of Deutery's subordinates slowly approached, both drawing their weapons. Then they swung their swords at the smoke behind them. These two strikes seemed somewhat extraordinary. After they struck, my black mist magic disappeared. The scene before Deutery's eyes was me standing alone, having killed everyone. I turned my head toward him and smiled slightly. Now it's your turn. The next moment, two people quickly approached me, their sharp swords aimed at my hands. I couldn't help but step back a few paces. Could this guy actually be a knight? He actually severed my magic. Clang, 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 clang. We exchanged dozens of rounds in just 2 seconds. Although their skills were considerable, I felt I definitely wouldn't lose. The next moment, I smiled slightly. Now the real show begins. During our earlier fight, I had deliberately left a purple potion on the ground. The next moment, thick purple gas erupted from behind me. The poison behind me was obviously unusual. Clearly, highly toxic. The man in the white suit immediately wrapped magic around his entire body. This way, even if the gas was poisonous, it couldn't harm him. At the same time, 3 of my blade projectiles flew straight at his face. With a whoosh, he struck out with his sword, deflecting 2 of the blades. This was child's play for him. However, for me, this was a killing move. I watched as his entire arm was being corroded away. His career was essentially over. The other expert was incredibly shocked. This was simply too treacherous. He had used the daggers as cover while secretly hiding poison. Did he know that protective magic couldn't block poison that directly contacted the skin? Meanwhile, the man clutched his arm to ease the pain while cursing furiously, unaware that in his shadow, a small vortex was slowly emerging. The man continued cursing, saying that once he found me, he would definitely tear me to pieces, unaware that the emerging black gas had quietly risen from the ground. The next moment, my figure appeared, and with one sword strike, I exploded the white-suited man's head. My killing move was so fast he couldn't even imagine it. He had no time to react. Now Deutery and his henchmen were somewhat shocked. How could they fight when they couldn't even see the enemy? Wouldn't that just be delivering themselves to be killed? I slowly pried open the white-suited man's head with my left hand, while slowly drawing out my sword with my right. With a splash, I swung both arms and withdrew my sword in the most stylish manner, my eyes revealing nothing but majesty and contempt. His henchman was very curious. Are you really Professor Moriarty? He's never heard of Professor Moriarty engaging in actual combat. Regarding his question, I didn't plan to answer him because there was really no need. He was about to die anyway. My words made him extremely panicked, but he also understood that I was someone who liked to lure opponents into carelessness, exposing weaknesses to attack. As long as he stayed alert to this, he might be able to win. The next moment, the man's figure moved. The first thing he needed to do was close the distance between us. I quickly threw a potion, and this move was identical to the previous one. The man sneered disdainfully. Do you think I'll fall for that again? The next moment, he twisted his body, completely avoiding the potion. This was his plan. Complete avoidance meant avoiding damage. But just then, his body seemed to be held back by some pulling force, unable to advance even half a step. Looking back, his sword was actually stuck by some sticky substance from his own shadow. At the same time, I quickly drew my gun and aimed at him. If nothing unexpected happened, it would be his death. Now the man was no longer calm. He had to quickly throw away his sword and hide. With his reaction speed, he could completely dodge. Just as he was about to dodge my attack, his eyes suddenly widened. Looking back, somehow a sword had already pierced through his belly. At this moment, the henchman's heart was filled with despair, but he still didn't understand what was happening. Why would such deadly things suddenly appear in his own shadow? All magic is activated with the caster as the center. He had never heard of such magic. I didn't explain his confusion, nor did I say a word of nonsense to him. I simply raised my gun and shot him. With a bang, the man's body fell to his knees, and I simply stepped over him without even glancing at him. I walked directly to Deutery's front. His entire body was trembling. I chuckled. Now that the troublesome matters have been resolved, let's continue our conversation. 15 minutes later, I was leisurely pouring myself an expensive beer in the bar. Hans had returned to human form by this time. Seeing that there was no more fighting, he dared to run back to find me. He explained that his sense of smell became acute after transformation, and he couldn't stand such a bloody smell, otherwise he would have wanted a drink too. I looked at Deutery beside me. I had already obtained the intelligence I needed. The rest would be handled by the other 3 organizations. Hans didn't need to worry about this at all, so he casually asked what I was drinking. I told him it was a 1938 Burgundy. Hearing that I was drinking such expensive alcohol, Hans didn't care about the heavy bloody smell anymore, and immediately planned to join me for a drink. Hans looked troubled chuckled. There would be more work ahead, and 2 people working was really quite strenuous. I had thought of this too. I planned to randomly find 2 people from among those I knew to help. After all, I knew quite a few people. After hearing my words, Hans looked terrified instead. Are you serious about this? Hans was already scared speechless. Indeed, no one was more suitable for these tasks than them. But those guys were so stubborn. Would they really come if you called them? But I had already finished making the phone call. They said they would come after finishing their current tasks. Hans, do you hate them that much? Awkwardly embarrassed, Hans just felt it was somewhat inconvenient because there wasn't a single normal person among them, though he probably shouldn't say such things. Hans sighed deeply. No matter what happened in the end, he would do as I said. But isn't the principal suspicious of you? Why are you still wandering around outside so late? I told Hans not to worry. The current principal wouldn't send anyone to follow me because no mage was willing to take on uncertain risks. Most importantly, the principal now had to keep the opposition in check. She wouldn't do anything that might cause strong opposition if she wasn't careful. After hearing my words, Hans suddenly understood. Then he remembered that since people were joining, we could be considered an organization now. Since we were an organization, we definitely needed a name. I thought carefully. Now that we had established a foothold in Pilbert, it was time to give the organization a name. After contemplating for a moment, I thought of a wonderful name. Unknown. Let us all become people of unknown identity. Hans repeated the name Unknown in his mouth. You want to name the organization Unknown Identity? I nodded to indicate that was correct. Aren't you satisfied? Hans chuckled. No, I'm very satisfied. This name suits us perfectly. He picked up a bottle and poured it into his glass. Then Hans looked at me intently. Boss, come on, one last drink. I was also very happy after all. Starting today, we could establish a foothold in this city. Our 2 glasses clinked together, toasting to the birth of our new organization. The next day when I returned to school, Serena looked puzzled and asked me, why don't you need teaching assistants? Her words left me stunned. For a moment, I felt what she said made a lot of sense. Why hadn't I thought of finding teaching assistants before? I wondered to myself, does everyone have teaching assistants? Then I said that I didn't need any for now, and besides, teaching 80 students didn't make me feel very tired. But only I knew that what I had just said was all just putting on a brave front. Thinking about this made me increasingly angry. I never expected that you could find teaching assistants at this school. So was I the only one working myself to death like this? Teacher Serena had chosen her teaching assistants, but because she wasn't busy, she didn't need extra hands, so she had only selected 3 teaching assistants for now. Hearing her words, I was completely stunned. Could you actually choose multiple teaching assistants? Serena wasn't very busy, but still chose 3 teaching assistants. Couldn't I choose 10? Just then, my gaze sharpened as I noticed movement behind me. Looking closely, the person leading was actually Chris B. Moore, and behind him should all be teaching assistants, about 10 of them. Looking at it this way, 3 teaching assistants was indeed relatively few. All the teachers were advising me to select some teaching assistants because the work would only get more tiring in the future. The so-called teaching assistants were excellent students who helped teachers complete daily tasks. After returning, I remembered about teaching assistants and carefully read some information about them. It stated that teaching assistants could not only earn extra credits but also receive guidance from teachers, regardless of grade level. Even newly appointed teachers would have 6 or more teaching assistants. Some teaching assistants would choose to give up graduation and stay under their mentors to research magic. This felt somewhat like 21st century graduate students. Although finding a few people to do odd jobs could make me much more relaxed, the problem was, who should I choose as teaching assistants now? This was a list of students that teacher Serena had given me earlier, asking me to select a few from it. I carefully flipped through several pages and found that the people listed were all quite excellent, but none had reached the standards I wanted. Just then, I discovered that Sedina's name was actually on this list of outstanding students. This was getting interesting. The next day, I found Sedina following me. Sedina's clumsy tracking skills hadn't improved at all. Sedina seemed somewhat panicked. She had just seen me on the road, so she had unconsciously followed. This left me somewhat speechless. Normal people don't unconsciously tail their teachers. Was she really that bored? Then I turned around and told her to come over. I had something to tell her. Do you have other classes on Tuesday and Thursday mornings from 10 to 12? The answer I got was that she was attending my class during that time. I chuckled. That works perfectly. This plan is absolutely perfect. Teacher-student cooperation at its peak. Then I stepped in front of her and stopped. How about becoming my teaching assistant? Sedina was overwhelmed by my presence and immediately agreed, but soon after she realized what had happened. Sedina's heart was full of anxiety. Why did you suddenly ask me to be a teaching assistant? I patiently explained to her. If you become my teaching assistant, won't you be able to meet with me naturally? And don't worry, I saw your name on the recommendation list. But if she wasn't willing, I would find someone else. This statement really startled her. Then Sedina nodded obediently and said she would submit the teaching assistant application materials to me within 2 days. After Sedina left, I chuckled. It seemed the first teaching assistant I chose was quite good. If I kept this person by my side, I should be able to slowly dig out intelligence about Black Dawn. Moreover, in 2 days, I would have a loyal subordinate to run errands for me. Finally, I could relax and take it easy. Time passed quickly. An hour went by. Serena's execution ability was incredibly strong. In just 1 hour, she had obtained the teaching assistant application form and handed it to me. I was shocked by this person's efficiency. Then I told her good work and said that after she went back, she should wait for for me to assign her tasks. Because I had once again entered the classroom, the crowd was even more noisy than last time. Lene and the Kingdom Princess both felt that recently some very strange rumors seemed to be circulating among the students. This rumor was that teacher Ludwig was apparently recruiting teaching assistants recently. Lene was surprised. This was indeed quite attractive. The Kingdom Princess continued, actually, the fact that he has never selected teaching assistants until now is surprising. Some people even suspect he doesn't know teaching assistants exist, but these were just side stories. The hottest topic was still that rumor. The legendary all-powerful stone that could supposedly grant any wish was said to be sleeping somewhere in Theowen Academy. Lene was naturally somewhat skeptical. Do such mythical things really exist? The Kingdom Princess was very confident about this. Aren't there so many unsolved mysteries in the world that exist? This thing must exist too, and this is Theowen, the center of magic. Although there might be some exaggeration, it must be an item that matches Theowen's status. However, someone was making critical comments about their discussion. This is too naive. I can't stand listening to it. School beauty Flora didn't believe such nonsense. If such a thing really existed, it would have been claimed by those in high positions long ago. But what concerned her was that the teacher she had once thought was like a Superman was also recruiting teaching assistants. The so-called teaching assistant could be said to be equivalent to the teacher's representative, so they must possess strength comparable to the teacher, someone like her, for instance. Flora was quite confident about this. As long as she personally approached and persuaded him, she might consider becoming his teaching assistant. However, the next events directly shattered Flora's fantasy. At this moment, standing on the platform was not me, but my teaching assistant, Sedina. Her appearance immediately attracted many students' attention. This shocked Flora greatly. She had originally wanted to become my teaching assistant, only to discover that the teaching assistant had already been chosen. After Sedina greeted everyone, I leisurely walked in and asked Sedina to step out first. The moment I entered, all the students looked at me in shock, very curious about why I had chosen that person as my teaching assistant. However, I didn't respond to them. I quickly finished today's lesson and suggested everyone review today's content carefully, as it would be on the next exam. But at this moment, an untimely figure stood up. Teacher Ludwig, I have a question I'd like to ask you. She was surprised that I knew her name, Julia Frumhart. I told Julia to go ahead with any questions she had. It was hard not to remember someone like her, as she was this year's entrance exam first place. I had also heard she was a talent strongly recommended by the Magic Tower. Julia chuckled. It's not really anything important. I just wanted to ask how you selected your teaching assistant. Her tone and demeanor made me very dissatisfied. I thought she would ask about something else, but it turned out to be just this question. There was some commotion in the crowd. Although this was my own selection, there probably weren't any specific requirements or rigid conditions, right? Julia seemed to think of something. When you select teaching assistants, don't you consider whether they come from noble families or prestigious backgrounds? As soon as she finished speaking, I knew what she meant. She wasn't asking out of pure curiosity. Julia also wanted to become my teaching assistant. I slowly opened my mouth and said, when I select teaching assistants, I only focus on one thing, and that is character. As long as someone has good character, I welcome anyone, though they still need to pass my basic interview. My cold gaze fixed on Julia again. Although you are very excellent, since you asked this question, it seems you no longer need an interview, because you cannot become my teaching assistant. My words greatly embarrassed Julia, but I had no intention of letting her save face, since she had dared to insult my person. All of this was clearly heard by Sedina outside the door, who thought that I had done quite a lot for her and that she definitely wouldn't disappoint the First Order's expectations. Just as I walked out the door, unexpectedly, Flora approached me again. I turned and asked Flora what she wanted. Flora stammered, I heard you found a teaching assistant, right? I glanced at her. Don't tell me you also want to become my teaching assistant? This statement startled Flora. Although she indeed wanted to, since I had brought it up, she no longer wanted to. But this time she came to thank me. Thanks to my help last time, she was able to remain safe, and she felt the advice I gave her then was also very reasonable. I told her not to thank me, because this was just what a teacher should do. As long as she took my words to heart, that was enough. Flora asked me, were you really okay that time? After all, you consumed much more magic power than I did. I said I was fine, but actually I had almost fainted. But I couldn't say that, it would be too embarrassing. This greatly surprised Flora. Just how many elements can you use? Just in class, I saw you use 5 different types. I wasn't as powerful as she imagined. Actually, I only knew those 5 types, but in reality I could use all 10 major elements. But I wasn't proficient in any of them. I was the complete opposite of those single attribute mages. In other words, I was actually a dabbler who couldn't reach top level in any element. But if this matter were exposed, it might cause a lot of trouble, so let's just say it's 5 types. Seeing that Flora had no more questions, I turned to leave. This startled Flora. She still had one last question, but by then I already knew what question she wanted to ask. I left behind one sentence. If you change your mind, you can come find me anytime to apply for teaching assistant, because in my eyes you are completely qualified to become my teaching assistant. This statement somewhat surprised Flora. Then I left without looking back, leaving Flora alone confused in the wind. After I left, she couldn't help but bite her lip, trying to suppress the urge to cry in her heart. Then she quietly muttered, "This is really annoying. Still needing my help? Looks like I won't have time to go out and play anymore." 10 minutes later, I arrived at the principal's office. This time, she had specifically asked me to come. The principal was extremely happy to see me arrive. Come, Teacher Ludwig. Please sit, please sit. Have you heard about that recent rumor? Recently, there had been a rumor circulating around the school that someone said an all-powerful stone was hidden somewhere in Theowen, currently sleeping. I nodded, indicating I had heard about it, but I believed it was just a rumor spread by students. The next moment, the principal's words somewhat stunned me. She actually said this wasn't a rumor. She extended her hand, and a blue diamond-shaped crystal appeared in her palm. Then she continued, "The all-powerful stone that can grant wishes really exists. This is a mysterious creature of unknown origin that has existed for a very long time." I suddenly understood, so this was an artifact. I heard that this all-powerful stone was an ancient artifact of unknown origin, with power hundreds of times greater than magical devices created by great mages. I still found it somewhat hard to believe. Is such a magical object really at Theowen? The principal answered with certainty. "It has been kept by our school for a very long time. This was originally top secret, but now such rumors have appeared, meaning our internal information has been leaked. The all-powerful stone's power was very strong, so its storage location needed regular maintenance. During the process of moving the all-powerful stone for facility repairs, information might have been leaked. The principal felt that this rumor was so specific that there must be some internal problem, and she hoped I could look into this matter." This made my eyes instantly darken. Wasn't this just giving me trouble? Although the principal seemed to trust me on the surface and was entrusting this matter to me, she didn't seem to completely trust that I was on her side. Perhaps that all-powerful stone was just a decoy. I even suspected the principal herself had leaked the information and then came to me to test my true intentions. This woman was truly terrifying. The principal tapped her fingers on the desk. If I saw any suspicious individuals, I should tell her. Besides that, the artifact was about to be moved, and during the transfer period, she would provide me with certain assistance. There was another point. She would also arrange for other teachers to participate, but the tasks assigned to different people would be somewhat different, so they probably wouldn't meet. After returning, I began to think. Internal information at Theowen had been leaked. Were those Black Dawn guys starting to make their move? But Sedina hadn't sent me any information yet. I didn't know if this was planned by other First Orders or if there was some special reason. Maybe something big would happen soon. Then I reached into my pocket and felt around. I never expected I would find it here. What was in my palm was also an artifact. For a very long time, I had been wandering around the continent, constantly changing identities. Sometimes a criminal consultant, sometimes a wealthy merchant. Anyway, I had many identities. The reason I hid my identity and traveled around the world was for one purpose only, to find the remaining fragments of artifacts. Although I came here after learning there were artifacts within the Empire, I never expected there would be another piece at Theowen. Although the fragment here and the artifact I was looking for weren't the same type, I might be able to use the all-powerful stone to learn where the artifact I was seeking was located. Just then my phone rang. Hans was reporting on work. The cleanup work on his end was almost complete. Then he said, "Probably because we two dealt with the anti-society, the remaining 3 organizations have been very well behaved. Instead, some small organizations have targeted the anti-society's former territory and are being particularly arrogant. I think we might need you to step in again, boss. Have you been free recently?" But I refused him. I didn't have time recently because an artifact had appeared at Theowen. Hans looked surprised. "How do you encounter unexpected events more easily than before?" "The school has artifacts. Maybe Theowen Academy really does have unspeakable secrets." I told him not to think so much. I would investigate the rest myself. I wouldn't have time to go over there recently. Although I also wanted to act immediately since the principal had given me instructions, I should wait and see for now. This all-powerful stone that could grant wishes might be a huge opportunity for me. Artifacts weren't easily found. After wandering the continent for so long, I'd only found 3 pieces. Judging from the size and shape of the fragments, there should be about 4 pieces left. Only by collecting these 7 fragments could they form a complete artifact. If I could collect this artifact, thinking of this, I became increasingly nervous, and my fingers couldn't help but grip tighter. At the same time, in the princess's room, she had been busy all day and could finally rest a bit. Although she was a princess, this was unavoidable. She always felt like she was being watched, unable to live the ordinary student life she wanted. Just then, her phone suddenly rang. She answered the video call. It was Trina, who said, "I'm very sorry to disturb Princess Elendil so late, but I have an urgent matter." The princess told her to go ahead. "What's the matter calling so late?" "I heard there was a werewolf incident in Theowen, but the princess has already explained that this was handled by a teacher. However, our action group had some involvement with that teacher because of this incident, so she will personally go find the teacher who dealt with the werewolf later." But out of caution, she still wanted to confirm with the princess whether she knew him. 10 minutes later, the princess told everything in detail, including how I came, my name and my abilities, everything. After hanging up, they prepared to first visit this Theowen teacher. Besides that, today Robin also had a clue. They had found an unburned paper fragment at the scene. Through analysis, they discovered the group seemed to be researching and developing something, but The specific content was hard to grasp. Although not very important, it wasn't completely fruitless either. Next, she asked if Robin had anything else. There actually was one thing worth noting. Last night, a dark organization called Anti-Society in Pilbert had disappeared overnight. Although she didn't think it was necessarily related to the case, she felt they could keep a close eye on it. But Trina didn't plan to waste time here. We'd better focus on completing our assigned tasks, then investigate the Pilbert matter a bit, and finally go directly to Theoan Academy. The next day, I was somewhat distracted during class. In just a few short days, the rumors had spread rapidly. If this continued, there would definitely be students acting on their own, like during the werewolf incident, which would make many things very troublesome. Just then, my gaze became very sharp as I looked behind me. Sure enough, as I had suspected, quite a large group of students had lost interest and even looked drowsy. Bang! I slammed my hand on the desk. These students instantly became alert. I told them, "You all seem very bored, so today I'll show you something interesting." The next moment, I condensed a ball of fire magic on my fingertip. Mages always cast magic centered on themselves because magic power comes from the caster. I clenched my fist hard and directly extinguished the flame. At this time, there was still a student dozing below. The next moment, this ball of magic instantly lit up on his chest, startling him greatly. This is the interesting thing I mentioned. With just a slight adjustment, you can achieve this effect. Although magic is cast centered on the caster, more precisely, magic should condense in the air at a certain distance from the caster, generally within 1 meter. But if you consume a large amount of magic power, this distance might exceed 1 meter. I call this coordinate designation technique. This is my original magic. Flora's heart was incredibly shocked. Another original magic, and she had indeed never heard of this coordinate designation technique. This made her very curious about where this magic idea came from. I told everyone to quiet down. You might find this amazing, but this is actually just a variation of manifestation school magic. I created this after getting inspiration from a mage. Also, I'm not showing this to teach it to you. This caused an uproar below. You won't teach us? If you won't teach us, why show us? Is it just to show off? I told everyone to be quiet and listen to my explanation. All magic is built on a solid foundation. Only after laying a solid foundation is true innovation possible. The most important thing for flexible magic use is gradual, step-by-step learning. So even if you find the course content boring, even if you think what I'm saying is nonsense, you must concentrate and listen. This is for your own future. As soon as I finished speaking, the bell rang, so today's class ended here. If any student figures out the principle behind this magic, you can come find me in the faculty office anytime. I won't be stingy with extra credit. After class, I went to my room where my teaching assistant Sedina was waiting for my assignment. Then I noticed the phone on the desk was ringing. So I told Sedina to step outside and wait for me. After she left, I also set up a soundproof barrier. I slowly sat down and answered the principal's call. Calculating the time, she should indeed be contacting me now. As soon as the phone connected, the principal's anxious voice came through. However, what she said next shocked me immensely. She actually said that the all-power stone had been stolen. I couldn't process this news for a moment, so I asked her what exactly had happened. Here's what happened. Someone had leaked the location of the all-power stone's backup storage room, and they struck before the transfer could take place. The principal was extremely troubled at this moment. She had thought that, even if the news spread, as long as they handled it quickly, there wouldn't be any problems. She never expected to miscalculate like this. Although the pursuit team was chasing those guys, if they used the all-power stone during this period, the situation would spiral out of control. I thought carefully. Indeed, as the principal said, the situation was very serious. I also understood the purpose of the principal's call today, so I asked her what the latest deadline was. The principal's voice paused for 2 seconds, then she slowly said, "Before midnight tonight." I only said 4 words, "I understand." The principal seemed puzzled. "Don't you have anything else you want to ask?" Although I did have questions, I believed that taking immediate action was better than asking questions. Beep. I hung up the principal's call. Although I had anticipated that something big would happen soon, I didn't expect it to happen this quickly. However, I wasn't quite sure what those guys were planning. The principal hadn't completely eliminated her suspicions of me yet, so if I wasn't careful, she would consider me an accomplice. I began to carefully recall this incident. The plan didn't seem tight at all. Was this situation really orchestrated by other First Order members? It seemed too full of loopholes. At this moment, I thought of something, then I called for Sedina to come in. With a creak, Sedina slowly walked in from outside. I told her straight out that those guys below seemed to have acted on their own. Sedina nodded her head in shame. She knew about this matter. Then my hawk-like eyes fixed on Sedina's eyes. I told her to explain everything from beginning to end, not leaving out a single word about what exactly had happened. According to the investigation, this incident seemed to be caused by a Third Order member gathering intelligence. While investigating Theoan's classified information, he discovered files related to the All-Power Stone. Unexpectedly, news about the All-Power Stone quickly spread among the students. Because he had obtained relevant intelligence beforehand, he didn't think this was false rumor. After some investigation, he confirmed that this artifact with powerful magic really existed, and he learned where it was kept. Therefore, the Third Order immediately reported this matter to the Second Order, but the Second Order didn't continue reporting upward, and instead tried to handle this matter alone. The Second Order member who acted on his own authority was named Demyers. Although he was Second Order, he had close ties with the intelligence department and was mainly responsible for handling such matters. Such an important matter should have been reported to the First Order in time. Did he think I wouldn't know? What do you think made that guy cause such troublesome incident? At this moment, Sedina was extremely panicked. This was the most pressure she had felt recently. Sedina could only speculate that he might be coveting the First Order position, because Zero Order had once said that the 7 First Order positions could be replaced at any time. Although Demyers had great ambition, he lacked the ability to sit in that position, so he wanted to make a great contribution through this incident. After hearing what she said, I had a general understanding. What's their situation now? I continued, saying that our identities could easily be exposed now because the pursuit team had already begun operations. According to Sedina's investigation, the Second Order member and more than 10 accomplices had seized the artifact together and were currently on the run. She only knew they had fled toward the Silent Forest direction. Other details were still unknown. I stood up with a start. I knew how to act. As for you, you don't need to do anything. Just wait for my news. You've told me so much and have fully done your duty. Leave the rest to me. You did very well, Sedina. Then I left this place, asking her to tidy up the room. My words moved Sedina to tears. She had finally received personal praise from the First Order. Bang! I slammed the door shut heavily. I felt there was something wrong with this Sedina. I had only exchanged a few pleasantries with her, so why did she have that expression? I had originally just thought she was overly loyal to the First Order. Perhaps that guy had her own difficulties, but now the most important thing was to quickly catch those guys and retrieve the All-Power Stone. I slowly said, Otter Nocturnus. The next moment, a mass of black smoke appeared out of nowhere in the sky above. My gaze was extremely cold. Soon this mass of black magic power attached itself to my body. This was an illusion technique equivalent to summoning magic. This technique didn't consume large amounts of magic power, but it made the caster's presence disappear. In other words, no magic could see the caster of this spell. However, what I didn't know was that at that instant, Flora actually felt an unusual heart palpitation. She quickly turned around and found nothing behind her. She didn't know what was happening either. Just now she seemed to feel something pass by her side. Although she couldn't see it, she was certain it was related to magic. It was actually invisible magic, so she wanted to go confirm it. At the same time, 3 staff members were chatting here. Those guys actually ran into the Silent Forest. However, they didn't know that I heard their entire conversation. After learning that they were indeed in this forest, I felt relieved. As long as they were in here, I wasn't afraid of not finding them. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, a man was holding his head with a trembling body. A companion beside him told him to pull himself together. Did he want to go crazy like that other guy just now? Someone else asked Demyers what to do now. The forest was surrounded by pursuit team members. If this continued, they would go crazy too. Hearing his subordinates question him like this, Demyers instantly flew into a rage, telling them all to shut up. Everything was part of his plan. Hearing the Second Order so angry, several subordinates didn't dare speak anymore. Demyers was also extremely panicked at this moment. He still held the All-Power Stone in his hand, but he didn't know how to use it. He could feel that the power flowing within this stone was real, but for some reason, he couldn't use it. Just then, everyone was startled by rustling sounds. Who's there? Don't skulk around, come out right now. However, when they saw my figure, they showed extreme terror. The most frightened was the Second Order member, because this entire incident was caused by him. At this moment, seeing my figure, they also learned my name, John Doe, which was another identity name for Ludwig. My gaze was extremely cold. Why do you think I came here personally? Second Order Demyers. Demyers was almost scared to collapse on the ground. He definitely knew, but why did it have to be the cold and ruthless John Doe who came? Now he would definitely be killed by John. His palms were slightly trembling. Then he picked up the All-Power Stone and handed it over, saying this was the artifact called the All-Power Stone, and he was willing to present it to me. My eyes stared fixedly at the All-Power Stone in his hand. Then I thanked him for giving me such a precious gift and told him to have a safe journey. Demyers immediately broke out in cold sweat on his forehead. However, before he could react, I instantly killed all these people. I also took the All-Power Stone from his hand. Demyers wanted to know why. He had clearly offered the treasure, so why kill him anyway? However, I couldn't be bothered to waste words with him. Then I examined this All-Power Stone. After all, this was my first time seeing it, but as I looked at it, I felt something was wrong with this All-Power Stone. This wasn't an artifact at all. Although it contained large amounts of magic power, that was all there was to it. But the principal had clearly told me about the All-Power Stone being lost. Just then, my heart suddenly jumped, and I looked up at the sky in disbelief. I saw a purple ripple appear above me. The next moment, the All-Power Stone in my palm lit up with dazzling light. With a thunderous roar, this light rapidly spread outward in a circle and created a huge explosion in this forest. After the aftermath of this explosion, many flower petals fell down. The next moment, I saw that where I had just been standing, there was now a huge crater, and the All-Power Stone was at the bottom of this crater. Then a toe slowly descended, then a delicate small hand prepared to pick up the All-Power Stone. She had deliberately destroyed the All-Power Stone like this, yet it didn't have have a single flaw. The person who appeared was the principal of Theoan Academy, also one of the continent's top 6th-tier mages. The principal had put considerable effort into creating this decoy this time, hoping for a full harvest. She also hoped that teacher Ludwig wouldn't appear here, or she would be very sad. But little did she know, at this moment I was under a large tree 2 kilometers away from her. At this time, I finally released the magic power on my body. I had almost died just now. I never expected this woman to be terrifying to this extent. It turned out that just now, when I noticed this power, I immediately sensed something was wrong. In that instant, I released Otter Nocturnus to quickly hide my presence. At the same time, the moment I disappeared, that enormous power crashed down. When surrounded by the illusion technique, I became part of the magic and thus was saved. Although spatial movement magic doesn't exist in this world, by skillfully using the coordinate designation technique, the same effect can be achieved. The principal's figure earlier was unforgettable to me. The 6th-tier mage of Theoan Academy was truly terrifying. She had clearly entrusted the matter to me before, so why did she come here personally? Could it be that she discovered my true identity and specifically set a trap for me? Just then, I had a splitting headache. This was due to consuming too much magic power from using spatial magic just now. I didn't hesitate. I immediately took out 3 pills and put them in my mouth. After calming down, I thought carefully and felt she probably hadn't discovered my identity. Otherwise, she wouldn't need to use such a troublesome method. I guess she had planned to solve this matter herself from the beginning, but to improve work efficiency, she had hidden this fact even from her own people. Just then, I heard movement behind me. Turning around, I discovered it was actually Flora who had come here. I was somewhat puzzled why this guy would come here. I slowly stood up. This forest should be off limits. You can't possibly not know that, right? But unexpectedly, Flora was even more shocked than I was. Why is teacher here? And what was that magic just now? I told her to go back quickly. This wasn't a place she could come to. I glanced at her. She must have bypassed those people guarding the entrance and come in through other small paths. Actually, what I didn't know was that Flora had followed me because she smelled the fragrance on my body. She herself hadn't expected that fragrance to be coming from me. Just then, another woman's voice entered our range. Flora looked over in horror, not expecting her best friend to have followed her as well. Looking at these 2 troublemakers, I sighed inwardly. Just come with me then. I'll take you out. At this time, Flora stared at me in a daze. At that time, due to excessive magic consumption, some symptoms appeared on my body, forcing me to take 3 pills. This was what Flora was curious about. She really wanted to know what medicine I had taken. 10 minutes later, I brought the 2 little ones out, and we happened to run into the principal. I calmly explained that I saw these 2 wandering in the forest, so I brought them out. After hearing my words, the principal's gaze became somewhat cold. Why were you there? Flora stepped forward. It's all my fault. I entered the silent forest on my own. Sally just followed me in. Then teacher Ludwig discovered us. The principal murmured, I see. At this time I started playing the villain. I think these 2 little ones aren't well behaved. Principal, how do you plan to punish them? The principal smiled slightly. What can I do? Besides, the situation just now was a bit urgent, so I handled it myself. I nodded. No wonder I sensed terrifying magical power in the forest. So it came from the principal. The principal didn't say much more after that, and I took responsibility for sending the 2 students back. After the principal returned, the butler beside her asked, What do you think of this, Ludwig? The principal didn't answer directly. Through this incident, we should be able to completely eliminate suspicions about Ludwig. Through these past few days of observation, we haven't found any suspicious signs. The butler laughed heartily. That's really great. Excellent talents like him are rare. But principal, why did you have our people spread related rumors in the school before? The principal giggled. I naturally have my plans for doing this, because only by doing this would those guys who took the bait start taking action, right? Then the 2 of them walked for a while and stopped in front of a stone door. Inside was deathly silent, with a stone placed on a platform in the center. This stone was the all-power stone. This stone had been safely transferred here before the rumors spread. The principal came this time as a precaution, specifically to check whether the all-power stone was truly intact. The moment they closed the door, a mass of black smoke filled the room. The next moment, my figure suddenly appeared. This was my most skilled coordinate designation technique. I chuckled. I wasn't entirely sure before, but this time I really hit the jackpot. When I touched the all-power stone earlier, I knew it was fake, then casually left a trace on it. I had already guessed that after the principal dealt with this matter, she would definitely confirm the real all-power stone's condition. However, the magical power emanating from the real all-power stone was indeed intense. I felt she wanted to use magical power to tempt me, but unfortunately, it didn't have the power to truly fulfill my wishes. My steps slowly moved forward. I've seen too many before, so I clearly know your power is limited. The next moment, I directly grabbed the all-power stone. Although its power was limited, it should be able to tell me the whereabouts of other artifact fragments. Instantly, a powerful magical fluctuation emanated from the all-power stone's main body and quickly filled the entire room. Fortunately, this room had magic shielding devices, so people outside couldn't see anything. Gradually, I discovered this magical power was getting stronger, and it was trying to drill into my body. I slowly said, "You better behave yourself. Otherwise, I'll absorb all your magical power." And I specifically warned the all-power stone that if you really want to drill in, you might be destroyed by my consciousness. After hearing my words, the all-power stone seemed a bit afraid. Its light was fading, and soon its glow disappeared. Then my magical power poured into the all-power stone's interior. "Let me see the whereabouts of the other fragments. 2 minutes later, the all-power stone's magical power completely subsided. Although I had anticipated it, it indeed couldn't tell me the locations of all fragments. But there was one thing I hadn't expected. That was that fragments actually existed near this Theowen. That night, I called Hans again, telling him we needed to meet tomorrow night. This incident was very important, so please arrive at the meeting point on time, because I had learned the whereabouts of another artifact. Hans heard that my voice sounded weak. You spent such a great cost and only found one artifact? The gains seem rather minimal. More accurately, it should be 2 artifacts, because the all-power stone told me there were 2 artifacts existing nearby, but it didn't tell me specifically where. Hans was extremely shocked. I never expected this Pilbert to have another artifact. Why hadn't anyone discovered it before? I slowly stood up. The existence of artifacts definitely isn't easily revealed unless there are huge interests involved, but I roughly know where it is. It should be in a nearby auction house. Hans thought for a moment. The only auction venue nearby should be the Kunst auction house. I heard they're holding a large event recently. They might be using the artifact as an auction item. I think it's best to confirm the auction list first, so we can plan our move accordingly. Then I ended the call with Hans. The next day during class, I found Flora actually lying at my office door. Flora coughed twice to cover her embarrassment, saying, "So you weren't in the office? I thought you were in the office," and knocked for a long time with no response. I told her not to talk nonsense and to speak up if she had something to say. This really stumped Flora, because she had several questions she wanted to ask me, such as what magic I had used at the time, or what those pills I took were for. After 3 minutes of silence, she still hadn't spoken up, and my patience had reached its limit. Then I turned and entered the office without looking back, but Flora blocked my way again. This made me a bit impatient. "What exactly do you want? Just say it directly." When I opened my eyes again, I was extremely shocked to see a water drop floating in front of me. Besides that, there were ice magic and fire magic above. Flora showed a proud smile. "How do you feel? This is the coordinate designation technique I learned from you." This made me exclaim in amazement. I never expected a student to learn this magic so quickly. Flora giggled. "Of course, I'm a genius after all. I should get a reward from you, right?" Hearing her words, I praised her, but as for rewards, I could only give her points. But Flora's expression seemed somewhat disdainful. "You stingy guy, how can you be a teacher like this? I don't want points. I want something of equal value to the highest bonus points." I wanted to punch Flora. She sounded so arrogant, and that expression was really too cocky, especially with that masculine face. But I didn't show any of this, just complained internally. Then I brought her into the office. Flora looked around. This was her first time in the teacher's office. I told her to come with me to the research room. Don't go to other places. With a creak, the door opened, revealing all my academic materials. But Flora couldn't understand any of these things. This was also her first time seeing such patterns, which didn't look like casual drawings. Then my voice reached her ears. "Honestly, I didn't expect anyone to actually succeed, so I considered what reward to give you. You should also know that the coordinate designation technique requires mathematical formulas. You need to control magical power at a certain point and manifest this technique at that point." This made Flora a bit embarrassed. She had only been copying without understanding, so it used mathematical principles. At this time, I casually waved the staff in my hand. I swept my arm, and a golden light wrapped around the staff's surface. Flora looked up in shock at what she saw next, which almost overturned her worldview. Above me appeared a golden unknown shape. Although it looked like nothing on the surface, if you looked carefully, the magic contained within was simply unfathomable. Flora was about to cry from fear. She just felt like her head was about to explode. She couldn't understand what this thing was at all. When she opened her eyes again, it was already half an hour later. Flora was still immersed in the previous technique, unable to come back to her senses for a long time. She curiously asked what magic I had shown her before she fainted. It was so amazing. "I call this magic the Klein bottle. This is magic I created myself, but this magic is currently only in my experimental stage." Flora was somewhat shocked after hearing this. "What kind of brain do you have to always think up novel magic?" At this time, my gaze looked at Flora with extreme gravity, asking if her eyes and nose were all right. Flora's heart jumped. "Could it be that you discovered?" "I did indeed discover your special constitution of being able to sense magic through various senses. I had noticed before that when you saw the Klein bottle, your pupils dilated significantly and your fingertips trembled slightly. You used other senses to perceive techniques that ordinary people can't sense. This was magic you'd never seen before, so you appeared very shocked." Flora clenched her fists. "Teacher, aren't you curious about my special constitution?" I wasn't curious about this at all and didn't care what constitution she had, but other mages would be different. They would try their best to capture and study you, so you must never let them discover. After warning her, I sent her away. Flora was very curious. Was her special constitution so common? Why wasn't the teacher surprised at all? But speaking of which, she didn't seem to get a reward today. In the evening, I came to the meeting place I had arranged with Hans. No matter how many times I saw him, I still couldn't get used to Hans showing off. Hans was very happy to see me arrive. "I've been waiting here for you for 2 hours. You finally came. Today I was dressed in a very formal suit. This is the best car from the anti-society side." I snatched it over. "The place we're going to next is a very high-class venue, so we need at least this kind of car." Half an hour later, we arrived at a very upscale building. But I didn't like this kind of environment because it was too flashy and noisy. Just as we were about to go upstairs, 2 bodyguards blocked our path. Hans smiled and handed over the invitation. "Don't worry, we have proper procedures." After the bodyguards checked that the invitation was fine, They respectfully invited us upstairs. When we reached the 4th floor, I realized the atmosphere here was different. There was no noisy sound. Hans began explaining to me that there was actually an unwritten rule here. That was absolutely no disputes could occur on the 4th floor, so there would be no security inside. I chuckled. It seems they arranged to meet us here to see whether we would follow this agreement. Soon I knocked on this room's door. Let me see what kind of demons and monsters are inside. After entering, a black-veiled woman asked what my purpose for coming here was. Could it be that I wanted to complete a previously failed plan here? She was Black Rose Violetta. I smiled calmly. I never thought like that, but Black Rose still didn't believe me. She felt I was just doing what I had wanted to do before. Otherwise, why would I wipe out the anti-society organization as soon as I arrived? A short man interrupted, saying, "Let's stop talking about your personal history. What exactly do you want to do? Since you accepted our invitation, you must have come with a purpose." He was Gilkis Fenning. Seeing them being so direct, I also spoke frankly. "Actually, I came here because I want to cultivate my own power." Hearing this, everyone was slightly stunned. This way, their power would decrease, which wasn't good for them. I shrugged. "Don't be so nervous, everyone. Let me clear up the misunderstanding first. Otherwise, we won't be able to chat calmly." Dane slowly spoke. "What misunderstanding do you have? But before I speak, I want to dialogue directly with the person in power of your organization." This made Dane a bit unhappy. "What do you mean by this?" At this time, the little girl beside Dane smiled slightly. "You actually saw through it, Mr. Moriarty. Because everyone thinks I'm a child, they often ignore what I say." She was Audacious Mastra. I shrugged again. "I'm someone who won't look down on someone just because they're a child. And everyone, please rest assured, I don't want to create a second society, but I do plan to start a new business. So I suggest to everyone, as long as you work under me, I guarantee I'll make you all rich." This made Hans beside me extremely nervous. What the hell was this guy saying? Black Rose's tone was somewhat cold. "So you're no different from the anti-society people. Don't you also want to control us with your strength and then make us work for you? But mine is different. After all, this is just a suggestion. If I really wanted that, you would have been beaten down by me long ago. And I've made another decision. Even if you refuse my suggestion, I will transfer part of the anti-society's business to you." Odejas couldn't help but swallow. "You would also transfer part of the business to us? I really can't understand what you're planning." I finally waited for their question. This was when I had the initiative in the conversation. I slowly said, "Everyone should be very clear that it's not convenient for me to operate openly outside now, so even if I caused this kind of meaningless dispute, I wouldn't gain anything. I just need to have a firm strength that belongs to me. It doesn't matter if you don't believe me. Actually, even if you refuse me, I won't have any losses. But I want to hear everyone's definite answer here." In that instant, the 5 people in the room plus Hans were extremely quiet. You could clearly hear a pin drop. At this time, the short man Gilkis broke the silence. "Hey brother, even if you want us to work for you, you should at least tell us what business it is first." However, his words were scolded by Black Rose. "How can you make decisions casually? The boss hasn't even spoken." But the short man completely ignored Black Rose and spoke directly to me. "If it's something dangerous, it's not too good. I hope you can understand us." I waved my hand, had Hans pass over a piece of paper, and asked them if they knew what kind of entertainment activities nobles liked. The short man looked at my business plan with a puzzled expression, still not prepared to agree, but the next second, he seemed to change his face and said, "I see the possibility of developing this business from you, brother. I'll be counting on you from now on, my good brother." Black Rose was somewhat dissatisfied with the short man's behavior. She didn't expect him to agree so readily without consulting them. But Black Rose was still curious about one thing. She really wanted to know what I wanted to do in this city. However, I also told her straightforwardly that I wanted to change this place. This industrial area and Fogus Street were both abandoned areas. There was only gray sky and dark future here, but people should live looking up at the sky. I want to turn this dark, damp alley into a bright place suitable for people to live. I can also provide advice for other organizations, helping you find suitable occupations. Would you like to look at it before making a decision? After the meeting ended, Hans looked at me with extreme admiration. "Boss, you're really amazing. I never expected all 3 organizations to finally agree to join us. But at this moment, I turned to the dark area behind me and said, 'What do you want by following us?' And you came alone without bringing any bodyguards." The reason Black Rose came over was because she wanted to chat with me alone. Then Hans tactfully left this place. This time Black Rose came to discuss business matters with me. She really wanted to get my answer. Did the business I proposed before really have development prospects? The current clothing market was monopolized by noble merchants. Did we really have a chance of winning? I told her not to overthink it. Our target customer group wasn't them. We wanted to make clothes suitable for the general public's daily wear, lightweight and comfortable, ready to wear. If more and more customers bought this type of clothing, then the clothing styles made by nobles and merchants would naturally be eliminated. Although we would definitely face obstruction from some people, we would face difficulties together and overcome them. We absolutely couldn't live humbly. And once things stabilized, Black Rose wouldn't have to suffer anymore to protect her sisters, because I would protect all of you. I might be able to let you apply magic to clothing making. Black Rose showed a shocked expression at this. This was actually quite simple because I was was also a mage, so I could naturally recognize it. This wasn't a big deal. Black Rose was also very straightforward. Since she decided to cooperate, she was prepared to show her true face. Then she removed the veil from her face, revealing extremely delicate features with a pair of purple beautiful eyes. The only flaw was that the corner of her eye seemed to have been burned by magic, leaving some unsightly marks. All of this was thanks to that professor. It was because her professor taught her black magic. When an experiment failed at that time, this mark was left from that incident. Black Rose laughed self-deprecatingly. I'm really sorry to let you see such an ugly me. Back then, because it wasn't treated in time, even Lumonsis' healing priest gave up treating me, so I'm sorry. However, I grabbed her arm. Wait a moment. Then I gently caressed her cheek, where the corner of her eye was. Since you trust me so much, and are willing to show me the appearance you don't want others to see, then I should also show you something. Then I applied slight pressure with my finger, concentrating magic at my fingertip that emitted a pale green glow. The next moment, the burn marks on Black Rose's face magically disappeared. This looked much more pleasing to the eye, 100 times better than before. When she saw from the mirror that her face had been healed, she was extremely shocked. How exactly did you do this? This is something even high-level healers couldn't accomplish. I chuckled nonchalantly. Just consider it real magic for now. Don't you think it's a pity to cover your entire face because of one scar? After I demonstrated my abilities, Black Rose was completely won over by me. Then her voice became somewhat stuttering. I feel it's still better to cover it up now. Before leaving, she left me with one sentence. She would work hard for me from now on, and if there was anything I could just tell her directly, she would give it her all. At this time, I directly called out to Black Rose. Don't you have anything else? Just then, with a whoosh, an arrow quickly flew over, and I pulled Black Rose back in that instant. Black Rose's eyes were full of fear. If I hadn't pulled her back in time, she would have died long ago. At this time, I quietly took out the staff from my chest. I said to Black Rose, I never expected that on our first meeting, we'd have to fight side by side. This is really a pleasant thing. The next moment, Black Rose and I instantly surrounded all of them. Next was our performance time. At that moment, a man carrying a hammer emerged, saying, a big shot like you dares to wander around without bodyguards? I glanced at him. Turns out he was a remnant of the anti-society faction. Just as I was preparing to eliminate them, I caught a whiff of a strange fragrance. This scent, once it enters the body, makes it very difficult for people to channel their magic power. The man across from me was ecstatic. He never expected to encounter two big shots. Black Rose Violetta, someone who calls the shots in the city, was about to fall into their hands as well. Black Rose raised her umbrella weapon. She's always been gentle and never liked fighting, but when push comes to shove, she won't hold back either. Black Rose sighed. Now we're surrounded and can't escape. But this suits me just fine. Miss, may I ask if you can dance? I don't just dance. My blade is also very fast, and when blood splatters, it'll look as beautiful as rose petals. With Black Rose's words, I felt much more at ease. Then I'll leave my back to you. I swiftly struck with my sword. The anti-society remnants were completely no match for us. This shocked the leader of the remnants greatly. They were still so formidable, even without magic. Black Rose was getting somewhat exhausted. She probably doesn't exercise enough normally. Looks like she'll need to step up her training in the future. But I was puzzled. I hadn't seen the archer who initially ambushed us. Could he have been hiding in the shadows after that sneak attack? Not only did he use the hard-to-obtain mystifying incense, but he was also skilled at concealing his killing intent. It seems there are professionals among these guys. At that moment, I called out Black Rose. The instant Black Rose turned her head, I grabbed her body and ran. The anti-society leader cursed furiously. You two are supposed to be big shots, yet you want to run when you can't win. Black Rose told me to put her down. She could easily handle just these few people. As soon as she finished speaking, two figures instantly darted out from the crowd. These two were the professional assassins I mentioned, which is why I chose to flee. Otherwise, the situation would only turn against us. These two killers appeared very professional, with very clear objectives. Black Rose was shocked. She seemed to recognize these two. She'd heard before about an assassin group from the southern desert. They're the type who work purely for money. I told her to quickly shut her mouth, or she'd bite her tongue. The next second, an iron chain flew out from my sleeve. As we swung toward the rooftops, the two assassins quickly followed. Their speed was actually comparable to mine. This made me think this is bad. Looks like a fight was unavoidable. One of the assassins immediately swung the twin blades in his hands. The moment the assassin moved, Black Rose and I quickly retreated. Just as the flying blade was about to reach Black Rose, she immediately raised her defensive umbrella to block the attack. But the next scene shocked Black Rose. She hadn't expected the flying blade to be coated with corrosive poison. If she had tried to catch with her hands, her arm would have surely been corroded. I also knew something about their organization. The special poisons used by those Kalsapa guys can't be blocked by ordinary means. So we found ourselves in a difficult position. We definitely couldn't beat them in a fight, unless they ran out of daggers, but they came prepared and surely had plenty of hidden weapons. So I thought of a second solution. The next moment, while the two assassins were surprised, I grabbed Black Rose's body and quickly fled the scene. If we didn't leave now, Once our stamina was depleted, we'd surely be worn down by them. The assassins didn't immediately pursue us through the air, but instead observed our escape route. They nodded to each other, signaling that they could begin their action. In just an instant, they rushed toward us at extreme speed. However, just as they were escaping, Black Rose's voice rang out in the assassin's ears. "Don't tell me you're planning to just abandon me and run away alone. How despicable. I really misjudged you." With a swish, the assassin's wrist flicked, and two flying blades appeared between his fingers. "This woman is isolated. Did that man run away?" But then he thought something felt wrong. I couldn't possibly have just abandoned her. So the assassin felt this was very much like a trap we had set, with Black Rose possibly being the bait. The assassin slowly approached Black Rose, sensing that I was hiding somewhere nearby. He quickly swung his arm, preparing to launch the hidden weapon in his hand. He'd already locked onto my direction. With a bang, his hidden weapon struck the wall, although no figure could be seen. His instincts told him I was indeed there. Unfortunately, he guessed wrong. I pierced through his chest with one sword thrust. The assassin was shocked, trembling as he said, "I clearly smelled the mystifying incense in that location. How could you possibly appear behind me?" I chuckled. "This magic works exactly like that, but I made slight use of the mystifying incense's properties." With a thud, after I pulled out my long blade, I immediately finished him off. "Although you're skilled, you were too careless." The concentration of mystifying incense remaining in the air was already very low and didn't affect magic use, so I used magic to transmit my voice over there. Just then, Black Rose looked at me in shock. "Watch out above." I curiously turned my head and saw an assassin swooping down toward me. The assassin flicked his wrist, and actually used the same skill as me. His hook caught the sword in my hand. Then he leaped up, about to come before me and strike me down. The assassin laughed heartily. "Now you're without your sword? Let's see how you counterattack me." However, at this moment I quietly reached my hand behind my back. I never said I only had one weapon. The assassin thought this is bad. He had been careless. So just as he was about to land, I quickly swung out a blade. The cold sword light cut through the dark night. With a thud, the assassin's body heavily hit the ground. I turned my head and snorted coldly. "Although your timing judgment was very accurate, you were careless at the crucial moment. When you're in mid-air, you can't move your body. That's your fatal weakness." After dealing with the two assassins, the anti-society remnants heard the commotion and immediately rushed over. Black Rose folded up her umbrella. The mystifying incense had completely dissipated, and she said, "Leave the rest to me." The next moment, those people indeed pursued us. However, what happened next made them extremely regretful. A ball of magic appeared right in front of the anti-society remnants. With a thunderous roar, a huge explosion occurred on this street. Black Rose was somewhat puzzled. Why are they still trying to hunt us down when their organization no longer exists? I speculated they might also be acting out of desperation. They should be the ones providing financial support to the assassins. Bell Bertrickson has already been eliminated by me, so it wouldn't be him. Black Rose was somewhat shocked. "I didn't expect Bell Bertrickson was actually eliminated by you." I nodded. "Because he provided financial support to Deutery and engaged in dirty dealings, sometimes even trampling on people's dignity. I didn't want to stand on the same side as those guys. Since we've talked this far, I'll leave Deutery's people to you. You should have accumulated many conflicts with them normally. Dispose of them as you see fit, but I need you to help me find the mastermind behind this incident." Black Rose sighed. "Looks like things are going to get busy lately, and I still need to follow up on those matters you proposed earlier. I don't know if I can handle it all by myself." Hearing this, I immediately used reverse psychology on her. "If you can't handle such simple matters, don't follow me to make big money. Just leave on your own." Black Rose giggled. "Are you challenging my self-respect?" Then Black Rose turned her head and put on her original veil. She would handle both matters well. She would work even harder than I expected. I silently praised her. This was a satisfactory answer. Afterward, I left this place with Black Rose. With the help of Black Rose and others, my affairs should develop very smoothly from now on. When I returned to Hans's residence, I heard a commotion. The moment I entered, they stopped fighting. A white-haired girl with yellow eyes looked at me. She was Aeon Pitt from the Power Group, my former partner and also a great young inventor. Hans stretched out his trembling hand, seeking my help. "Big brother, can you pull this troublemaker off me?" I chuckled and told Aeon Pitt to get off Hans. "Just help me take a look at this wrist guard." What followed was Aeon Pitt's angry roar. "Did you use this steel wire to carry someone? I told you before it should only be used by you alone. Now all the connection parts are loose." But this wasn't a problem for Aeon Pitt. It would only take 10 minutes to fix. At this moment, Hans cursed as he stood up. "Why does this troublemaker attack me every day? I think Aeon Pitt probably finds you easy to bully. But even though Aeon Pitt looks small, her actual age is older than yours. Just bear with it." After hearing my words, Hans also found it strange. To be honest, at first he really thought Aeon Pitt was a child. I remembered the first time I met Aeon Pitt was in the underground mines of the Delica Kingdom, but that really gave Hans and me quite a scare at the time. Back then, Aeon Pitt somehow obtained 300 kilograms of specialized explosives. Even thinking about it now gives me chills. If those bombs had exploded, Hans and I probably wouldn't have survived. Even an explosion 1,000 meters below ground level would have crushed us. At this time, I told Hans about the earlier ambush, but the anti-society remnants had all been dealt with by me. I asked Hans to help me investigate. This gave him a headache. He was already overwhelmed with the auction house's auction items lately. Just then, Aeon Pitt shouted loudly, "Hey, assistant! Hurry over and help me! Aeon Pit's words startled me. I told Hans to quickly go help her, and preferably watch her to make sure she doesn't touch any gunpowder. Then I went to the room to rest. Although she said it would take 10 minutes, she would definitely study it thoroughly from beginning to end, so it would take about 30 minutes to complete. I could take this opportunity to rest. Just then, I noticed suspicious people moving below. Those were 3 shadowy figures, each wearing cloaks. Their movement was quick and light, and even their footsteps couldn't be heard at all. To be able to move so methodically at this hour, could they be people from the security bureau? At that moment, the leader immediately looked in my direction. She sensed that someone on the second floor seemed to be watching them. Fortunately, I reacted quickly enough, or I would have been spotted. It was also fortunate she didn't see me, although I had anticipated they were knights. I didn't expect the leader to actually be from the security bureau, the Nightwalker Knights, the Duke Protector. She was Trina Rainhall. If she had set her sights on me, that would have been troublesome. I suspected she should be investigating Belle Bertrickson's death. Could they think tonight's assassination was related to that incident? Fortunately, I had disposed of the key evidence. I didn't want to get involved with those monster-like people. Just then, Aeon Pit finished repairing my wrist guard and also made some modifications to it, which took some time. After putting on the wrist guard, I felt it seemed lighter than before. With a flick of my wrist, a long chain shot out from my sleeve. I didn't expect this repaired wrist guard to be more powerful than before. Now it would be no problem to carry a person and swing around. Aeon Pit smiled happily. She had also added new functions for me. She told me to clench my fist and try to exert force with my wrist. With a zing, a sharp sword shot out from my sleeve. Aeon Pit had remembered a function I had mentioned to her before, so she tried to implement it this time. Besides that, there were actually projectile anesthetic needles in that small hole, which made me very satisfied. I didn't expect this modification to turn out so well. Aeon Pit sighed. Sure enough, adults have good vision, not like that coward Hans who kept nagging that this was too dangerous and shouldn't be done. Besides, you'll definitely need very good equipment when you infiltrate Theowen Academy. I told her not to mention that matter. As it differed from the previous plan, I suddenly thought of something, so I planned to ask her to help me with it. Meanwhile, the security bureau team had arrived at the crime scene. They could tell at a glance that these were anti-society members. Could there have been a territorial war between factions here? They also discovered 2 bodies in another alley. These were the assassins' corpses from before. Trina Rainhall pulled out the daggers from their bodies. This acidic smell seems to be the specialized poison used by Kalsapa assassins. The other 2 were shocked. Are you talking about the assassin group from the southern Fatima dynasty? Could there have been a conflict between Kalsapa and the anti-society remnants? However, Trina Rainhall asserted it definitely wasn't like that, because these anti-society remnants showed no signs of poisoning, so they should have been working together. Additionally, they found that one person's body seemed to have been killed with a single strike. From the wound, it appeared the heart had been pierced from behind. Trina Rainhall speculated that the assassins had engaged in close combat with their opponent. They thought the opponent was a mage who couldn't use blades, but their judgment was wrong, so they were killed. Trina Rainhall thought carefully. The one who killed them was a mage, and also a master skilled with blades. Someone capable of eliminating Belle Bert and that group of powerful anti-society people, and the one who burned Factory. Connecting all this information, no matter how you look at it, this seems like the handiwork of that Theowen teacher who burned the werewolf. After completing the investigation, Trina Rainhall began to withdraw the team. Trina Rainhall instructed Yasin behind her that they must visit Theowen tomorrow to meet with that teacher. Time quickly came to the next day. Early this morning, Serena was waiting for me at my dormitory door. I asked Serena what she wanted with me today. I don't have classes today. Serena chuckled. There's a guest looking for Teacher Ludwig, so since I was passing by here anyway, I came to find you directly. However, after hearing Serena's words, I was extremely shocked. I didn't expect the security bureau people to find me so quickly. 2.5 hours later, I came to meet Yasin from the security bureau. At this moment, he was touching the dust on my bookshelf. I told him to sit down and chat here. You can ask me about anything. Then he introduced himself. He was an important member of the security bureau named Yasin. He began flipping through his record book, saying that everything we discussed would be recorded in his notebook. I asked what the security bureau wanted with me this time. I heard that the werewolf that appeared at Theowen last time was personally handled by you. We'd like to understand the specifics about this matter. Mr. Ludwig, just casually tell me about the situation at that time. I agreed on the surface, but inwardly I thought, so it wasn't Trina Rainhall who came. I had already prepared myself mentally to meet her directly. Now, as long as it wasn't Trina Rainhall coming in person, everything would be easy to handle. 10 minutes later, we shook hands because I had answered all his questions, and this investigation was concluded. Before leaving, he even gave me some mutual professional praise. You truly deserve to be Theowen Academy's level 4 mage. You could easily resolve the werewolf with just a slight move. However, after he left, I looked meaningfully at my hand. That guy should have done something to my hand just now, but with their little tricks, they won't be able to get any clues from me. After leaving my office, Yasin immediately went to meet up with Trina Rainhall. Trina Rainhall had made no progress on her end and asked Yasin how his side went. Yasin indicated he had smoothly confirmed things according to her instructions. Trina Rainhall's eyes suddenly became extremely cold. Are his hands those of someone trained? But Yasin said these were just ordinary hands. When he shook hands with me, he felt my hands had never used blades. They were the hands of an ordinary mage. This shocked Trina greatly. Could her judgment have been wrong? This was somewhat unexpected for her. She thought she had finally found a clue, but the result led to another dead end. So she instructed Robin to stay here and report to her immediately if anything anything happened, but Robin felt it would be best for Trina to personally make this investigation trip. Unfortunately, Trina wasn't allowed to meet with me. This was a condition for investigating this incident. Just then, Theowen's principal somehow appeared. This surprised Robin and Yasin. They didn't expect Principal Eliza Vero to know their boss. Eliza Vero said with concern, "Since you're leaving the academy, I naturally had to come out to see you off." Trina looked at the principal with disdain. "You previously prevented me from meeting teacher Ludwig, and now you're pretending to care about me. I don't need you to see me off." The principal chuckled. "If you want to bully my academy's excellent teacher, I definitely won't agree. I finally found someone so satisfactory. How could I possibly let you do anything to him?" The sound of their argument kept coming from this back garden. Finally, Trina couldn't be bothered to argue with the principal anymore and just turned and left. Unknown to them, I was hiding on the second floor watching them at this moment. Although I didn't know what their relationship was, thanks to the principal, I avoided directly meeting the Duke Protector. Although Yasin was also a formidable opponent, his actions provided me with very important clues. At first, he was obviously checking places with organic ash, plus his overly neat appearance. I could be certain he had a cleanliness obsession. But he actually shook hands with me barehanded. He should have been trying to determine something from my hands. So just in case, I had asked the power group to help me create artificial skin, which came in very handy. Although he went to great lengths, unfortunately I was also very well prepared. A week later in the office, Sedina told me about some minor incidents that had happened at Theowen. But one thing concerned her greatly. 3 third-order people had been captured the day before yesterday. What puzzled me was that even if they were only third order, they shouldn't have been foolish enough to get captured. After careful inquiry, I learned the truth. Apparently, Theowen students were involved. 2 male students and 1 female student. I immediately thought of this trio. Then I said, "Was it Aiden, Leo, and Tessie?" Sedina was shocked. It was indeed those 3. All 3 came from lower-class backgrounds with no money at home, now relying on missions to earn tuition. As a result, by coincidence, while on a mission outside the city, they captured 3 third-order people. But even so, if they could capture third-order people, they were quite capable. Sedina asked me how to handle those students. My voice was extremely cold. "I won't possibly handle students, so let them be. Besides, I don't need those guys who would be bullied by students." Sedina trembled all over. "You're right, they're waste, and we don't need waste." Then I put on my clothes and headed to the classroom. The first round of exams would begin today. I wrote the exam time on the blackboard. This exam was of extraordinary significance. I would tell the top 5 students the source code numbers. I hoped everyone would take this seriously. Of course, I wouldn't tell you everything at once. I planned to divide the Warlock framework into 4 parts. After each exam, I would tell you 1 part. If I discovered any cheating, I would make them pay the corresponding price. Then I waved my hand grandly, infusing magic into every test paper. The exam officially began at this moment. With a clang, the exam ended after 2.5 hours. Some people held their heads and cried. They knew from when I said it was an open book exam that they had already anticipated this exam would be so difficult that even being open book would be meaningless. Just then, the kingdom's princess noticed Line hurriedly walking down the stairs. Looking back, Line had come behind me. I asked if she had questions about this exam. Actually, no. She was returning the magic book I had given her last time. She had finished reading it, but I said she didn't need to return it to me. This book would always be needed by her in the future, and this book would be more meaningful only in her hands. At least I thought this showed respect for the book's previous owner. So don't return it to me. Keep it yourself, because I believe you'll take better care of this book than I would. After I left, the kingdom's princess also followed. "Do you have some urgent matter? You left in such a hurry." Line smiled slightly, indicating it was nothing. "Speaking of which, how did you do on the exam?" This exam didn't seem very difficult. However, Line's words deeply wounded the kingdom's princess. Meanwhile, the test paper I created was already placed on the dean's desk. She really hadn't expected me to create such a test paper. This test paper not only required students to have a solid foundation, but also cleverly set some traps to adjust the exam difficulty. She had thought I was a very rigid person and hadn't held much expectation for me, but she was really shocked by me. The butler beside her said, "How does Ludwig compare to teacher Chris Bamore? They both teach manifestation courses, and their exam scope is the same." The dean waved her hand. "The 2 of them can't be compared at all. Teacher Chris's test papers only have a bunch of professional terminology used to show off himself. Teacher Chris is probably looking at this test paper right now too." Just as the dean guessed, Chris was indeed looking at my test paper here, feeling very angry and indignant. Even the hand holding the test paper was slightly trembling. With a snap, he directly threw the test paper out. He had originally thought being called to the principal's office was for some matter, but it turned out to be just to show him my test paper. The principal had said this at the time. "Speaking of which, Teacher Chris, you also teach manifestation courses, right? I think this should provide some reference for your next exam question, so I brought it over for you to see." This made Chris extremely angry. To actually compare him with this declining noble was simply outrageous. The next moment, he heavily slammed the table. "Just wait and see, Ludwig Cherish. I'll return this humiliation to you someday." Meanwhile, on the other side, Line was looking for a place to eat lunch. Originally, she wanted to invite the kingdom's princess to eat together, but she seemed to have been hit hard and went back directly. Just then, a figure called out to Line. That person was a blonde guy who showed a disdainful smile. Isn't this that self-important commoner? As soon as he finished speaking, he walked forward to block Line's path. Line was extremely disgusted with this person. She had rejected his confession before, but he still wouldn't leave her alone. He really brought shame to the title of noble. The blonde was angered by Line's words. "You overconfident commoner." With that, he swung his hand and directly pushed Line to the ground, scattering her lunchbox contents all over the floor. This made Line very angry, so she glared at him fiercely. Seeing the scene, the blonde laughed. "You're in this state and still dare to glare at me? Looks like I need to teach you a lesson." Just as he was about to make a move, another man entered the scene. The newcomer was Freuden, also this school's #1 genius. This shocked Line greatly. She hadn't expected to encounter him at this moment. Freuden was famous for despising commoners and never showing mercy to them. The blonde showed a charming smile. "As a noble, I'm educating this disrespectful commoner," but the next second, Freuden's words shocked him greatly. "I see you're not teaching her a lesson, but bullying her, right?" With that, he released gravity magic and directly pressed that little blonde to the ground. Freuden's eyes were extremely cold. "You trash really brings shame to nobles. How much longer must I endure such undignified behavior from you people?" This sudden intervention shocked everyone else. Why would a noble help a commoner? Then Freuden coldly uttered 2 words, "Get lost." Line respectfully said, "Thank you for helping me. Otherwise, I might have been bullied by them again." Freuden turned his head and noticed Line's lunchbox had been knocked over by them. Then he said, "Your food has all fallen to the ground and probably can't be eaten. If you don't mind, you can eat with me." Line looked at the lunchbox behind her. If it hadn't been soiled, it should still be edible, but it looked completely ruined now. A moment later, Line was brought by Freuden to a secret garden. This was his private space. If she didn't tell others about this place, Freuden could bring Line here for meals again next time. Line opened the lunchbox and found the dishes were all gourmet lunches she had never eaten before. What surprised her even more was that these dishes were actually made by him personally. Line took a bite. She hadn't expected it to be so delicious. Although she was eating, her heart was thinking, "I heard Freuden showed no mercy to commoners, but unexpectedly he saved her today." Then she ate with peace of mind, because she felt these rumors were false and unreliable, just like the bad rumors about Ludwig Cherish initially. But actually, he was a very good teacher. On the other side, Serena also saw me at the exam venue. She hadn't expected my exam to finish so quickly. Then Serena extended an invitation to me. "My exam content this time is Sprite Studies practical work. Do you have time to come observe?" For this kind of boring course, I instinctively wanted to refuse. But the look Serena gave me made it impossible for me to say no. Oh well, I'll indulge this woman once. Reluctantly go observe. A moment later, Serena sat in front of the students and began explaining Sprite content. Then she slowly gathered magic in her palm, preparing to give everyone a demonstration. The next moment, an extremely dazzling magic appeared beside Serena. Serena gently touched the Sprite beside her with her finger, greeting it. This made the students in front amazed. So this was the Sprite Studies teacher's ability. Their admiring gazes made Serena very uncomfortable. Everyone should have seen it. If you do it like me, it's not difficult at all. Now everyone begin. Soon some students summoned sprites. Teacher Serena asked me to try too, but I refused because sprites don't like me. Serena didn't believe what I said. She felt these sprites were very kind. Then she summoned a white ball sprite, but she discovered this sprite was trembling all over. This puzzled Serena. This was the first time she'd seen such a situation. The sprite was shaking, and other sprites wouldn't approach teacher Ludwig either. I had already told Serena before that sprites don't like me. At the same time, a massive dark, ominous energy appeared behind me. This dark energy could only be seen by sprites, and this dark energy was my guardian spirit. I explained to Serena that because of my special constitution, sprites would dislike me. However, only low-level sprites would react this way. Mid-tier sprites would be relatively quiet. This made Serena very unhappy. What a pity. It would be great if teacher Ludwig could also get along intimately with sprites. Then Serena went to the student's side since an exam was currently in progress. This made me breathe a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, my internal magic power was still sufficient. If even mid-tier sprites had reacted, teacher Serena would definitely have become suspicious. To be precise, what sprites fear isn't me but something behind me. It's quite ironic that these weak sprites can sense such powerful force. Just then my heart jumped. I sensed someone seemed to be watching me. This gaze was from the forest behind me. This aura seemed like a fire sprite, but none of the other students and teachers noticed this aura. It appeared the other party should be a high-level sprite that even sprite masters who control ultimate sprites couldn't detect. Could this guy's sprite not be one that exists naturally? This made me guess that someone must have specifically summoned it, and to so brazenly stare at me, there was only one answer. He was another First Order hiding in Theowen. He had never made any moves before, so why would he suddenly appear and quietly observe me from the side? This made me wonder if he had discovered my false identity. Thinking about it, that seemed unlikely. If that were really the case, he wouldn't just sit and watch. So I concluded he must be sending me some kind of signal, asking me to meet with him. So I began testing. This weather sure is hot. The moment my words fell, the heat waves became increasingly intense. It was him reacting to my words. Then I left teacher Serena's exam area. I had to find a place with no people and see what this other First Order actually looked like. This was an excellent opportunity for me. If I could extract information from the other party, that would be ideal. Soon, a ball of flame appeared before me. Text appeared on it, showing that I should come here to meet with him tonight after classes. I subconsciously looked around. It seemed the other party was indeed a cautious person. I arrived here as promised. Suddenly, accompanied by a burst of female laughter, a flame appeared before me. I had anticipated this before coming. It seems she really doesn't intend to reveal her true identity. Since that's the case, I'll get straight to the point. What do you want from me this time? It turns out she came to me this time to ask for my help in destroying Theo and Academy. I let out a long sigh. So you want me to play with fire and cause chaos with you? She insisted I must help her with this favor, because all her second-order subordinates have recently disappeared. So now she can only ask for my help. With my abilities, providing some assistance while hiding my true identity should be a simple matter. The woman promised to provide corresponding help after the deed is done. This should be considered a transaction. At this point, I spoke up and asked whose transaction this is exactly. The woman chuckled. Of course it's a transaction between John Doe and Esmeralda. I haven't heard the name Esmeralda before. It seems to be a code name like mine. After chatting with her for a few minutes, I directly refused her proposal. I cannot provide you with any assistance. This left the other first-order member somewhat confused. She had waited so long, yet I wouldn't help her. But I had my reasons for not helping. If it were any other time, I might have helped you, but not this time, because the principal is still suspicious of me, so I can't act rashly now. After saying this, I turned and walked away. I had already gathered enough intelligence so I should leave here quickly, but I had barely taken 2 steps when she called me back. She told me she recently heard some very interesting news. That is, she heard I have a student subordinate who works for me. At the same time, her flame attack slowly approached me. The next moment, the opponent's aura suddenly erupted, and that flame power was already at my throat, demanding in a deep voice, "Didn't you always handle everything personally before? How come you found a helper this time, and it's even a third order from the lowest level? Don't you find that strange?" She thought I was secretly plotting something with the Zero Order. At this point, I said calmly, "You seem to know me quite well. You came to me for help first in this meeting, but you're making wild speculations about my actions, and now you even suspect me." My gaze had turned ice cold, staring angrily at the opponent. "Do you think that because I've been quiet since infiltrating Theowen, you can underestimate me? And my having an assistant is perfectly reasonable. Other teachers all have assistants, 10 or 8 of them, so I can't be the only one without an assistant. Since I must have one, I figured I might as well choose one from the organization." After hearing my explanation, the opponent was instantly stunned. This actually sounds quite reasonable, so she quietly withdrew her flames and showed a flattering smile. "I was just joking with you earlier, just teasing you. I didn't expect your reaction to be so intense." I turned my head and said to her, "Whether today's incident was intentional or not, I'll let it slide, but never doubt my loyalty to Lord Zero Order again, otherwise one of us two will definitely end up dead." That little flame kept nodding in apology. "Sorry, since there's nothing else now, I'll leave first." The next second, this little fireball disappeared from before me. After confirming she had left, I instantly relaxed. That was almost a disaster just now. Fortunately, my magic power was relatively sufficient. Luckily, I'd analyzed beforehand what kind of person John Doe was. Otherwise, she might have killed me if I wasn't careful. Afterwards, I leaned against a tree to organize my thoughts. The voice coming from the flames was clearly that of a young girl. She's not only a young girl, but also a spirit mage who can at least summon high-level fire spirits. So my target is very clear. First, the spirit studies teachers are worth suspecting. I can narrow it down to those who can control fire spirits, including students. Speaking of which, I remember something. Soon there will be a welcome party for new teachers in Pilbert and Theowen. Sponsors will return, so all teachers must attend. This is a good opportunity for me. At the same time, as I was on my way back, I didn't know someone on the second floor was watching me. She had originally thought I was just an ordinary person working as a teacher. It seems she was overthinking. What concerned her most was that when her flames were inches away from me earlier, I showed no fear. Perhaps I'm much stronger than her. Suddenly she remembered something. Tomorrow there seems to be a welcome banquet. Looks like tomorrow will be interesting. The next day at noon, Line's little schemes became active again. Unexpectedly, she had lunch with her senior again today, but she felt the senior didn't seem to have any malicious intent because she had long been able to sense whether others harbored malice or goodwill toward her. So far, the people around her without malice include the kingdom's princess and Freuden. The last one is teacher Ludwig, but she feels what I express isn't goodwill, but rather apology or guilt. As for the reason, she doesn't know why. If there's a chance, she'll definitely ask next time. Just then, a man ahead blocked Line's path. "You're the first-year student Line, right?" The man claimed to be Freuden's friend Henry, asking if Line had been staying with Freuden recently. Henry had been following Freuden lately to see what he was up to alone, only to discover he was often with a girl. Line felt a bit nervous. Although she couldn't sense hostility from him, he was inherently a dangerous person. Henry laughed heartily. "Do you have such a bad impression of me? Actually, you don't need to be so wary. I won't do anything to you." Then he raised a finger. "To restore my image, let me tell you some useful information." Henry happened to know of a low-risk, high-reward part-time job. Most commoners studying at Theowen are short on money, right? Would you like to take on a part-time job? Line was curious why he would tell her this information when they were meeting for the first time. After thinking for a long time, Henry finally came up with a reason. "If I had to say, it's probably out of curiosity. After all, it's amazing that Freuden would have lunch with a commoner girl." But but Line thought the senior was particularly kind. Before Line could finish her words, Henry couldn't help but burst into laughter. You actually think Freuden is very good? That's hilarious! He really couldn't help laughing just now. After knowing him for so long, this was the first time he'd heard someone praise him. Well, let her find out about such things later. Have you thought clearly about that part-time job? That evening in a luxurious villa, all the teachers from Theo and Academy attended this gathering. Serena and her group also arrived here early. Today was their welcome party too. At this moment, a footstep echoed in everyone's ears. Everyone looked up, worthy of being the strongest teacher, truly impressive. Just then, I slowly walked down the stairs dressed in very formal attire. This welcome party went very smoothly, with everyone busy socializing with the sponsors, but this gave me the perfect opportunity to slip away because I needed to go find Esmeralda. At this time, a nobleman-dressed man slowly approached me. Nice to meet you. You must be Ludwig Cherish. Just as he was about to introduce himself, I interrupted him with a glance. I don't have time to chat with you right now. I'm really sorry. Count Dex smiled awkwardly. It's fine. You go ahead. I swirled the wine glass in my hand. Since I had refused even a count, other small fry shouldn't bother me for now. Taking this opportunity, I'll go find Esmeralda. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. Turning my head, I saw Serena rejecting a man's invitation. I could see Serena didn't want to deal with him, so I directly reached out to interrupt the man. She's not available right now. You should find someone else. A subordinate quickly stepped forward. Young master, this is the famous Ludwig Cherish, a level 4 mage of the continent. But unexpectedly, this noble said, so what if he's a newly appointed teacher? Shouldn't he be the one recognizing who I am? The man patted his chest confidently. I'm a director of Luke Company, Ivan Luke. You've heard of Luke Company, right? If you understand, then step aside. At this point, my gaze glanced at Serena's hand. She was trembling slightly, tugging at my sleeve, indicating she didn't want to leave with him. Seeing her gesture, I understood what she was thinking. The man kept shouting, completely ignoring my words. I don't care who you are, just step aside. However, the next moment, I directly grabbed his arm. There's no need to be polite with this type of person. Since you're so unreasonable, then I don't need to be polite with you either. Do you think I'll back down just because you loudly proclaim you're a director of Luke Company or whatever position? You underestimate me too much. Ivan Luke's hand was firmly gripped by me, his body trembling slightly. Don't you want to continue being a teacher? You better let go of me quickly. But in his heart, he was thinking how this guy's strength was so great. I won't be intimidated by someone who's all bluster. If you can remove me from my position, then try it. At this time, Luke's bodyguard came before me, trying to persuade me. Teacher Ludwig, I hope you can let him go. This will affect other people. Luke flew into a rage. You damned noble should die in the slums. Hearing this, the nearby bodyguard advised him to endure it. With so many people around, saying such things was really inappropriate. What no one expected was that suddenly 2 slapping sounds rang out. Luke had just vented all his anger on the bodyguard, actually slapping him twice in the face and in front of everyone. This left me stunned. It seems things are developing in a strange direction. I had originally planned to use teacher Serena as an excuse to quietly leave here, but it looks like I can't leave now. The principal's voice slowly drifted into everyone's ears. What interesting thing happened here? Why don't you tell me about it? Then Luke told the principal everything that had just happened, but the principal just smiled and didn't take it seriously. I was wondering who it was. Turns out it's the young master of Chairman Luke's family. So you're using this identity to bully my lovely teachers? Also, the owner of Luke Company is Chairman Theodore. How can you speak for the company so casually? Have you discussed these matters with your father? Luke was intimidated by the principal's words and presence. Father's thoughts are definitely the same as mine, after all. I'm his son. However, what Luke didn't know was that his father was standing behind him listening to his words, anger already overflowing in his heart, almost ready to break his legs with a stick. Then I saw Luke's chairman standing before the principal, constantly apologizing. Chairman Luke still didn't dare make a sound in front of the principal, but he was still somewhat dissatisfied in his heart. A mere teacher shouldn't have such a grand reception. Thinking of this, the principal said to Chairman Luke, I have a way to make everyone feel comfortable. That is, please have the 2 conflicting parties stand together and have a match in front of everyone. How straightforward and decisive. But in my heart, I completely disagreed with this approach. The problem had finally been resolved smoothly, and now this comes up. However, this is actually good. If it ended like this, that boy would definitely be unconvinced in his heart. And Chairman Theodore also had an expression of difficulty letting go, clearly very concerned about what had just happened. Then I slowly took out my wand, indicating I had no problem. If we settle this here, I should have no more worries. Ivan looked at the bodyguard behind him. Since he didn't know magic, he planned to have someone come out to fight for him, which would also give the bodyguard a chance to redeem himself. Ivan was very confident in his bodyguard. Don't look at his submissive appearance. He's actually a very outstanding mage. The next moment, his expression changed drastically. How is this possible? He couldn't even withstand a single move and was defeated. At this moment on the venue, the referee announced that Mr. Ludwig had won the match. Ivan's bodyguard's crushing defeat drew mockery from other nobles, making Ivan feel very embarrassed. However, his father didn't think so. Are all the teachers at Theowen this amazing? He was very satisfied with the result of this duel, and his previous dissatisfaction disappeared. He also saw his son was very unsatisfied. It seems he must teach him a good lesson when they return. The chairman had something he wanted to ask the principal, but was directly refused by the principal even before he could state his request, because the principal already knew what he wanted to say. He definitely wanted her to introduce teacher Ludwig to him, but she didn't want her teachers to be poached by others. After leaving the venue, I thought it would would be quieter, but unexpectedly teacher Serena caught up with me again. She came to thank me. Fortunately, I was there in that situation just now, and Chairman Luke even personally apologized to her. However, what teacher Serena said next shocked me greatly. She actually planned to meet with the spirit studies teachers, which made me feel an opportunity had come. The other First Order might be among them. Soon I was brought by teacher Serena to the gathering place. As soon as I arrived, someone noticed me. Teacher Serena, who is this person who came with you? The people present behaved very normally. No one had any special reaction to my appearance. After chatting for a while, I found I had come for nothing, because I gained absolutely nothing. I didn't even discover a shadow of a clue about the First Order. I carefully observed those three teachers. They all had no special reaction to me, and their voices didn't sound like the one from the previous conversation either. From the last conversation, it could be seen that Esmeralda should have an eccentric personality, like a flame, so in this situation, she couldn't possibly maintain a calm heart. Now my intelligence is pitifully scarce. I suspect she might not be a teacher. Suddenly, I felt a bit thirsty and casually took a drink. But when I turned my head, I discovered it was actually Line working here. After some questioning, I found out she came here to work through a senior's introduction, and she had seen many classmates working here too. While drinking, I told her not to push herself too hard and to go back and rest early, since study should come first. Teacher Serena also saw Line. She discovered many people have been working here recently, and several of her assistants were also working part-time here, but she didn't know where they got this information. Teacher Serena had me look over there. That child over there is her assistant. Although she's a first-year student, her mastery of spirit studies is very high. I saw a girl wearing glasses in front of me. Her name is Joanna Lavitt, a commoner from a particularly poor family. Through this little episode, I realized my previous guess was wrong. I had been focusing on teachers but hadn't considered that students could be First Order members. This was mainly because the person who talked to me was a high-level spirit mage, which gave me preconceived notions. Just then, that girl and I made brief eye contact for 0.1 seconds before she turned her head away. This made me keenly aware of this detail. This girl seemed somewhat abnormal, and the direction she was heading had no customers at all. Was she going to serve tea and water to thin air? I watched the direction she was going, feeling increasingly suspicious. Joanna placed the tray and her hands on the table. Seeing this scene, I felt I might be too paranoid. Turns out she was just going back to put down empty plates. I shook my head. I've been too sensitive lately. If this continues, I'll miss things I could have discovered. At this time, I heard nobles on the side discussing commoners starting businesses. Several of them were discussing how recently a group of people had been buying large quantities of fabric, seemingly wanting to enter the clothing industry to get a piece of the pie. Their conversation reminded me of Black Rose. I didn't expect her to start taking action so quickly. Although she had once been skeptical about this matter, once she saw hope, she gave it her all. Several nobles were talking among themselves. They're really ridiculous. Just because the royal family implemented related policies for commoners, they've become so presumptuous. I don't believe their clothing industry can succeed. I completely disdain this. You nobles can be arrogant for a short while, but soon you'll discover the seriousness of the problem, because all the actions I arranged for Black Rose will eventually form a huge wave in this world, then change the direction of the future. By then, people will soon discover that the world's clothing industry will reach a revolutionary moment. But if we really reach that point, we'll already be able to stand firm at the world's peak, because we'll be at the top from our debut. Suddenly, I felt a palpitating sensation in my body, as if my magic power was being drained, leaving my limbs weak. With a clang, the wine glass in my hand fell to the ground. Serena immediately supported my body upon seeing this. "Are you all right, Teacher Ludwig?" I quickly steadied myself, indicating I was fine. "I'll go outside to get some fresh air and recover." However, this scene was caught by Chris's eye. He felt my behavior today was somewhat abnormal. After coming outside, I felt those voices in my head causing unbearable pain, constantly telling them to shut up and stop talking. I immediately swallowed 3 pills. Now I can only use these medicines to alleviate my symptoms. After taking the special medicine, my body felt much better. In that earlier battle, I consumed too much magic power trying to quickly decide the outcome. I've been too lax recently. My physical condition had become so poor without me even noticing. Chris saw me taking the special medicine just now. I don't know what schemes he's thinking up. When I returned to the venue, I found some flames had appeared inside. When I entered the venue, I found it was truly chaotic, with everyone busy fleeing for their lives. Looking around, I saw not far in front of me, a fire spirit was destroying the venue. I could tell at a glance this was definitely Esmeralda's doing. Only she could summon such a terrifying fire spirit.